In a world teetering on the edge of complete destruction, the mighty mage, our leading figure, Setsuna Cromwell, stands as humanity's final hope. He commands the last resistance of mankind, facing off against the malevolent deity known as Vindrake. Setsuna and his comrades fought with unwavering resolve, combining their strengths to conjure an immense, world-shaking spell. The powerful incantation annihilated swarms of monsters. Setsuna merged all 6 of their elemental forces into a single, devastating surge. Yet even their fiercest combined magic proved utterly futile against the dark god's might. Vindrake retaliated without mercy. Setsuna was gravely injured, his body on the brink of collapse. Still, he summoned every ounce of willpower left within him, managing to deliver one final, feeble strike of magic. But his strength had run dry, he could fight no more. As death loomed before him, a mysterious relic from his old headmaster suddenly activated, propelling him 10 years back through time. He snaps awake to the familiar voice of Leo, a friend, lightly hitting him from behind and teasing him for zoning out. Setsuna is left dumbfounded to see Leo alive before his eyes. Looking around, he realizes he's back in the Magic Academy, confirming he has returned to the past 10 years before his fatal mistake. Silently, Setsuna vows that when the time comes again, he will destroy the evil god once and for all. Leo pats his shoulder, reminding him it's his turn to step onto the stage for the ceremony of blessings. Pulling himself together, Setsuna approaches the stage, where a professor awaits his arrival. He learns that there are distinct paths in the study of magic, a fundamental rule that forces every mage to choose one specialization, making mastery of multiple paths nearly impossible, much like the impossibility of worshipping 2 gods at once. The professor then asks Setsuna which magical path he intends to pursue. In his former life, Setsuna rose to greatness through long-range magic, but in the end, it proved worthless against Vindrake. Leo recalls Setsuna once saying he'd choose long-range again. The professor shouts in disbelief when Setsuna instead names close combat magic, explaining that this path focuses on physical enhancement and requires fighting enemies up close. He warns that this path has long been abandoned and scorned for its impracticality, fearing Setsuna is throwing away his promising future. Yet Setsuna knows that this was the only form of magic that ever had an effect on the evil god. He's certain this is the one and only way to bring Vindrake down. With firm conviction, he accepts his choice. And as he forges his bond with the close combat path, confidence surges through him. He swears he'll beat the living daylight out of that god next time. Once the ceremony concludes, the rest of the hall is left in stunned silence, unable to process his decision. The professor snaps his book shut in exasperation, lamenting how he had intended to pass down all his wisdom if Setsuna had stuck with long-range magic. Only then is it revealed that the man is Professor Cyrus Arclight, the head of the long-range department. But Setsuna feels no regret after all. He knows everything these people are chasing will become meaningless in a decade. He has 10 years before humanity's downfall and only 5 before Vindrake reappears in the heavens. Though he possesses theoretical knowledge of close combat magic, he has little real experience with it. Determined, he resolves to master it before the god's return. Later, students are instructed to move to their respective practice fields. It's then that Setsuna realizes he doesn't even know where the close combat classroom is. He tries asking his peers for help, hoping someone will guide him. Instead, they scatter in fear, avoiding him as though he carries a curse. One of them jeers, saying he's finished the moment he chose the close combat path. Setsuna is astonished. These same classmates who once surrounded him with admiration now flee from him over a mere choice. With no one to rely on, he decides to navigate alone. He recalls that there should be a map of the academy in the courtyard. On his way there, he hears the unmistakable sounds of a struggle nearby. A red-haired girl is locked in combat with a few arrogant upperclassmen who have stolen the brooch her mother gave her. She demands they return it immediately, but they mock her, sneering as they inspect the mana-storing trinket, claiming it's far too precious for a lowborn like her. Watching from a distance, Setsuna instantly discerns that the girl belongs to the close combat department, while her assailants are long-range students. The bullies taunt her cruelly, daring her to take the brooch back by force while ridiculing her inferior fighting style. Their leader hurls a blazing fireball toward her. She narrowly dodges, avoiding being roasted alive. But the situation remains dire. The delinquents can keep firing from a distance with ease. Enraged, the redhead summons a mana blade, declaring she won't let them take her mother's keepsake. The gang's leader smirks and mocks her, asking whether that blade could ever reach him from where she stands. He then unleashes a relentless barrage of fireballs. The red-haired girl, outmatched, is blasted to the ground. Laughing cruelly, the leader calls her a pathetic weakling, claiming that no matter how hard she fights, she'll never match the might of long-range mages. Just as the next wave of fireballs is about to strike, Setsuna bursts into motion. With the red-haired girl still safely in his arms, he maintains a composed demeanor, politely asking if she happens to know where the close combat magic department is, since he's searching for someone who can guide him there. The delinquents finally get a proper look at his face, realizing in shock that this is none other than the Academy's prodigy himself. Their fear, however, quickly fades the moment they spot the close combat magic crest engraved on the back of his hand. Smirking, they convince themselves that Setsuna must have fallen from grace. After all, he's now part of the so-called trash department. Excited by this revelation, they decide they can beat him up without consequence. Setsuna himself doesn't deny that the close combat path has its weaknesses. Yet with what he knows, he's certain that one's chosen path doesn't necessarily dictate the outcome of a battle. As he calmly approaches the delinquents, the redhead anxiously warns him not to get involved, reminding him that they're senior students and could seriously hurt him. But before she can stop him further, the delinquents strike first, unleashing another fireball straight at Setsuna. He vaults effortlessly over the blazing projectile, landing right behind them in their blind spot. A spark of thrill flashes across Setsuna's eyes. He can't help but enjoy how freely his body moves. That exhilaration drives him to want even more of this sensation. Circling the bewildered delinquents, Setsuna teases them for relying solely on fireballs as the fight began, mocking them to try a different element for a change. His taunts only enrage them further. The leader, fuming, can barely comprehend how someone could move so fast right before his eyes. Setsuna's swift and unpredictable movements make it nearly impossible for the enemy to land a single hit. Pushed to his limit, the leader finally decides to go all out. He charges a massive, searing fireball and launches it directly at Setsuna with everything he has. But by then, Setsuna has already amassed enough mana to forge a mana blade in his grasp. With a clean, fluid motion, he slices through the oncoming fireball, splitting it apart. The delinquents freeze, staring in utter disbelief at what just happened. Even the red-haired girl is stunned. She never imagined that a flame attack could be cleaved in half. Setsuna, calm and unshaken, explains that in the end, it's always magic against magic, and the one with greater mastery prevails. In his previous life, Setsuna had ascended to power precisely because of his unmatched control over mana and precision in casting. Gazing at the glowing mana blade in his hand, he smiles faintly, realizing that this combat magic may be far more versatile than he once believed. If he merges this strength with his incredible speed, he'll become unstoppable. Refusing to admit defeat, the delinquent leader gathers mana again, swearing to obliterate Setsuna with an even greater fireball. His lackeys tried desperately to stop him, warning that such a powerful spell could not only endanger them but also draw the instructor's attention. But the leader ignores every warning. His obsession with defeating Setsuna blinds him completely. Before he can even finish chanting his spell, before he understands what's happening, Setsuna is already upon him, swift as lightning. Moments later, the other students gasp when they see the delinquent sprawled on the ground, completely unconscious. Setsuna, standing tall, feels a quiet surge of pride. He now knows that as long as the opponent is within range, he can dominate any fight. Extending his hand toward the remaining delinquents, his voice steady yet commanding, he orders them to return the girl's brooch. Without a second thought, they hurriedly place the brooch into his palm, terrified they'll share their fallen comrade's fate. Setsuna gently hands the brooch back to the red-haired girl. She beams up at him with a bright, almost puppy-like smile, thanking him warmly for stepping in. In a cheerful tone, she finally introduces herself as Layla Rosewell, stretching out her hand toward Setsuna in greeting. Without a trace of hesitation, she grabs onto his arm as though they've been close for ages, pulling him into an awkwardly intimate pose. With a teasing grin, she asks why he chose the close combat magic path. Knowing no one would ever believe his true reason, Setsuna brushes off the question and instead asks her for directions to the close combat department. Layla explains that orientation for new students has already started and urges him to hurry along. As they make their way there, Setsuna can't help but scoff at how neglected the close combat department is. It's so despised that it's tucked away in the Academy's most isolated corner. His thoughts drift back to the time when the headmaster once showed him the markings on the back of his hand, revealing that he bore the crests of not one but two different magic paths. Setsuna had recognized one of them, the summoning magic crest, but the other was unfamiliar to him. He had wanted to ask about it, but the headmaster only told him he'd understand when the right time came. The old man promised that when the moment arrived, he would personally pass on the knowledge of the second magic to him, but that day never came. Before Setsuna could uncover the truth, Vindrake appeared, and the headmaster was murdered swiftly because the dark gods sensed the hidden power within the old man's second magic. Now, reborn with another chance, Setsuna swears to master that forgotten magic and alter humanity's doomed fate. Soon enough, they arrive at the close combat magic department. Yet despite his confidence, Setsuna can't shake off a lingering worry. He fears that, given his current status, he might never earn the headmaster's recognition again. As they reach the department entrance, a sinister-looking professor is already waiting, glaring at Setsuna with disdain. He immediately berates him for arriving late. When Layla tries to explain, the professor cuts her off coldly, declaring that he doesn't care for excuses. He sneers at Setsuna, saying that while he might look impressive on the surface, the moment he joined this garbage department, he became trash himself. The professor jabs a finger at him in accusation, but Setsuna calmly pushes his hand away and rebukes him for his arrogance, reminding the man that, as a professor, he should at least have the dignity to defend the honor of his own department instead of tearing it down. Enraged, the professor grabs Setsuna by the collar. Setsuna remains unfazed, responding coolly that there are still countless unexplored possibilities within close combat magic. Smirking, the professor challenges him to prove it, demanding that he demonstrate whatever potential he claims to see. Around them, other students are hammering away at massive boulders as if searching for treasure. Setsuna quickly learns that breaking the boulder open is the first test, meant to assess a student's ranking in class. The professor shouts at the others in frustration, ridiculing them for wasting over an hour on the task without making any progress. Turning back to Setsuna, he orders him to show those possibilities he spoke of, and to make it more humiliating, he grants him only 10 minutes to shatter the rock and retrieve the crystal within. Layla gasps in shock. She knows this is practically impossible, especially since the rock assigned to Setsuna is even larger than everyone else's. The professor doesn't care in the slightest. He coldly reminds Setsuna that his 10-minute countdown has already begun. Without complaint, Setsuna walks calmly toward the massive stone. The professor assumes that Setsuna must already be regretting his decision, and mockingly suggests that he should just bow and apologize. Even Layla can't help but think Setsuna might be acting recklessly. Deciding to mock him further, the professor raises the stakes, telling him to break it within 10 seconds instead. Setsuna doesn't hesitate. He grips his training sword tightly and swings it with full force toward the rock. The professor snickers mid-sentence, already taunting him and asking what kind of punishment he prefers for failing. But his words are cut short as the enormous rock shatters instantly into fragments. From the rubble, Setsuna calmly extracts the glowing crystal and presents it to the stunned professor. Instead of being impressed, the man's face twists with rage. Layla stares wide-eyed, unable to believe what she's seeing. Setsuna actually pulled it off. The other students are just as astonished. They've been struggling for hours with smaller rocks, while he demolished a giant one in seconds. Desperate to save face, the professor accuses Setsuna of cheating. He insists that the boulder's composition makes it impossible to break in under 10 minutes, let alone a few seconds. Setsuna scoffs at the claim and retorts that if it truly takes the professor 10 minutes to break one, then perhaps he should consider quitting since he's clearly a trash instructor. The professor, Zakari, seethes in fury, ready to lash out, but before he can act rashly, a new presence steps in. His superior, Lionel, appears behind him, seizing Zakari by the head in one firm grip. Lionel's voice rumbles with irritation as he asks whether Zakari is bullying students again. He scolds him sharply for disrupting his nap with yet another pointless commotion, adding that Setsuna didn't cheat in the slightest. Lionel glares at Zakari and says flatly that if he can't even recognize a student's true technique, he has no business calling himself a teacher. Lionel then makes up his mind to reduce Zakari's lessons. To everyone's shock, he declares before the students that Zakari will now perform a monoguard, a statement that instantly paints terror across Zakari's face. Before Zakari can even open his mouth to protest, Lionel steps into position, his stance sharp and ready to strike. He warns that if Zakari is truly training, then blocking his blow should be no problem. Zakari pleads desperately, promising never to make such a mistake again. But Lionel shows no mercy. His fist drives forward while Zakari throws up his guard. The sheer force behind Lionel's punch still sends him flying, his body crashing into a nearby wall. Setsuna watches in silent awe, realizing from that single hit that Lionel's strength is far beyond ordinary. And once the matter with Zakari is finished, Lionel casually returns, laughing alongside Setsuna as though nothing unusual just occurred. With his cigar perched between his lips, Lionel advises Setsuna to give his all within the department. Setsuna confidently responds that he intends not only to become the best in his division, but also to surpass students from every other department. Lionel, genuinely impressed by that fire, assures Setsuna that he will always be willing to teach him any magic he wishes to learn. He then announces that it is time to decide who will represent them in the upcoming exchange match. The exchange match, he explains, is a grand event where all 8 magic departments of the academy compete to determine the most powerful among them. Each department selects one representative, and the final victor is chosen through a tournament. In his previous life, Setsuna had once claimed victory for the long-range combat department, a feat that earned him direct recognition from the headmaster. Lionel goes on to reveal that Setsuna was not the only student who passed the test. Before Setsuna had even arrived, another had already extracted the crystal. He looks down at the scattered fragments, astonished that they were launched from such an incredible distance. Gazing more closely, he recognizes the monstrous student responsible, Drago Okrid. Lionel calls Drago forward, his towering frame casting a shadow as he approaches Setsuna. He questions why Setsuna chose the close combat department despite clearly possessing far greater aptitude for other branches of magic. Setsuna calmly replies that there are goals he can only achieve through close combat magic, but Drago immediately cuts him off, scoffing that such ambitions mean nothing with a frail body like his. Exuding raw confidence, Drago lets his aura flare as he boasts about his bloodline, a family renowned for its excellence in the close combat department for generations. To live up to that legacy, he claims to have trained his body relentlessly for years. The overwhelming pressure from his aura shakes the watching students. Yet Setsuna stands unmoved. Drago lunges with a powerful punch, shouting that he refuses to let someone so weak become the department's representative. Setsuna recalls that Drago had been the only truly exceptional student of the close combat department in his past life. A faint grin spreads across Satsuna's face as he accepts Drago's challenge without hesitation. Lionel, pleased that the two have reached an agreement, declares that their duel will be held 1 week from now. Drago smirks as he walks away, warning Setsuna not to even think of escaping before their appointed day. He demands a fight to the death since Setsuna dares to call himself a close combat mage. The students begin speculating about the outcome, though nearly all are convinced that Setsuna stands no chance against Drago. Layla's cheerful smile fades instantly when she hears Setsuna refuse something. Deep down, Setsuna knows full well that in his current condition, he cannot hope to match Drago's strength. He then reveals a secret training site known only to him. Placing his hand against an ancient tree, a radiant green aura flows from his body. Setsuna grins, declaring that within this hidden spot, he intends to grow 3 times stronger. Setsuna feels the sacred tree resonating with him, just as it had in his previous life. He explains that its blessing is granted only to those recognized by the sacred tree itself, and thanks to his holy mana attribute, he can restore his energy through it. He had discovered this very tree long ago in his past life. The thought that he can now train endlessly without ever reaching his limit fills Setsuna with exhilaration. Layla beams at his confidence. Remembering that Setsuna had helped her retrieve her brooch, she decides it's her turn to lend him support. She raises her fist triumphantly into the air, but Setsuna only blinks in confusion, unable to understand her gesture. Meanwhile, inside the close combat department's training hall, Drago displays his monstrous physique and raw power, effortlessly lifting weights that should be impossible for a human. Yet even this grueling routine grows dull to him. He turns to Lionel, asking if there are still more of those black stones lying around the yard. Lionel, concerned, questions if Drago actually intends to break them all. With a grin, Drago proves his insanity by performing push-ups while carrying one of the massive rocks on his back as if it were weightless. Watching from the sidelines, Layla feels terror seize her heart. She's convinced that anyone struck by Drago in his current state would die on the spot. Panic overtakes her, prompting her to sprint towards Setsuna's location. Upon reaching the secret tree, she's astonished to find Setsuna calmly resting as though nothing is amiss. She scolds him, exclaiming that Drago is doing push-ups with 5 black steel rocks stacked on his back. Setsuna, however, remains unfazed. He already knows the extent of Drago's brutal training methods. A faint blue aura flickers in his eyes as he focuses intently on the textbook resting in his hands. Layla looks utterly puzzled and asks Setsuna to explain what he means. Setsuna clarifies that a physical boost is essentially reinforcement, the act of enhancing one's body by controlling the nervous system through mana. In short, enhancing the legs requires focusing mana into them, and the same principle applies to the hands or any other part of the body. Using that logic, he adds that boosting his memory only requires directing his concentration and mana toward his head. Rising from his seat, Setsuna declares that now that he's fully memorized every technique, it's time to put them into action. He then launches a precise, well-balanced kick, and immediately draws his monosword. Setsuna performs a fluid, graceful swing, yet he doesn't stop after just one. He keeps moving, his strikes growing faster and sharper. Layla stands frozen, amazed by his flawless rhythm and focus, until eventually exhaustion overwhelms him and he collapses onto the ground. Layla rushes forward to help, but he quickly assures her not to worry. He's merely pushing himself to his absolute limit with the physical boost. The sacred tree's blessing activates once again, and within moments, the bruises and roughness on his hands fade, restoring them to perfect condition. Concern fills Layla's voice as she pleads for Setsuna to find another way to train instead of forcing himself to such extremes. But Setsuna insists that there's no other choice. He can't afford to face Drago with half-baked training. He reminds her that Drago has spent years honing his body and close combat magic. He tells Layla that he must repeat this painful routine over 1,000 times before the weekends. Layla is horrified, knowing that even a single session of it already brings unbearable pain. Memories flood back to him of his childhood in the orphanage. Back then, he couldn't use magic, yet he practiced every single day. Even after countless failures, he never stopped trying. Though his progress was painfully slow, every step brought him a little closer to strength. Setsuna reassures Layla that she doesn't need to worry, as long as enduring the pain helps him grow stronger. Inspired, Layla decides to join him in his training. Soon after, Setsuna is already performing push-ups with heavy rocks piled across his back. Watching in awe, Layla realizes that Satsuna's effort surpasses everyone's, contrary to the rumors that his power came purely from talent. Drago, meanwhile, looks disgusted the moment he lays eyes on Setsuna, openly expressing his surprise that the man didn't run away. Setsuna simply smiles and replies that retreating was never an option, not when he's the representative of the close combat department. Lionel stands by the arena to oversee the duel as the official referee. Once both fighters take their stances and signal readiness, Lionel gives the word. The match begins. Setsuna wastes no time. He charges first, trying to seize the initiative with sheer speed. He aims a punch straight at Drago, but Drago blocks it with ease. Setsuna immediately follows up with a sharp kick, yet Drago once again raises his arms to block the blow. Still, the impact of Setsuna's strike forces Drago to slide backward a few steps. Setsuna is surprised to realize that none of his blows actually landed. Drago had used Monoguard to nullify every attack. Drago's expression hardens, his fury visible in his eyes. He then drives his fist directly into Setsuna's torso, releasing an explosive wave of energy. Layla gasps in terror, certain that Setsuna has been killed on the spot. The surrounding students can hardly believe what they're witnessing. A battle this intense between two newly promoted students. Setsuna, however, quickly understands that had that punch hit him cleanly, he would already be dead. Drago swings again, but Setsuna narrowly dodges the incoming blow. It doesn't end there. Drago follows up with a fierce right hook aimed straight at Setsuna's head. Setsuna manages to raise his arm just in time to block it. Yet Drago's irritation grows, angered that Setsuna has done nothing but defend since the start of the fight. He sneers, mocking Setsuna and calling him a pathetic weakling. He goes on to say that what Setsuna is showing now is his true limit. From the stands, Layla's anxiety deepens. Even after all his brutal training, Setsuna still seems unable to overcome Drago's power. But Lionel, with his seasoned eye as an instructor, sees the match from a different perspective. What the others fail to notice is that Setsuna is flawlessly parrying every strike using precise mana control. Drago continues pressing his assault. All the while, he rants bitterly about the arrogance of elites who have always looked down upon close combat magic. He declares that both he and his family have suffered countless humiliations for being born into a lineage tied to the close combat arts. With a dark scowl, Drago decides to get serious, and in an instant he draws his monosword. Without a moment's hesitation, Setsuna mirrors Drago's action and draws his own blade. The battle instantly shifts from an exchange of fists to a ferocious sword duel. Their blades crash with overwhelming force, each swing echoing through the arena. Drago suddenly propels himself into the air with an agile leap, moving with surprising speed for his size. Setsuna's sharp eyes follow every motion until Drago descends back toward the ground. Drago attempts to crush him completely upon landing, but Setsuna dodges at the last second. The spot where he stood explodes as the ground shatters under Drago's strike. Yet even after the missed hit, Drago refuses to hold back. The pressure of his assault forces Setsuna to slide backward. Drago pursues relentlessly, following up with another violent swing. At last, Drago has Setsuna cornered, forcing him onto the defensive. But in a single, calculated counter, Setsuna shatters Drago's mana-forged sword with one clean strike. Drago's eyes widen in disbelief at the sudden change in Setsuna's movement and speed. Setsuna's next swing nearly cleaves Drago in half, but Drago barely manages to twist aside in time to avoid being cut down. Remembering Setsuna's earlier words about aiming higher, Drago takes them to heart even as he fights. He throws a powerful left-handed punch, hoping to catch Setsuna off guard. But Setsuna instantly reacts and sidesteps with ease. In a blink, Setsuna slips into Drago's blind spot. However, before Setsuna can land his strike, Drago pivots sharply, raising his arms to block the incoming attack. Observing closely, Lionel notes that Setsuna is overwhelming Drago's offense and defense alike through flawless mana control. Yet, to him, the match's victor is still uncertain. Drago leaps backward to gain distance. He then conjures another mana blade, its aura burning brighter than before. Setsuna quickly deduces that Drago has decided to pour every last drop of his mana into a single, devastating blow meant to end the fight once and for all. Knowing this, Setsuna times his movement perfectly, dodging the attack with split-second precision. However, the maneuver leaves him just one step away from the edge of the ring. He glances behind him and realizes how close he is to being disqualified. Drago, on the other hand, grins in satisfaction, believing he has trapped Setsuna and robbed him of the space to use his signature footwork. With that advantage in mind, Drago gathers his strength for a finishing strike. His mana surges violently, radiating heat as if his body itself is boiling. Layla sees the aura erupt and feels terror grip her heart. She can't fathom what kind of attack Drago has just unleashed. Drago charges toward the cornered Setsuna, his fist glowing with lethal intent. His goal, to knock Setsuna straight into oblivion. The blow connects, but it strikes nothing more than Setsuna's afterimage. Using his mana, Setsuna had maintained a lingering image of himself in place even after moving, deceiving Drago completely. By the time Drago realizes the trick, Setsuna is already soaring high above him, and before Drago can even turn around, Setsuna's blade slashes downward, cutting diagonally across Drago's chest. The attack tears through his body, sending a surge of unbearable pain that rips a scream from Drago's throat. Lionel immediately understands what happened. Setsuna had used a perfect counterattack to turn Drago's unrelenting offense against him. Though both fought with tremendous skill, it's clear the match has reached its conclusion. Raising his hand, Lionel declares the duel over, announcing Setsuna as the winner. The result is undeniable. Drago lies on the ground in agony, completely defeated. Layla leaps from her seat in pure excitement, cheering loudly, while the rest of the students stare in stunned admiration. Despite the agony coursing through him, Drago stubbornly tries to rise. Holding his chest, he realizes that Setsuna's final strike had been deliberately restrained. Powerful enough to incapacitate him, yet precise enough not to kill. Setsuna steps closer and extends his hand, offering to help him up. But before taking it, Drago asks a single question. He wants to know what Setsuna is truly fighting for. Setsuna calmly replies that he fights so that he will never lose to anyone. Moreover, he fights to ensure that nothing precious is ever taken from him again. To achieve that, he vows to become stronger than anyone else in existence. Hearing this, Drago lets out a faint laugh and admits, at last, that Setsuna truly is strong. With visible pain, Drago forces himself to his feet and formally concedes defeat, while Setsuna acknowledges him with praise for living up to his reputation. Deep down, Setsuna senses that Drago may one day become a key ally in the coming battle against the greater evil. Lionel steps forward, grasping Setsuna's arm and raising it high for all to see. Then, with a proud smile, he announces to everyone present that Setsuna has officially been chosen as the representative of the Close Combat Department. A few days later, Lionel informed Drago that the time had come for him and the other chosen representatives to gather in preparation for the upcoming exchange match. He then turned to Setsuna, reminding him sternly to conduct himself properly once they were there. Setsuna gave a brief nod of acknowledgement before pushing open the heavy door. The moment he stepped inside, every gaze in the room immediately turned toward him. As the official representative of the Close Combat Department, his very presence caused the air around the other students to shift, tension rising within the room. One of the gathered representatives spoke up boldly, mocking Setsuna by saying that he was only about to add more disgrace to the shame already burdening his department. Setsuna's eyes flicked to the crest on the man's hand, instantly recognizing it as the mark of the Enchantment Magic Department. Without hesitation, he told the man that he would be his opponent in the first round. The enchanter sneered, taunting Setsuna by pointing out that the Close Combat Department hadn't won a single tournament in 100 years. He added that all they were good for was standing at the edge of the academy, building muscle while contributing nothing of real value. Before the mocking words could finish leaving his mouth, Setsuna abruptly stepped down on the man's foot. The enchanter winced, pain flashing across his face. With a cold, unbothered tone, Setsuna told him that the people in his department must be incredibly rude, since they clearly never learned the proper way to greet someone. The enchantment representative tried to retort, but Setsuna cut him off sharply, declaring that he didn't care how long the Close Combat Department had gone without victory, because this time, they would absolutely take the win. The enchantment representative snapped back, telling Setsuna to stop spouting nonsense. Just then, a calm voice interrupted from behind them, suggesting that they wait until the first match before continuing their argument. Setsuna froze for a brief moment, realizing that everything was unfolding exactly as it had before his regression. The voice turned out to belong to none other than the headmaster himself. Carol from the summoning department eagerly greeted the headmaster, saying how excited she was to demonstrate her department's power. Setsuna recognized her immediately, noting that she still possessed that same lively, cheerful demeanor. He remembered clearly how Carol had given him a hard time during their battle before the regression. Though he had managed to win back then, he silently reminded himself to be far more cautious this time. The headmaster finally addressed the group, congratulating them all for being chosen as their department's representatives. He spoke with pride, saying how glad he was to see 8 exceptional talents gathered together. He then announced that the tournament would be held in a one-on-one format, with each matchup determined randomly. As it turned out, the Close Combat Department would be facing the Enchantment Magic Department, known for imbuing mana into everyday objects. The second match would feature the Healing Magic Department, famous for performing miracles and supporting allies, against the Long-Range Magic Department, specialists in defeating enemies before they could even get close. The third contest would pit the Formation Magic Department, experts in embedding power into complex magical arrays, against the Summoning Magic Department, which commanded mystical beasts from beyond the world. And finally, the last battle would feature the Special Magic Department, those whose abilities couldn't be classified into any single category, against the Alchemy Magic Department, capable of permanently altering the nature of matter itself. The headmaster explained that this inter-school exchange match was essentially a practical lesson, meant to inspire each department with new perspectives from others. He told them that the event would take place in 10 days, and until then, they were free to either study new spells or refine what they already knew. Their choice was entirely their own. Yet he added with a faint smile that he was especially looking forward to witnessing their true fighting spirit. Carol responded brightly, expressing her excitement for what lay ahead. As the headmaster began walking through the lobby, Setsuna hurried after him. He knew this might be his only chance to speak with the old man privately. Once he caught up, he told the headmaster that he had a request to make. Without hesitation, Setsuna asked if the headmaster would be willing to teach him his magic, should he manage to win the tournament. The headmaster pretended to misunderstand, joking that his summoning magic wouldn't be of any use to someone like Setsuna. But Setsuna quickly interrupted, clarifying that he wasn't referring to summoning magic, he was talking about the other one. The moment the words left his mouth, the headmaster's expression changed drastically, his energy spiking. The pressure that followed was overwhelming, strong enough to almost paralyze Setsuna where he stood. The old man demanded to know how Setsuna had learned of his other magic. Setsuna could clearly sense the caution and suspicion in the headmaster's voice. Yet he calmly reminded him that the close combat department's first victory in a century would carry meaning beyond just pride. Extending his hand, he asked whether the headmaster truly didn't wish to see that happen. At that moment, the headmaster seemed to understand Setsuna's resolve. With a faint, thoughtful smile, he agreed, saying he would teach him the second magic on the day Setsuna claimed the championship. Setsuna bowed deeply, expressing his gratitude for the promise. But the headmaster warned him that the path ahead would not be easy. Setsuna, undeterred, declared that he was ready to prove his determination in the tournament. Pleased by his conviction, the headmaster nodded and continued on his way, leaving Setsuna standing there thinking of the path that Layla had told him about. Out of nowhere, Setsuna was suddenly ambushed by a massive golem, its colossal hand nearly crushing his skull in a single strike. But at the last instant he managed to block the blow. It quickly became clear that the golem belonged to none other than the enchantment department's representative. Setsuna was momentarily stunned, realizing that the attack had come directly from him. The enchantment representative sneered, saying he couldn't wait for the official match because he intended to deal with Setsuna long before that. He spat venomous words, calling Setsuna a worthless piece of trash who had dared to humiliate him. Setsuna mocked him in return, calmly remarking that he was simply facing the consequences of his own actions. Before Setsuna could react further, several more golems materialized behind the enchanter, standing menacingly at his command. However, after a brief pause, the enchanter decided to dissolve the summoned constructs. He had realized that if word got out he was bullying someone from the close combat department, it would ruin his image. As he turned to leave, he smirked and told Setsuna that he'd be much more prepared when the official match came around. Setsuna, watching him go, couldn't help but acknowledge the enchanter's skill. His ability to channel mana through multiple constructs at once was impressive. But when Setsuna looked down and saw his bread crushed on the ground, a wave of quiet irritation hit him. The fool had ruined his snack. The next day, Lionel gathered the students, announcing that it was time to prepare seriously for the upcoming exchange match. To begin, they would analyze the battle between Drago and Setsuna. Lionel asked whether everyone had finally understood what they were lacking, and all of them responded with a unified yes. He then called on Drago to be the first to state his weakness. Drago admitted that he had lost control of both his mana and emotions during the previous match. Lionel turned to Setsuna next, and he confessed that his biggest flaw was a lack of raw power. He had been outmatched by Drago in terms of sheer strength. Lionel smiled, pleased that both had come to recognize their shortcomings, saying that this was the first and most important step toward improvement. He then instructed them to focus on refining those weaknesses. Layla raised her hand, asking if their upcoming sparring session would serve as training for the exchange match. Lionel commended her for the smart question. He explained that Setsuna's opponent would indeed be the enchantment representative, Joel, whom Setsuna already knew to be capable of controlling multiple golems simultaneously for offense and defense. For Setsuna's part, Lionel advised that he would need to deflect Drago's attacks effectively, creating openings for counterstrikes. Drago clenched his fists, preparing for the training session, assuring Setsuna that things would not go the same way they had last time. Setsuna smiled lightly, replying that he was looking forward to it. Drago dashed forward with explosive speed, throwing a powerful left-handed punch aimed straight at Setsuna's face. But Setsuna evaded the blow in a swift motion. For a brief second, Setsuna thought he had perfectly blocked Drago's assault, until another strike came flying at him from an unexpected angle. Lionel's eyes gleamed in approval, impressed that Drago had managed to maintain an ideal balance between speed and power. Drago's form blurred like a mirage as he unleashed a flurry of punches toward Setsuna. Setsuna focused, trying to anticipate his movements, but he misread one feint and nearly lost his head to the giant's devastating swing. Still, he managed to slip away just in time. Lionel, watching intently, couldn't help but smile, clearly impressed. He called out instructions, telling Setsuna what kind of combination he needed to execute. Setsuna stepped back, then countered with a sharp, precise strike of his own. In the end, both Setsuna and Drago collapsed onto the ground, completely exhausted. Drago admitted between breaths that Setsuna had truly pushed him to his limit. Lionel praised them both, noting that their performance had been commendable. He told Setsuna that within a few more days of training, he should be capable of handling 4 or even 5 golems at once. Lionel felt genuinely satisfied. Setsuna grasped everything he taught almost instantly. Though Drago had an excellent grasp of close combat fundamentals, Setsuna's intuition and battle sense were nothing short of extraordinary. Before long, the long-awaited day of the tournament arrived. The arena was packed. Students, professors, and spectators filled every seat. The headmaster ascended the podium, ready to address the crowd. He declared that only one of the 8 representatives would emerge as the strongest of them all. Strangely enough, even the delinquent whom Setsuna had once beaten up was now betting on him to win. Meanwhile, several students turned their attention to the quiet young man named Actor, the representative of the long-range magic department. It was already decided that he would face whichever fighter won between Setsuna and Joel. Actor stood still, his expression calm but his aura sharp and lethal. As the tournament system initialized, it was revealed that the battle stages would shift randomly throughout the matches. Joel grinned wickedly when he heard that, realizing the sudden rule change played perfectly into his strategy. His classmates erupted in cheers, shouting encouragement for him to crush the so-called weakling, Setsuna, in their match. Layla shouts back at the boys, daring them to see for themselves whether Setsuna will still be called the underdog once this match is over. Layla nearly jumps to her feet, ready to storm over and knock some sense into them, but Lionel quickly holds her down. Setsuna, on the other hand, doesn't feel the slightest bit of pressure. Instead, he smiles quietly at the scene. Once both contestants are in position, the referee signals the start of the match. Joel immediately pulls out a fragment of the black steel rock and grins at Setsuna, asking if he knows what he's holding. Setsuna instantly recognizes it without question. Joel smirks, pleased that Setsuna knows, and reveals that it's a fragment essential for creating a golem when fused with sand. He casually drops the fragment to the ground. Then he channels energy into it and fuses it with the sand beneath. A terrifying golem takes shape before everyone's eyes. Joel declares with confidence that not even a blade could leave a single scratch on the black steel golem. But that's not all. He has more fragments hidden away. Opening his pouch, he takes out several others that shimmer faintly. With an evil grin, he turns each one into another golem and mocks Setsuna, saying his odds of winning are less than 1 in 10,000. The sight of so many golems sends a chill through Layla, filling her with fear. To make matters worse, Joel boasts that these golems can be created infinitely using the surrounding sand, assuring Setsuna that there's no possible way he'll ever reach him. Some students watching from the sidelines start whispering that the outcome is already decided and urge Setsuna to surrender before he gets hurt. Joel continues acting smug and superior, telling Setsuna that he's willing to hear any final words he might have. But then, Setsuna drops a remark that completely shatters Joel's confidence and composure. He tells Joel he's disappointed, that this, apparently, is the best Joel can do. Enraged by the insult, Joel completely loses his temper. He immediately commands all his golems to attack Setsuna at once. The massive figures rush forward and leap toward Setsuna in unison. Joel bursts into laughter, yelling that Setsuna is finally getting what he deserves for provoking him. The entire arena fills with a thick cloud of dust, making it impossible for anyone to see what's happening inside. But within that haze, Setsuna is effortlessly slicing through the golems as if they were made of paper. He doesn't even move from his spot while destroying them. When the dust begins to settle, Joel finally sees the truth. All his golems lie in shattered pieces, while Setsuna calmly states that he has already mastered the black steel rock. Joel stares in disbelief. He knows those golems were supposed to be nearly indestructible. Desperate, he starts recreating them again, reminding Setsuna that he can make as many as he wants. But Setsuna simply replies that when it comes to close-range combat, nothing surpasses close-range magic. No matter how many golems Joel summons, they'll never stand a chance, since all they know are basic attack patterns. With that, he cuts them all down in a flash. His sword glides effortlessly, slicing through the golems like he's cutting through butter. Yet Joel refuses to back down. He reaches for his pouch again, trying to grab more fragments. But before he can even blink, Setsuna appears right in front of him. Setsuna calmly tells him that this match was unfair from the start, but not in Joel's favor. Unable to react, Joel gets slammed in the face with a solid punch. His glasses fly off and blood bursts from his mouth. He's sent flying across the arena, crashing hard into the ground. The audience still can't see what's happening because of the dust swirling around. Slowly, the dust begins to clear, and only one figure remains standing, though the crowd can't tell who it is just yet. Then the referee announces it. Setsuna is the winner of the first match. Joel lies unconscious on the ground. Setsuna smiles quietly, satisfied with securing his first victory. Layla beams with joy, celebrating the moment she realizes Setsuna has won. Those who doubted him are left speechless, unable to believe what they'd just witnessed. Setsuna's victory is something no one has seen in years. Most of them can't even understand how he managed to defeat Joel. So, to make sense of it, they convince themselves that Setsuna just got lucky, that he never should have won in the first place. But Cyrus knows better. He realizes Joel didn't self-destruct. Setsuna genuinely beat him fair and square. Because of that victory, even the actor finally decides to take Setsuna seriously. He starts thinking that he'll have to face him head-on soon enough. And with that, the tournament continues. The second match begins. Setsuna returns to the stands, where Layla greets him with excitement. She asks if he plans to watch the next match. He nods, saying he wants to see if there's anything new he can learn from it. The next departments are summoned into formation, preparing for battle. From the very start, Carol of the summoning department takes control of the match. She's perched atop a fierce-looking wolf, one that launches powerful ice attacks straight toward her opponent's formation. Meanwhile, the representative from the formation department keeps advancing, slicing through the incoming ice attacks as he tries to close the distance to Carol. Watching closely, Setsuna can't help but be impressed by the representative's smooth movements. He quietly wonders if he could fight with the same precision in close-range combat. Layla admits that the other department's moves look pretty cool, but she still prefers focusing on getting stronger in close combat magic alone. Curious, Satsuna finally asks her why she chose to specialize in close combat magic when there were plenty of other magic paths to follow. Layla explains softly that she made that choice because, long ago, a close combat mage once saved her life. She recalls the memory. She and her little brother were playing in the forest when a grizzly bear suddenly appeared and attacked them. She truly thought that day would be their last. Ever since then, she has carried one dream in her heart, to become a close combat mage strong enough to protect and help others in need. Layla lets out a nervous chuckle, saying her reason might sound childish, but Satsuna immediately shakes his head, telling her it isn't childish at all. He says that as long as she has a clear goal in her heart, she will definitely keep getting stronger. Layla smiles like a little kid, touched by his words. The two share a quiet, heartfelt moment together. But that moment doesn't last long. Leo suddenly shows up out of nowhere. It turns out Leo is ranked second in the long-range department, right below Satsuna. With a friendly grin, Leo pats Satsuna on the shoulder, saying he watched his match and was genuinely impressed. Then he immediately assumes Layla is Satsuna's girlfriend. Layla's face turns completely red as she frantically tells him he's got it all wrong. Before long, the second round begins. The first match pits the long-range and close combat departments against each other. When Drago notices the lava-filled stage, he instantly realizes how hard it will be to get close to the opponent. Lionel agrees that while the stage is challenging, it definitely favors the other side. Meanwhile, Cyrus has only one goal: to teach Satsuna a harsh lesson for daring to join the close combat department. Around that time, Layla goes to see Satsuna while he's studying. On the table sits a strange vase, and Satsuna quickly warns her not to touch it, explaining that it's a contact-triggered magic tool. He tells her that the vase would literally drain all of her mana the moment she made contact. Shocked, Layla demands to know why he's keeping something so dangerous nearby. Satsuna calmly explains that it's actually a trap set for him, the 7th one he's found so far. Layla is taken aback and asks if he's really okay with traps being placed around him like this. Satsuna says he's been managing to avoid them so far, so he's not too worried. He also knows exactly who's behind it. Akhtar, a skilled troublemaker who's so careful he leaves no evidence behind. Just then, they hear children's voices calling from the doorway. When they step outside, they find a group of kids holding bouquets of flowers meant for them. The kids cheerfully explain that someone across the hall asked them to deliver the flowers. But when they turn around to point out who it was, there's no one there. Layla wonders why that person didn't just come deliver the flowers in person. The kids answer that the sender said he was too shy to show himself. Then, out of nowhere, Layla begins feeling dizzy. Satsuna's instincts kick in. He immediately kicks the flowers away, recognizing something all too familiar from his past life. Alarmed, Layla asks what's wrong, and Satsuna explains that the flowers are laced with a poisonous herb known as venom grass. Before they can react, the kids start coughing violently. They stumble and collapse, and Satsuna and Layla rush to help them. But Satsuna is furious. Whoever did this clearly doesn't care about dragging innocent children into their schemes. He tells Layla they have to treat the kids immediately, because the poison will become irreversible if they don't act fast. Yet he's worried about where they'll find a healer capable of handling such a toxin. They carefully lay the kids on the ground, and Layla asks if their condition is critical. Satsuna nods gravely, confirming it is. Still, he urges Layla to stay back, afraid the poison might spread through close contact. But Layla tells him not to worry, she's got this handled. She pulls out a small brooch her mother once gave her. The moment Satsuna sees it, he recognizes the item right away. Layla kneels beside the children and activates the brooch without hesitation. She explains that her mother entrusted it to her for emergencies, and this situation clearly counts as one. Satsuna smiles, grateful for her quick thinking and courage. He then channels aura through his entire body and reaches for the poisonous flowers. Without wasting a moment, he runs off to get rid of the venom grass before its toxins spread any further. After all, venom grass is known to be the deadliest of all poisonous plants. Because of its extreme toxicity, he can't just discard it anywhere near people. He needs to find an isolated spot. As he runs, he can already feel the poison starting to seep into his own body. Gritting his teeth, Satsuna pushes forward, heading toward the sacred tree, the only safe place to dispose of it. Just as he reaches the base of the sacred tree, his vision begins to blur. With his last ounce of strength, Satsuna hurls the poisoned flowers high into the air. In the same motion, he draws his mana blade, its edge glowing with fierce energy. One clean slash later, the flowers are reduced to nothing, completely destroyed before they can release another trace of toxin. Meanwhile, back at the arena, everyone is waiting impatiently for Satsuna's arrival. Whispers spread among the crowd as they start assuming that he must have run away. The referee checks the time. The match is supposed to begin, yet Satsuna is nowhere to be seen. Just as the clock hits the limit, he's about to declare Akhtar the automatic winner by disqualification, when suddenly, Satsuna appears at the entrance. He declares firmly that he has no intention of forfeiting. His expression is filled with anger, and dark blotches from the poison still cover his body. Akhtar bursts into laughter at the sight, openly mocking him. He doesn't even bother to deny it, proudly admitting that he was the one who sent those cursed flowers to Satsuna. Satsuna glares at him furiously, demanding to know if he even cares that innocent children were hurt because of his poison. But Akhtar just shrugs and pretends not to know anything about it. Then, with disgusting arrogance, he adds that the kids should be honored to have served someone of his status. That remark pushes Satsuna over the edge. His fury burns even hotter. With both fighters now present, the referee wastes no time and signals the start of the match. Akhtar immediately launches a long-range magic blast straight at Satsuna. Satsuna narrowly dodges the attack. From the sidelines, Drago can tell something's wrong. Satsuna's mana flow looks completely unstable and unrefined. The truth is, Satsuna had managed to purify the venom grass using the sacred tree, but in his rush he couldn't cleanse the poison lingering inside his own body. Akhtar keeps firing a barrage of fireballs, determined to end the fight before Satsuna can regain control. From the stands, it's obvious that Satsuna is stuck on the defensive. Cyrus watches with a sinister smile. Everything is going exactly according to his plan. Standing at the far end of the arena, he waits eagerly for the moment Satsuna will be completely humiliated. Akhtar notices that Satsuna's focus is faltering and takes advantage of it, launching an even deadlier series of long-range attacks. Satsuna's critics start shouting from the crowd, mocking him for constantly dodging and insisting he has no way of dealing with a long-range mage. But Satsuna is already preparing to defend himself with Monoguard. Just then, a massive, large-scale attack comes hurtling toward him. His Monoguard barrier shatters under the pressure, unable to withstand the overwhelming force. The explosion throws Satsuna backward, slicing open his skin and leaving bloody cuts all over him. Akhtar laughs mockingly, taunting that Satsuna is already falling apart. But instead of backing down, Satsuna calmly asks why Akhtar isn't finishing him off yet. After all, the smartest move would be to prevent any close combat from happening. That question makes Satsuna realize something. Akhtar must be setting up a bigger plan since all he's done so far is provoke him. Akhtar raises an eyebrow, surprised to be lectured mid-battle, but he admits Satsuna's observation is sharp. He warns that Satsuna shouldn't underestimate him. Then, with a sly grin, he gestures toward the ground. To Satsuna's shock, a massive pit of molten lava now separates them. He's been standing on a lone rock pillar surrounded by boiling magma. One of the students who had bet on Satsuna nearly chokes on his drink after seeing that. Akhtar boasts proudly that he doesn't take unnecessary risks. Everything Satsuna is seeing now, he says, was part of his plan from the very start. And with that, he summons a powerful storm cannon spell. Drago's face twists with concern the moment he recognizes the deadly magic being prepared. Then, cutting through the noise, Satsuna hears Layla's voice calling from the stands. She shouts to tell him that the kids are safe. That's all the reassurance Satsuna needs. Now he can finally go all out without hesitation. Despite the pain racking his body, he straightens his back and tells Akhtar that he's about to witness a comeback. Akhtar's smirk fades instantly, his eyes widening in disbelief at Satsuna's recovery. Satsuna tells him not to look so shocked. All he did was boost his physical energy. He explains that since the start of the fight, he's been activating his cells to gradually break down the poison inside him. Then he adds that Akhtar himself has fallen into his trap, since while healing, Satsuna had been secretly breaking apart the ground beneath them. Akhtar scoffs, telling him not to get too full of himself. From his point of view, Satsuna is still in no condition to fight back. Cyrus agrees loudly from the stands, cheering Akhtar on and telling him to finish the job. Akhtar raises his hand and fires the storm cannon straight at Satsuna. Satsuna narrows his eyes, weighing every option he has left, and prepares a carefully timed counter, praying that his next move will be enough to turn the tide. Just as the storm cannon is about to reach him, Satsuna swings his mana blade with full force. He channels all his remaining strength into that strike, managing to repel the raging storm. The entire arena goes silent in shock. Even Drago, who had been watching closely, can't hide his disbelief. Before the redirected magic can hit Akhtar, he steps forward and neutralizes it with his own spell, boasting proudly that he can easily handle his own attacks. He then mocks Satsuna, saying his tactics are spent and the fight is as good as over. But then, as the smoke disperses, Akhtar freezes. Satsuna is already charging toward him, mana blade gleaming in hand. Satsuna locks eyes with him, asking if he really thought keeping some distance would make him safe. With no time to react or defend himself, Akhtar is struck by Satsuna's blade, a clean diagonal slash cutting across his chest, dropping him to the ground. Standing over him, Satsuna tells him coldly to seek forgiveness from the children if he truly wishes to be forgiven. Akhtar collapses unconscious, and the referee announces Satsuna as the victor. Drago breaks into a relieved smile upon seeing Satsuna's victory. But the battlefield is still unstable, and the ground beneath them begins to crumble toward the lava pit. Satsuna realizes Akhtar is still unconscious and won't be able to avoid falling in. Acting fast, he grabs Akhtar by the arm. Just as both are about to plunge into the lava, Carol summons her beast, the mighty Fenrir, to intervene. Satsuna is stunned when the enormous wolf-like creature leaps out, saving them from certain death. The crowd erupts with excitement at the dramatic rescue and the incredible performance of their academy representatives. Fenrir safely carries both fighters away from danger. Carol pats its head in gratitude, and the medical team rushes in to take Akhtar away while treating Setsuna's injuries. Carol gives a light smile, teasing Setsuna that he probably would have been fine even without her help, but Setsuna insists that she genuinely saved his life. He realizes Carol isn't just powerful. She's got the talent and the grace to match. Deep down, he knows he'll need top-level preparation if he ever wants to face her in battle. Meanwhile, Setsuna's former haters start rethinking their opinions. His victory over Joel now seems far from luck. After all, he just defeated Akhtar fair and square, and they can tell things are only going to get tougher for them if this continues. The headmaster watches the ongoing tournament calmly, showing no sign of surprise. Cyrus, however, is furious that Akhtar lost to Setsuna. Seething with rage, he vows never to forgive him. After receiving medical attention, Setsuna returns to the stands to meet Layla. Drago tells him he already heard everything from her and admits it must have been a rough fight. Setsuna immediately asks Layla about the kids, and she tells him they're resting safely in the infirmary. She assures him the doctor confirmed they'll make a full recovery soon. Relieved, Setsuna lets out a calm smile, but suddenly he senses a strange, unsettling aura. It makes him instinctively turn around. Layla notices and asks if something's wrong, but he brushes it off, saying it's nothing. Still, in his mind, he wonders what kind of hidden power or conspiracy lies behind this tournament. Later, Setsuna isolates himself deep in the forest to train. There, he summons Lionel, who appears and asks why he's been called. Setsuna explains that he wants to be guided again, just like before. This time, he formally addresses him by his full title, Lionel, the Fist of Comet. It was a name he once heard back at the Magic Corps during his previous life. The Fist of Comet referred to a legendary mage said to have slain dragons with a single strike. By the time Setsuna had joined the army back then, Lionel had already retired, so they never fought side by side. Humbly, Setsuna bows before him, asking sincerely to be taught his magic. Lionel scratches his head, a little embarrassed, saying it's been ages since anyone called him by that nickname. Setsuna smiles and tells him not to worry. To him, Lionel is still the strongest close combat mage he's ever known. Lionel then asks quietly why Setsuna seeks even more power when he's already strong enough as he is. Setsuna admits that his strength still isn't enough, but even so, he refuses to lose to anyone. Not even if his opponent happens to be a freaking god. Hearing that, Lionel bursts into laughter, finding Setsuna's words both bold and amusing. He calls him a truly fascinating kid. Then, with a grin, Lionel agrees to teach Setsuna his magic, though he warns that he normally wouldn't share it with someone whose body is still developing. Lionel clenches his fist tightly. The sheer pressure of the mana he's gathering leaves Setsuna stunned. Lionel tells him to pay close attention. When he strikes, the explosion of energy tears through the ground, leaving a devastating crater at the point of impact. Setsuna's eyes light up in pure excitement, amazed by the incredible power Lionel just displayed. Meanwhile, Carol has advanced to the tournament finals, where she'll be facing Setsuna. Before the match, she meets a strange man for tea, but while she's momentarily distracted, that same man suddenly attacks her, casting a strange spell over her. It seems to be some kind of preparation for her upcoming battle against Setsuna. A week passes, and during his training sessions with Lionel, Setsuna is looking sharper and stronger than ever. Lionel praises him, saying he's mastered the Fist of Comet, though Setsuna tweaks it and gives it his own name, Charge Bullet. Soon, the arena is overflowing with spectators. Everyone's eager to witness the long-awaited tournament final. The excitement builds as the match is announced. Setsuna versus Carol. And the tension keeps everyone on edge. Unlike before, people actually believe Setsuna stands a chance this time, yet most still think Carol will ultimately claim victory. The group of kids Setsuna once helped are there too, cheering loudly for him from the stands. The chosen stage for this final battle is none other than the ruins of the goddess. To ensure no one gets hurt from the fierce combat that's about to unfold, mages cast a powerful barrier surrounding the stage. Layla feels relieved, glad that Setsuna will finally fight on even ground. Still, Lionel remains uneasy about the outcome. Setsuna glances over at the headmaster, remembering the promise he made to learn Lionel's magic if he wins this tournament. Carol smiles, noting how much brighter and more confident Setsuna looks now. She tells him to give it everything he's got. Both fighters take their positions, and once ready, the referee signals the start of the match. Carol wastes no time, summoning Fenrir to the field. The beast unleashes a massive blast of ice from its jaws, and Setsuna narrowly dodges it. It doesn't take him long to realize that Fenrir's attacks are purely freezing-based. Carol's excitement only grows as she watches Setsuna evade. His quick reflexes impress her deeply. Still, she warns him that she won't let him catch his breath. With another command, she orders her beast to strike again. This time, Setsuna multiplies his physical boost tenfold to avoid the incoming assault. His speed skyrockets, allowing him to dodge every single attack aimed his way. In a flash, he slashes Fenrir across the head. Layla cheers, thinking Setsuna has finally turned the tide, but Lionel quickly tells her it's far from over-summoned beasts, after all, are condensed forms of mana. He explains that such a wound means nothing, and as expected, the gash on Fenrir's head begins to heal almost instantly. Carol beams with pride, praising her beast for its remarkable resilience. She commends it for showcasing its true strength. Then, without warning, Carol freezes the entire battlefield. Thankfully, the barrier keeps the freezing effect from spreading beyond the arena. Everything inside is encased in shimmering frost, but the crowd remains safe. Determined to end things once and for all, Setsuna decides it's time to finish the fight with his newly forged skill, Charge Bullet. Before Setsuna can even make his move, Carol unleashes a barrage of attacks straight at him. He's forced to stay on the defensive, barely keeping up with her relentless offense. As always, his critics in the crowd start jeering, mocking that there's no way he can ever defeat a summoner. Even the kids who once cheered him on are terrified, watching as Setsuna gets tossed around the ring like a rag doll. Then suddenly, Lionel's eyes widen in shock. He realizes what Setsuna is about to attempt. Layla catches the change in his expression and quickly asks, "What's wrong?" Lionel brushes it off, pretending everything is fine. But deep down, he knows Setsuna is about to use Charge Bullet, a technique that simply isn't meant to work in a one-on-one battle. Meanwhile, Carol studies the way Setsuna is moving. His rhythm feels off, calculated, so she suspects he's plotting something. Determined to stop him, she acts fast. With a wave of her hand, she summons a giant bird-type beast. Drago's jaw drops. He never expected her to have a second summon in reserve. Even Lionel can't help but admit the girl's got real talent, handling 2 summons at once without losing control. In the blink of an eye, Setsuna finds himself surrounded by 2 ferocious monsters closing in on him. They both charge at once, and the violent clash sends up a huge cloud of dust and smoke across the arena. But when the smoke finally clears, Setsuna is standing firm, blocking both beasts using his monoguard shield. He acknowledges that Carol is truly an exceptional mage, and that's exactly why he had already anticipated she'd pull out a secret trump card. Carol, on the other hand, is stunned that Setsuna managed to deflect her combined assault. While she's still frozen in disbelief, Setsuna activates his Charge Bullet, ready to end the match right there. But at that exact moment, the strange man who had been secretly observing from the shadows triggers the spell he had placed on Carol. Carol screams as the dark magic takes over her body, twisting her mana violently. Setsuna yells her name and leaps toward her, trying to stop whatever's happening. To his horror, he realizes the energy engulfing her is none other than the evil god's magic. Setsuna's mind races. None of it makes sense. He can't understand what's happening to Carol or why she's in so much pain. Then Carol slowly raises her trembling hand, and suddenly an overwhelming wave of darkness bursts forth. A swarm of demonic beasts manifests out of thin air, roaring across the battlefield. Yet the spectators watching still don't realize Carol isn't the one summoning them. Lionel, however, quickly picks up on it. He senses the strange mana source and knows immediately that it's not coming from her. He shouts to the referee to stop the match and take down the barrier, frantically demanding to know where the formation mage is. None of them realize that the barrier mage has already been knocked unconscious by that mysterious man. Setsuna now faces a full army of monsters, all charging at him at once. As he dodges their relentless attacks, he senses that the real mana source must be nearby and decides to trace it while fending them off. But the beast's strikes are vicious. One of them rakes its claws across his arms, cutting deep. Setsuna screams in agony as he's thrown violently to the ground. Gritting his teeth, he forces himself up again, though his hands are shredded and bleeding heavily. Watching from afar, the strange man smirks, convinced that Setsuna won't last long with such severe injuries. Carol, meanwhile, is reaching her limit. Lionel can tell she won't survive much longer if this continues. For a brief moment, Carol regains a bit of control and weakly tells Setsuna to run away. He freezes, stunned by her words. This only confirms his suspicion that she's being manipulated. Tears roll down Carol's cheeks as she pleads with Setsuna to flee before he ends up dying too. But the summoned beasts move with terrifying coordination, cutting off every escape route he tries to take. Enraged, Setsuna channels his remaining mana and hurls it toward the oncoming swarm. Meanwhile, the headmaster stays seated, choosing not to interfere. Lionel, however, frantically searches for the unconscious mage who cast the barrier, knowing Setsuna's mana reserves are almost depleted. He silently prays that Setsuna can hold on long enough for him to find that mage before it's too late. Setsuna continues to fight desperately against the swarm of summoned beasts, each attack pushing him closer to his limit. Then suddenly, one of the creatures slips into his blind spot and drives its horn straight through his thigh. Layla gasps in horror as she sees his leg mangled and bleeding heavily. Even the students who once mocked Setsuna can't help but admit that Carol has gone too far this time. Setsuna crashes to the ground, barely conscious, while the mysterious man behind the scenes prepares to command his beasts. To finish both Setsuna and Carol off, Fenrir then charges straight towards Setsuna. He raises his arm to shield himself, but the beast bites down hard, sinking its fangs deep into his arm and sending waves of unbearable pain through his body. Setsuna lets out a blood-curdling scream. In that instant, a memory flashes through his mind, a lecture with Lionel, where the teacher once asked them the most crucial thing to remember in battle. Drago had answered that victory comes from subduing the enemy with a single, powerful strike. Setsuna, however, had said it was about minimizing damage while closing the distance. Lionel told them both they were right, but added that there was still something missing. He explained that above all else, what a fighter truly needs is an unbreakable fighting spirit, the will to land that one decisive blow. That was why Lionel had trained them in endurance, to survive and fight even when every part of them screamed to give up. Now, with Fenrir still pinning down his arm, Setsuna grits his teeth and begins gathering his mana. He focuses every ounce of energy he has left to prepare his ultimate skill, the charge bullet. With the summoned beasts now running wild and out of control, Setsuna makes up his mind to wipe them all out in one strike. He channels every drop of mana into his right fist, his eyes glowing with fierce determination as he readies his final attack. With all the beasts lined up before him, Setsuna unleashes the charge bullet. The blast tears through the entire group, cutting through every creature and annihilating them in an instant. One shot, that's all it takes to bring them all down. As the beasts fade into nothingness, Carol collapses from Fenrir's back. Setsuna rushes over and catches her before she hits the ground. Relief floods through him when he realizes Carol is still alive. He exhales deeply, letting out a shaky sigh of relief. The entire crowd is left in awe by Setsuna's unbelievable display of power. And with Carol unconscious, it's clear that Setsuna has officially won the match. As expected, the referee announces Setsuna as the tournament's champion. He proudly tells the audience that it's been over a century since someone from the close combat department claimed victory in the Magic Academy Exchange Tournament. Setsuna, riding the wave of triumph, steps forward and raises his fist in celebration. His supporters erupt in cheers, their voices echoing throughout the arena. Even his former doubters can't believe what they just witnessed. A technique unlike anything they've ever seen before. Layla smiles so brightly that tears well up in her eyes, overjoyed that Setsuna has finally done it. Drago nods in admiration, deeply impressed by Setsuna's resilience and performance. Even the delinquent who had bet on Setsuna's victory is grinning ear to ear, pockets full of winnings. Meanwhile, the mysterious man in the shadows seethes with anger, frustrated that all his schemes still failed to kill Setsuna. Furious at the outcome, he decides to sever all ties with the Formation Mage, deeming him useless now. Lionel suddenly senses movement. They've found the Formation Mage's location. Just as he suspected, Lionel rushes to the spot and finds the mage lying there. But the strange man is already long gone. Lionel hurries to the fallen mage, who is completely incapacitated and barely breathing. Moments later, the barrier finally shatters and disappears. The headmaster enters the arena, walking straight towards Setsuna. He brings up Carol's condition, and Setsuna explains that she was most likely being controlled by someone. The headmaster nods. He already suspected as much, and tells Setsuna to leave the rest of the investigation to the academy. He then commends Setsuna for his remarkable strength, saying he's truly impressed by what the boy has shown throughout the tournament. Because of that, he assures him he'll keep his promise. Setsuna smiles, relieved, and thanks the headmaster for staying true to his word. A moment later, Setsuna heads to the infirmary, where a healer starts tending to him. After a while, she tells him his external wounds are healed, but his internal injuries will take some time, so she advises him to rest. Setsuna nods, thanking her for the help. Just then, there's a knock at the door. When it opens, Lionel, Drago, Layla, and the kids walk in to check on him. They ask if he's alright, and he says he's fine. Layla smiles, happy to see him up and well, and thanks him for his victory. Drago does the same, calling him the pride of their department. The kids rush over, excitedly telling him how awesome he looked during the fight. Once the cheering settles down, everyone leaves except for Lionel. Lionel tells Setsuna that someone attacked the Formation Mage, but he'll survive. He adds that Carol's shaken and needs rest, though she'll probably be questioned once she wakes. Lionel suspects Setsuna was the real target. He asks if Setsuna has any idea what's going on, but Setsuna stays silent, cold, and unreadable. Meanwhile, the attacker manages to break through easily, planning to go after Setsuna next. His goal is to erase all traces linking him to Carol by killing her, but Setsuna intercepts him just in time. Setsuna calls out the mana as someone else's power, and Leo demands to know what he means. Strange markings crawl across Leo's face as he admits his surprise that Setsuna knows about the deity behind it all. Setsuna freezes in shock, realizing he's somehow trapped in the same situation. Refusing to believe it, he launches another attack, but the nullification spell activates only when it makes contact with his strikes. Setsuna wonders what'll happen if he hits Leo from his blind spot and quickly moves behind him. But Leo smirks, saying it's over. Setsuna's about to die. Lightning bursts from Leo's hand, piercing Setsuna's thigh and flooding him with pain. Setsuna screams as blood gushes out, realizing Leo is targeting the same wound from the tournament's final round. Gritting his teeth, Setsuna asks why Leo's doing all this. Leo simply says he's sick of the world and wants to destroy it. Setsuna refuses to believe that's his only reason for turning evil. Even beaten and bleeding, he's still sure he can win. But Leo changes tactics, casting a massive long-range spell. Before it hits, a voice suddenly echoes from behind, commanding them to stop. White flames erupt, blocking Leo's attack before it can reach Setsuna. Both of them freeze. They know exactly who it is. It's the headmaster, standing above them with his summoned dragon glaring down with a terrifying presence. He and the beast land hard on the ground. He apologizes to Setsuna for arriving late, but Setsuna doesn't mind. The man just saved his life. The headmaster explains he followed the trail of residual mana here. Then he turns to Leo, saying he has no choice but to take him in, even though it pains him to suspect his own student. The dragon opens its mouth and unleashes a massive blast of magic, engulfing the entire area around Leo. Setsuna can't help but be blown away, literally and figuratively, by the beast's raw firepower. Leo admits the dragon's power is incredible, and he'd be dead if not for the protection granted by the evil god. The headmaster looks stunned. This is his first time seeing magic nullification in person. But Leo grins and says confidently, the headmaster's magic won't work on him. Leo begins channeling his energy, crafting a spell that radiates immense power. When he finally opens his eyes, they gleam with a brilliant golden light. In a sharp, commanding tone, the headmaster instructs Setsuna to step 2 paces to his right. And at that moment, Setsuna notices the principal's eyes have changed too. The headmaster, meanwhile, avoids every single attack with effortless grace, as if the strikes were nothing more than air. Leo freezes in disbelief, stunned that his supposedly unavoidable attack was dodged so easily. Sensing Leo's shock, the headmaster calmly asks why he looks so surprised, reminding him that he isn't the only one blessed with extraordinary magical power. Leo admits that the headmaster's strength is impressive, yet he smirks and declares that the old man won't be able to dodge his next move. With full confidence, Leo warns both Setsuna and the headmaster that once he unleashes this spell, not a trace of them will remain. Setsuna, realizing the danger, senses that things are about to spiral out of control. If both of them use their trump cards, the entire place will be reduced to rubble. The headmaster gives Setsuna a subtle hand signal. Then he activates a powerful spell of his own, one that lifts both him and his dragon high into the air. But Leo's dark energy overwhelms the dragon's white flames, forcing it back. Setsuna calls out, telling Leo that he's relying too much on the power of darkness. He believes that choosing close combat was the right decision all along, and he's determined to prove that point with his next strike. Setsuna bursts through the barrier like it's made of paper, then lands a crushing blow that sends Leo crashing to the ground like a broken drum. The headmaster can't help but feel proud. Setsuna's composure and strategy are beyond expectation. His risky bet that pure speed could counter magic nullification turns out to be absolutely correct. The headmaster tells him that the fight is over, though they still need to tend to his injuries. But before he can recover, a powerful blast strikes him down. Leo laughs mockingly, taunting him for failing to protect anyone. Setsuna screams in agony, his body overwhelmed by pain. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself lying in the infirmary, with Layla sitting right beside him. The moment she notices him awake, Layla rushes over, visibly relieved that he's still alive. She tells him that he's been unconscious for 3 whole days. Setsuna is stunned the moment he hears that. Frustration fills him as he realizes he's once again been defeated by the power of the evil god. Slowly, Setsuna lifts himself up from the bed. Seeing him stand, Layla is taken aback and quickly asks where he's going. Setsuna replies that he needs to meet the principal to confirm something, but Layla tries to stop him, insisting that he still needs rest. He gently taps her shoulder, silently reassuring her. Meanwhile, the headmaster is in a meeting with the academy's professors. As the meeting concludes, the professors begin to rise and prepare to leave. At that moment, Setsuna bursts into the room shouting in alarm. To his surprise, the headmaster appears completely fine, and the man even expresses his relief that Setsuna has recovered. Once the professors leave, Setsuna lowers his head and bows deeply. He apologizes for failing to meet the headmaster's expectations. Then, Setsuna asks about what happened after the battle, but as he speaks, his wounds reopen. He clutches his stomach in pain, and the headmaster quickly tells him not to push himself too far. The headmaster then begins recounting the events that took place after Setsuna lost consciousness. Setsuna grows particularly focused when the headmaster mentions the eyes behind the portal. The headmaster, curious, asks if Setsuna knows something he doesn't. He firmly tells Setsuna to share every detail he's aware of, reminding him that he had already spoken about his hidden magic as well. Though the headmaster wants to trust him, he insists that Setsuna must be fully honest. Setsuna is torn, unsure whether he's even allowed to talk about the future, and the headmaster, seeing his hesitation, asks if there's a reason he can't speak about it. Setsuna asks the headmaster to take a look at the necklace of revival, which immediately catches the old man off guard. When the headmaster finally examines the pendant closely, he realizes that the blessing of the spirit of time has completely disappeared. Puzzled, the headmaster wonders aloud if the blessing might have been consumed in another timeline, and Setsuna confirms that it has. Setsuna then explains everything in detail, and after carefully processing it all, the headmaster admits that such a future would be hard to believe without concrete proof. Seeing how much Setsuna has endured, the headmaster slowly rises from his seat. He tells Setsuna that, from now on, he'll be his support, his strength moving forward. He also declares that he will teach Setsuna a second form of magic, one strong enough to counter the power of the evil god. The headmaster reveals its name, spirit magic, a form of magic so rare it exists nowhere else. Then he suggests that they move to a different location for the training. He takes Setsuna to a massive sacred tree, mentioning that it was once his personal training ground. Setsuna is shocked to hear that since it's the same spot he uses for his own practice. Surrounded by a soft golden aura, the headmaster casually proposes that they start by playing rock, paper, scissors. Setsuna looks completely confused by the suggestion. But the game begins, and soon after, the headmaster explains that Setsuna just witnessed one of the Spirit of Time's abilities, a form of precognition that allows the user to see a few seconds into the future. He goes on to explain that countless spirits exist in the world. For instance, forming a contract with a wind spirit grants the ability to fly, while the water spirit allows one to phase through physical attacks. Setsuna listens in awe, realizing that mastering spirit magic could massively enhance his close combat abilities. He admits that he tends to overthink things too much. Even now, he tries to focus, but his thoughts keep spinning out of control. Setsuna then reveals that the apostles are said to originate from the same realm as the evil god, and that each one possesses unique powers that go beyond the boundaries of magic itself. The headmaster assures him that during their training, he will have the chance to break past his limits. Meanwhile, the 10th Dark Apostle, Yagan, is already fuming with rage. The 9th Dark Apostle, Puker, mocks Leo for failing to kill even a single student during his mission. Leo bows his head in apology for his failure, explaining that he lost control when faced with his best friend, though he says it with a smirk, clearly unremorseful. His attitude only enrages Jagan even more. The two are just about to clash, when the second apostle, Satanakya, halts them both with nothing but his voice. Back at the academy, Layla remains worried, insisting that Setsuna isn't fully recovered and shouldn't be returning to class. But Setsuna reassures her, saying it's only a theory lecture and nothing strenuous. Surprisingly, the headmaster has decided to postpone the spirit magic training. After reflecting on everything the principal told him, Setsuna simply smiles at Layla in his usual way and apologizes for making her worry. Deep inside, though, he's focused on recovering as fast as possible so he can become even stronger. Later that day, their instructor announces the upcoming faculty joint training. The students are caught off guard by the news. Lionel explains that, as the name suggests, the training will involve multiple faculties working together. In the past, exchange matches were held mainly to study other magic styles, but this time, the goal is to push beyond personal limits through real cooperation. Setsuna immediately recognizes that this plan must have been created by the headmaster to improve teamwork among the mages. Lionel urges everyone to prepare themselves well, since the training will begin in 2 weeks. Fired up with motivation, Setsuna sets his sights on recovery, knowing it's the first step toward joining the event. After class, Layla invites Setsuna to have dinner with her. She convinces him easily, teasing that they need to eat plenty before the training begins. As they walk through campus, the students can't stop whispering about Setsuna, praising his incredible performance during the tournament. Layla notices how everyone's attitude toward him has changed and points it out. Along the way, they bump into a blonde-haired noble named Carl. He clearly carries himself with pride and arrogance. Carl asks Setsuna if he was the one who won the tournament. Setsuna simply answers yes. Carl then declares that only nobles of high standing are allowed to join his exclusive community. Commoners and close combat mages are normally banned, but he's willing to make an exception for Setsuna. In truth, Carl is desperate to recruit Setsuna because he knows that having him in the group would make them an unbeatable team. The surrounding students murmur with excitement, amazed to see Carl personally scouting Setsuna. Carl tells him straight up that he should join them, saying it's always better to run with the big leagues. Carl scoffs and says Setsuna shouldn't waste his time hanging around with a trash lady like Layla. The insult leaves Carl completely dumbfounded when Setsuna doesn't react the way he expected. Instead of showing interest, Setsuna calmly tells him that his so-called noble magic doesn't matter and that it's actually Carl who's wasting his time, not the other way around. Carl's face twists with fury. He accuses Setsuna of insulting the nobility and draws his weapon, a gleaming golden blade. Then, enraged, he charges at Setsuna, hoping to catch him off guard. But before he can even reach him, Layla steps in, grabbing Carl's wrist and stopping him mid-swing. With a firm voice, she reminds him that personal duels are strictly forbidden on school grounds. Her expression turns intimidating as she forces Carl into submission. Completely overpowered, Carl struggles but finds himself unable to fight back. His friends rush over, worried, while Carl yells at Layla to let go of him. But Layla's cold glare soon softens when she turns towards Setsuna, who grins in quiet admiration, realizing that she's gotten stronger. Just then, Carol appears with a bright smile, waving enthusiastically at Setsuna. Setsuna smiles back, relieved to see that she's fully recovered. Carol thanks him warmly for saving her life. Out of nowhere, she suddenly asks Setsuna if he'd be willing to come to her room. The bold invitation leaves everyone awkwardly embarrassed. Later, Setsuna, Layla, and Drago end up visiting Carol in her private dorm room. Carol beams with excitement, announcing that she'll cook a homemade meal for them. Layla immediately offers to help, pointing out that cooking everything alone would be too tiring. Secretly, she's relieved to learn that Carol only meant cooking. She had half expected something much more suspicious. Drago, still confused, asks why he was invited in the first place, and Carol replies that she prefers lively company when cooking. Once they step into the kitchen, Layla is amazed by the number of healing ingredients stocked inside. Carol explains that she's making restorative dishes to help them recover faster. Setsuna quietly wonders whether Carol's odd behavior stems from shock or perhaps some memory manipulation. Still, he's thankful that no one was seriously hurt, though he can't shake the thought that other students may soon become targets of the apostles. Drago notices Setsuna drifting into thought and snaps him back to reality. He complains that Setsuna tends to take everything on by himself and urges him to take a proper break once in a while. Setsuna wonders silently if he really can rest like that. Suddenly, they hear the two girls shouting from the kitchen. Judging by the noise, it sounds less like cooking and more like some kind of intense workout session. Carol then calls out to Drago, asking him to come lend a hand in the kitchen. Drago reluctantly agrees, but the moment he steps inside, Carol straps a frilly maid apron on him, insisting it's the only one left. Before long, the cooking is finished, and the dining table is packed with an impressive feast that leaves Setsuna speechless. Carol shyly apologizes if she made too much, but Setsuna reassures her that there's no problem at all. He picks up his spoon and activates a minor physical enhancement to boost his digestion. Concerned, Layla asks if he's okay, and Setsuna nods, his eyes fixed on a steaming bowl of egg soup in front of him. Drago notices his interest and offers him another serving, proudly mentioning that he's the one who made the soup. Setsuna doesn't hesitate to accept a second bowl. Carol is left stunned. She just lost a cooking contest to a man. Setsuna chuckles quietly, remembering that something similar happened in his previous life. But that time, everything was destroyed because of the evil god. Determined, he vows to make sure such tragedy never repeats again. The next day, the students gather for the joint training program. Drago is glad to assist, commenting that the meal's beneficial effects would have faded if he hadn't eaten it regularly. Setsuna feels confident that he's fully prepared and has nothing to worry about. They're soon joined by a woman named Yuzuha. Drago and Setsuna introduce themselves, greeting both Yuzuha and another student named Mifune. It turns out they're all on the same team, and Mifune encourages Setsuna to give his all during the upcoming training. After Mifune and Yuzuha leave, Drago remarks that Mifune seems like a decent guy. Setsuna agrees with a nod. Then their instructor, Giovanni, arrives to explain the details of the joint training. Giovanni tells them that the objective of the session is to defeat monsters inside a dungeon. He adds that their entire performance will be recorded through a magical device he's wearing, the Bracelet of Memory. On top of that, the loot dropped by monsters will count as bonus points, and apparently, the top team will get a reward from the academy. But the best individual student will earn something even better: a chance to train with the kingdom's Magus Battalion. Hearing this, Setsuna gets fired up. The Magus Battalion is made up of the strongest mages in the whole kingdom. It's also where he met most of his comrades in his previous life, so if he joins again this time, he might get the chance to meet them once more. Giovanni then hands out bracelets to each student. He explains that they won't be going too deep into the dungeon since stronger monsters there might be too much for them to handle. But Setsuma's goal isn't just survival, he's aiming straight for the top. That means 200 points. The two lock eyes, both smiling like rivals ready to see how far they can push each other. Then, at the same time, they both release a huge burst of aura and rush into the dungeon without hesitation. From what Setsuna knows about this place, the monsters inside are immediately hostile toward anyone who enters. After a while, they reach a wide chamber filled with strange, ancient-looking plants. It makes Setsuna wonder if an ancient civilization once lived here. He's determined. He'll master spirit magic and come out as the top student in this training session. Soon after, the rest of the group finally catches up. Mifune, gasping for air, comments on how fast the two were. He's completely out of breath. They've now reached the point where they need to split up. After a quick discussion, Mifune points toward one of the paths, suggesting they take that route. He's convinced that going deeper will earn them more points. And since this is a point-based competition, Setsuna figures Mifune might actually be right. Then he notices something odd. The wall in front of them looks fake. The plants on it don't match. Setsuna tells them there's probably a hidden room behind it. Drago agrees, saying he can hear the wind coming from the other side, and with one punch, he breaks it open. Setsuna smirks at Mifune, saying this path was clearly the right call. Mifune reluctantly agrees. Setsuna was right. With that, they all dash into the newly revealed passage. Mifune grins confidently, saying they'll rack up tons of points from here on. But not long after, a giant boulder suddenly drops from above. Without missing a beat, Drago jumps into action. He slices the boulder clean in half with his monosword. Then, proudly, Drago says he's going to show everyone just how powerful close combat magic can be. Deep down, he also doesn't want to lose to Setsuna. Not again. Drago suggests they should clear out all the traps ahead so Mifune and his teammate can pass through easily. That way, they can all reach the deeper areas and claim the real glory. But Mifune innocently thanks him for the chest they just found and claims it for himself, earning 15 points. Drago is completely stunned. It finally hits him. This isn't teamwork anymore, it's a race. From now on, he swears he's not holding back. Setsuna and Drago shrug it off and keep moving deeper into the dungeon. After some effort, Drago finds another treasure chest, but Mifune snatches it again, bringing his score up to 30 points, smiling like it's nothing. Then Mifune lunges forward, slicing through a knight's neck, and once again, he takes the glory. Now he's at 40 points, while the one doing the hard work still sits at 0. Not long after, Drago finds yet another chest, and again, Mifune claims it. 55 points now. Drago is running out of energy fast. Mifune compliments him, saying he's strong, but he lacks vision, and that'll hold him back. At this point, Drago's sitting at just 10 points, and he's clearly pissed off by how things are going. That's when Setsuna, who has 25 points, steps in. He calmly says that how they share the dungeon's rewards is a crucial part of this whole competition. But it turns out, Mifune has been secretly taking Drago's points for himself. Drago confronts him, asking if that's really how he operates. Mifune laughs mockingly at Drago's frustration. He arrogantly says that he relies on his brains, unlike Drago, who only knows how to use brute force. Then, Mifune starts justifying himself, saying that humans always use each other to reach their goals. He even suggests that if the others are mad about it, they should just do the same thing he's doing. At that moment, Setsuna finally realizes how sly and manipulative Mifune truly is. He notices that Mifune can teleport freely because he's using 2 different formation magic circles. It gives him an advantage, but Setsuna has already figured out the weakness in that technique. Setsuna also realizes that Yuzuha doesn't care about collecting points the way Mifune does. Mifune grins at both of them, saying they'll clear the dungeon soon. He's already at 80 points while Yuzuha stands at 50. Setsuna is still stuck at 35 points, and poor Drago is hanging on with just 10. Suddenly, Mifune notices a chest sitting ahead of them. Without hesitation, he activates his teleportation circle, but as soon as he does, a blast of dark fire erupts and hits Mifune directly. A terrifying aura begins radiating from the chest. Then, from inside it, emerges a horrifying creature that clearly doesn't belong in a 1-star dungeon. The monster is revealed to be the King of Death. He glares at them and growls that they'll pay for disturbing his slumber, but Drago refuses to retreat. What he sees is not danger, but a body full of points. With nowhere left to run, he braces himself. Thankfully, he manages to raise his mana guard just in time, saving his life by a hair's breadth. The King of Death retaliates, unleashing several magic circles all at once. From that, Setsuna immediately realizes the creature's strength is no less than a 4-star monster. Meanwhile, Mifune becomes the target of the monster's wrath. Setsuna shouts at him to wake up and snap out of it. Mifune regains consciousness just in time to see Drago saving his life. Drago extends his hand toward him, urging him to help out. Yuzuha suddenly finds herself caught in the crossfire of the magic circles, but she only smiles brightly, thanking Setsuna for saving her earlier. Then she tells Drago that it's about time they got serious. Instead of joining them, Mifune starts plotting again, thinking about how he can steal their points and escape. Drago senses something suspicious about him and asks if he's still scheming anything. Mifune pretends to be innocent, claiming he has no bad intentions toward the ones who saved him. But deep down, he's a conniving man who can't wait to stab them in the back. Drago then declares to Mifune that this time, he's not getting the points. A flashback appears. Setsuna and Drago are seen training under Lionel. To strengthen them, Lionel brings out a bracelet imbued with weight magic. Lionel explains that it's an old-school method that must be used with caution. But instead of being intimidated, Setsuna gets fired up and embraces the challenge. Back in the dungeon, Setsuna removes the weight bracelets from his arms and legs. After wearing them for so long, his body suddenly feels light and free. Drago follows suit. The loud thud of the bracelets hitting the ground shows just how heavy they were. Mifune is left stunned at the sight, wondering what kind of strange items the two had been using all this time. Drago then charges toward the King of Death. He swings his weapon straight at the monster's head, but even that isn't enough to end the creature. Moments later, however, their combined kick successfully decapitates the monster. Setsuna checks his score and sees it has risen to 50 points, same as Drago's. Since they defeated the monster together, the points were evenly split between them. Mifune is completely shaken. He realizes that Setsuna and Drago had been holding back their true power all along. Setsuna then turns to ask Yuzuha about her condition, but she's nowhere to be seen. They start wondering where she went. Suddenly, the ground begins to quake violently. Seeing the massive number of enemies appearing, the team realizes they can't possibly handle them all and are forced to retreat. Setsuna can't help but wonder why this dungeon is acting so abnormally. They quickly find themselves overwhelmed by the sheer number of monsters swarming around them. Setsuna yells at his teammates, telling them to go for the heads if they actually want to kill these things. That's because every undead they defeat just keeps reviving under the power of darkness. Drago complains about the insane number of enemies, while Mifune mutters that this dungeon is definitely abnormal. Its monsters don't belong in a 1-star dungeon at all. Mifune doesn't catch on to this and thinks Setsuna is just mistaken. But Setsuna insists he's right. He just can't identify whose magic power is responsible for all this. And since they're unsure, Drago suggests they confirm it themselves and dives into the lower levels. Mifune, on the other hand, hesitates to go in. Setsuna tells him flat out that he doesn't have a choice. Staying on the surface only means dying sooner. Mifune, annoyed, snaps back and asks if Setsuna is underestimating him. But Setsuna calmly replies that he's just stating the obvious truth, reminding Mifune that his only real strategy so far has been stealing points from Drago. With that said, Setsuna jumps into the lower levels as well. Mifune grumbles to himself that both the team and the dungeon are complete disasters. But even so, he knows he has no other option but to follow them. As the fight drags on, Mifune can't help but ask if the two have been training together before, since their teamwork is so perfect. Drago just mocks him, saying he talks too much. Mifune fires back that he'd rather talk than listen to the irritating moans of the undead. Then Setsuna points to his left, saying he senses a strong magic presence in that direction. The trio follows the path. It leads straight toward the source of the strange magical energy they've been feeling. Meanwhile, Mifune starts plotting something in his mind, but Drago catches on. He pretends to stretch, only to use the motion as an excuse to land a solid hit on Mifune's face. Drago apologizes casually for stretching out of nowhere, but by then he's already carried out his plan. At the same time, Setsuna destroys the eyeball monster nearby while Mifune is still reeling from the blow. That kill gives Setsuna an extra 10 points. Drago then senses more monsters converging on their position, probably because they realize their magic source has been destroyed. Setsuna doesn't mind. More monsters mean more points to earn. Drago too looks fired up to fight. Seeing their excitement, Mifune decides to toughen up so he won't fall behind. Before they jump back into battle, Setsuna asks Mifune if he knows anything about Yuzuha's whereabouts. Mifune shrugs, saying he has no idea. He assumes Yuzuha must have run off out of fear. To make things worse, they keep encountering bizarre monsters that don't belong in any one-star dungeon. Setsuna silently hopes that Layla and the others are safe wherever they are. Meanwhile, Drago looks thrilled at the sight of more enemies because, to him, they're all just extra points waiting to be claimed. Without hesitation, the two go all out, beating the monsters down like drums. Drago finishes them off with a heavy punch, while Setsuna slices through them effortlessly with his mana sword. Setsuna's score climbs up to 200 points. Drago now sits at 210, and even Mifune manages to reach 100 points. Feeling satisfied, he decides it's about time to leave. Drago looks surprised and asks if he really has no intention of finding Yuzuha, since she's supposed to be his friend. Mifune laughs at that, revealing that Yuzuha isn't his friend at all. They only met yesterday. He says she was the one acting friendly toward him, and he's sure she's already outside crying her eyes out. Setsuna is stunned to learn they only met a day ago. Tired of the conversation, Mifune tries to teleport away by activating his bracelet, but to his shock, nothing happens. It doesn't work. Drago notices the same and questions what's going on. Then Setsuna tells the two that he's heading out to find Yuzuha, reassuring them that he'll be fine on his own. Mifune is surprised and teases him, asking if he's fallen for Yuzuha or something. Drago shakes his head and says he's going too. No way he's letting Setsuna go alone. Setsuna warns him that he can sense a strange magical power below and urges Drago not to push himself too far. Drago agrees reluctantly, but cowardly Mifune insists that they should just go outside and report everything to Professor Giovanni instead. He then asks why Setsuna is so sure Yuzuha is somewhere below them. Ignoring him, Setsuna and Drago descend deeper into the dungeon, leaving Mifune torn about what to do. He wants to follow them but is too afraid to go alone. Eventually, they call out to him, telling him to join them in the search so they can all leave together once they find Yuzuha. Mifune finally gives in and tags along, hoping they find her quickly so he can get out of there. Setsuna tells him that his ability to sense magic like this comes from constant training, but Mifune just scoffs, thinking he's full of nonsense. Suddenly, Drago feels a cold breeze sweep across them as they reach the lower floor. Soon after, a strange sound echoes from somewhere ahead. Setsuna points in the direction of the noise, and Drago takes the lead. As they move forward, he notices a figure standing in front of them. It doesn't take long for them to realize it's Yuzuha. Drago immediately asks if she's okay. She's sitting on a magic circle, reaching out her hand toward them and asking for help. Mifune instantly regrets every life decision that led him to follow them this far. Setsuna quickly realizes that the dungeon's traps are most likely being powered by a dark magic artifact, something he's seen before in his previous life. He tells the team that the only way to destroy the trap is with a special kind of magic. They'll need a weapon infused with magical power strong enough to break the circle Yuzuha is sitting on. Setsuna volunteers to handle the magic circle himself, and Drago nods, giving him full control of the situation. Drawing out his mana blade, Setsuna begins to charge it with concentrated energy. One precise strike from him shatters the circle completely, freeing Yuzuha from the dark magic's grip. Just before she loses consciousness, Yuzuha mutters something about not letting Setsuna go any further. Her words leave him puzzled. Then, Setsuna notices the true source of the magic power. The earring she's wearing. Mifune jumps in, blaming Yuzuha's recklessness for her current state. He anxiously asks Setsuna if she's going to be alright. Setsuna replies honestly that he isn't sure, but suggests they regroup with the others. Carrying Yuzuha on his back, he feels certain that the apostles are behind all this. Maifun tries using his bracelet again. Setsuna also tests Yuzuha's bracelet, but it doesn't respond either. Suddenly, the entire room begins to quake violently, sending a jolt of urgency through the group. Setsuna tells the others they should look for a safe passage instead of trying to brute force their way through the blocked path. Meanwhile, on the other side of the dungeon, Layla and her team are busy searching for students trapped under collapsed debris. Soon, they discover one student pinned beneath heavy rocks. They rush in and help pull him out. Layla activates her brooch's healing magic, soothing his pain while healing his injuries. Deep down, Layla silently prays that Setsuna and Drago are still safe. Back on the other side of the rubble, Drago asks Setsuna if he can use his charge bullet skill to break through. Setsuna admits he can, but warns that the impact could trigger another quake. He explains that there's actually a way to escape, though it involves going deeper underground. Drago worries about leaving Mifune and Yuzuha behind, but Setsuna insists on handling the mission himself. Mifune can't believe how confident he is. Mifune agrees that Setsuna is strong, but reminds him that even stronger monsters are known to dwell in the deeper floors. Because of that, he thinks Setsuna should stay with them instead. Drago, impressed, comments on how much knowledge Setsuna has packed into his small frame. Setsuna doesn't deny it. After all, his experience comes from countless dungeon explorations in the past. Mifune then asks whether Drago plans to stay behind. And when he says yes, Mifune urges Setsuna to mark his path in case things go wrong. Setsuna agrees, assuring them that he'll come back and save everyone. As he fights his way through the undead blocking his path, Setsuna wishes he had access to fire or purification magic. It would have made this battle so much easier. The problem with close combat magic, he notes, is that it usually lacks any elemental properties. Most of his attacks are direct and physical, but even so, Setsuna manages to cut down the monsters one after another. It's all thanks to the fierce, unexplainable flame burning inside him. While Setsuna pushes forward, Drago continues working to clear a path through the rubble. Eventually, Mifune admits that Setsuna's close combat magic is truly impressive. He even confesses that he's been taking shortcuts, yet those two still outshine him easily. Drago laughs and tells him to quit acting like a coward. He's certain they'll make it out alive. Suddenly, they hear Layla's voice echoing from the other side of the rubble. Drago shouts back immediately, telling her that they're trapped and need help. Layla presses her ear against the rubble to hear him more clearly. Drago explains that everyone's trapped except for Setsuna, who went off to find a way out. Without hesitation, Layla and her team start removing the debris, but then Setsuna senses a sinister aura right behind him. His instincts kick in instantly. A monster lunges at the spot he was standing just moments ago. The attack tears the area apart, leaving a trail of massive destruction. The creature reveals itself, a terrifying double-headed hydra. Somehow, despite being exhausted, Setsuna has found himself in a one-on-two fight. He wonders if this hydra is the source of all the dungeon's strange behavior. As he observes it closely, he notices the creature's body is corrupted, meaning it was forcefully resurrected by someone's dark power. With that realization, Setsuna steadies his breathing and braces himself for combat. He leaps forward, striking the hydra head-on, enraging the beast even more. However, his last attack barely leaves a mark. The monster's skull is absurdly tough. Setsuna immediately moves in again to continue his assault. He's thankful he managed to dodge the hydra's corrosive breath. One hit from that and it would have been over. But to his horror, the hydra's severed head starts growing back. Setsuna quickly deduces that its regeneration comes from the undead energy fueling it. He realizes that the fight would have been far easier if he still had access to long-range magic. He remembers Lionel once praising him for surpassing his peers, but also pointing out that Setsuna's body can't yet keep up with the powerful image he envisions for himself. After listening to Lionel's explanation about the technique, Setsuna finally understands that the mana control of a long-range mage and a close combat mage are completely different. So, he takes a moment to sit down and focus on mastering his own mana control. Now standing before the Hydra, Setsuna realizes that the only way to survive this fight is to use that technique. Even though he's never actually tried it before, he decides to attempt it safely with his first sword. However, the attempt fails to deliver the expected result. Refusing to give up, he decides to give it one more shot. As he begins preparing his next move, he steadies his breathing and sharpens his focus, luring the Hydra to follow him. The Hydra charges right after him, and in that instant, Setsuna draws out 2 mana swords at the same time. Before the Hydra can even react to the sudden change in his movement, Setsuna swings and decapitates the monster cleanly. A massive, gruesome explosion follows right after. Even so, Setsuna knows he still has a long way to go before he can fully master this technique. Suddenly, someone appears. It's their professor, Giovanni. Setsuna tells him that he's not surprised in the slightest, since he's long learned to expect the unexpected. He demands to know if Giovanni is one of the apostles, and why he's been doing all this. Giovanni smirks before revealing that he was impressed by Setsuna's performance at the tournament, and that's why he became interested in turning an undead into his puppet. Setsuna is furious to realize that Giovanni had planned everything from the very beginning. Giovanni claims that Yuzuha willingly chose to side with him and he merely took advantage of her decision. He also boasts that she never once suspected the cursed earring he gave her, but he admits he was annoyed when Yuzuha resisted becoming a full undead at the last second. Setsuna, done listening to his nonsense, grows tired of the garbage coming out of Giovanni's mouth. He swears that he'll defeat him no matter what. Meanwhile, Layla and the other students finally manage to clear the rubble, freeing Drago, Mifune, and Yuzuha. Drago thanks everyone for pulling him out of the hole he was stuck in. Layla then notices that the ground has stopped shaking, and Drago guesses that Setsuna might have already defeated the dungeon boss. Mifune happily reports that the bracelet's mana signature is finally back online. Layla suggests that they move to higher ground so they can teleport to the safe zone. However, Drago tells her that he's heading back to find Setsuna. He asks Layla to take care of the others. She agrees, saying she'll be waiting for him outside. Drago then dashes back toward the deeper levels of the dungeon. Back to Setsuna and Giovanni. Giovanni is thrilled, eager to see how Setsuna plans to make him pay for his sins. Enraged, Setsuna charges forward, aiming to punch Giovanni straight into the afterlife. But Giovanni blocks the attack with a sudden burst of freezing magic, and Setsuna's fist slams into a solid wall of ice. The shock catches him off guard, and before he can react, an ice spike erupts from the ground. Setsuna narrowly dodges it, but it slices across his face, leaving a deep cut. Giovanni mocks him, saying that a close combat mage like him stands no chance against ice magic. Setsuna attempts to counterattack, but it's already too late. An ice shard pierces into his shoulder with brutal force. He lets out a cry of pain, collapsing to one knee. As Setsuna struggles, Giovanni laughs and tells him to just give up, but Setsuna grits his teeth, saying he won't stop until he breaks Yuzuha's curse. Giovanni is taken aback, demanding to know how Setsuna even learned how to break the curse, and why he's so desperate to save Yuzuha when she was ready to sacrifice him to become an undead. Then Giovanni says he'll break the curse easily, but only if Setsuna pledges allegiance to him. Grabbing Setsuna's head like he's a child, Giovanni delivers the condition with a twisted smile. Setsuna snaps back, shouting that he never bow down to a monster like him. He throws a punch, but Giovanni blocks it again with another ice wall. However, this time Setsuna already knows exactly where Giovanni will reappear. Giovanni is stunned when Setsuna suddenly appears right in front of him, eyes blazing with rage. He can't believe how quickly Setsuna managed to figure out his magic pattern. Caught completely off guard by Setsuna's sudden strike, Giovanni doesn't even have time to react before his hand is cleanly severed. Yet, instead of showing pain, he smiles, actually commending Setsuna for making such a clever move. Without hesitation, Giovanni regenerates his hand right before Setsuna's eyes, revealing the truth. He too is undead. He goes on to brag that he was saved by the evil god at the brink of death, calling himself the god's greatest masterpiece, blessed with the power of immortality. Giovanni then starts ranting with twisted logic, claiming humans are weak precisely because they age and die. That's why, he declares, he plans to turn every human into undead beings. With a wicked grin, Giovanni mocks Setsuna, reminding him how drained he is and urging him to surrender while he still has the chance. Setsuna, refusing to make a move, stands his ground as Giovanni activates a magic circle beneath his feet to begin the ritual. Just as Giovanni starts focusing his energy into the ritual, a rock suddenly shoots through the air at insane speed, smashing into Giovanni's face and ripping apart the lower half of his head. Setsuna doesn't waste the moment. He follows up with a brutal uppercut. But before the hit can finish him off, Giovanni's body instantly turns into ice once more, and he slips away into another magic circle, escaping yet again. Drago rushes to Setsuna's side, worried about how seriously he's been injured. But Setsuna brushes it off, telling him not to worry, he can still fight. Then he asks about their seniors. Drago explains that Layla saved them and assures him that they're already on their way out of the dungeon. Setsuna smiles faintly, relieved, realizing how much Layla has grown into someone dependable. But Giovanni soon reappears from one of his magic circles. Furious that Drago had disrupted his ritual, Drago freezes in shock, and Setsuna quickly explains that Giovanni is the one behind everything that's happened. Fueled by rage, Drago charges straight at Giovanni. But as expected, Giovanni's body turns to ice once more, vanishing to another teleport location. However, this time Setsuna is already there waiting, and even though he risks severe frostbite, he doesn't care. He throws a devastating punch with both fists infused with mana. His right hand lands first, followed immediately by a crushing left hook, the blows piercing through Giovanni's body as he lets out an ugly, animal-like scream. The force sends Giovanni crashing into a wall, and when the dust settles, most of his upper body is gone, obliterated by Setsuna's fury. Yet Giovanni still isn't finished. From the wreckage, he pulls out an artifact gifted to him by the evil god, one that allows him to fuse with the Hydra. He activates it, and his body begins to morph grotesquely into something monstrous. Setsuna and Drago can only watch as the hideous, towering figure of Giovanni Hydra rises before them. Lying beaten on the ground, Setsuna realizes that if this continues, both he and Drago are doomed to die here. The only hope left lies in reaching a complete state of emptiness. Feeling the faint presence of a spirit in the air, Setsuna, with his last breath, begs it to lend him power, anything to save his friends. Suddenly, a voice snaps at him, telling him to shut up, shocking him completely. In the next instant, he finds himself pulled into an unfamiliar dimension. The surroundings are nothing like the dungeon. It's an entirely different realm. Slowly turning around, he comes face to face with a massive, blazing entity staring down at him. Setsuna wonders if this is one of the elemental spirits the headmaster once spoke of. Gathering his resolve, he addresses the spirit, explaining that the evil god is threatening the lives of him and his friends, and that he needs the spirit's power to stop it. But the spirit's expression darkens, and flames burst violently from its body. It looks even more terrifying now, and it demands to know what benefit it would gain by granting Setsuna's request. Without warning, a fiery boulder slams into Setsuna, pinning him to the ground. Stunned, he gasps and asks why the spirit is acting so aggressively. The spirit responds by pressing down harder, choking Setsuna under the crushing heat. Then, with a chilling voice, it declares its intention to make this realm a living hell for him. But Setsuna knows he has no choice. He must find a way to persuade the spirit, or everything will be lost. The spirit, however, seems intrigued by how stubbornly Setsuna refuses to give up. It then senses something, the presence of the evil god and his apostles nearby. Yet even then, the fiery spirit remains unmoved, its stance unyielding. Those words finally reach the fiery spirit. Without warning, it exhales a massive surge of blazing breath, swallowing Setsuna's entire body in scorching flames. But even as he's being burned, Setsuna yells back that he can't give up, not until he defeats the evil god and his followers. The fiery spirit can hardly believe that Setsuna is enduring all this agony just for the sake of saving his friends, yet the determination he's shown is enough to leave an impression. Meanwhile, Drago is getting completely overwhelmed by Giovanni, unable to properly defend himself against the relentless ice attacks. Giovanni is stunned that despite everything he's done, Drago is still standing. He can't comprehend how someone could be so stubborn just to protect his pride. Mocking him, Giovanni warns that such stubbornness won't get him anywhere. Drago, battered and frozen in place after Giovanni's merciless strikes, can't even move. Giovanni grabs him effortlessly, declaring that it's time to end him. He adds that once he's done, he'll kill Setsuna too, the one Drago's been risking everything to protect. With that, Giovanni hurls Drago to the ground like worthless trash. And since Drago can no longer summon Monoguard, he has no way left to defend himself. Drago lies there helplessly, watching Giovanni prepare to finish him off, finally accepting that this might be where his life ends. Giovanni releases his corrosive attack in a furious outburst, covering everything in a thick cloud of smoke and dust. When the haze begins to fade, he expects to see Drago's body completely destroyed. But confusion sets in when he realizes Drago is nowhere to be found. Then, a sudden warmth brushes against him. He turns around, only to see Setsuna now glowing in a blazing, radiant form standing before him, having rescued his friend just in time. Before Giovanni can even process what's happening, Setsuna is already right in front of him. It doesn't take long for Giovanni to realize that this flame, Setsuna's flame, is not ordinary. His mind reels as he refuses to accept that Setsuna now wields two separate magic paths within his body. Deep down, Giovanni doesn't want to admit the truth. He's actually afraid. Trying to suppress his fear, he reminds himself that he's an undead, someone who has already conquered death itself. Then he spews a thick cloud of poisonous mist, boasting that it's a broken skill no living being could survive. But Setsuna proves him wrong, slicing straight through the poisonous wave with a single flaming punch. The burning force of his strike easily disperses the deadly mist. Giovanni, though rattled, quickly realizes that Setsuna is still inexperienced in handling this newfound power. Regaining his confidence, he takes control of the fight again, swinging a heavy punch towards Setsuna. But to his astonishment, Setsuna dodges it with ease, leaving Giovanni frozen in disbelief. Giovanni can't understand how Setsuna managed to evade the hit. Then he notices something. Setsuna isn't thinking, he's moving purely on instinct. Giovanni decides he'll restrict those movements and crush him completely. Gathering energy, Giovanni unleashes his full ice powers. He even admits that Setsuna's flames are impressive, but sneers that he's still just a child among real warriors. With that, Giovanni charges in, aiming to behead Setsuna to prove that undeath truly reigns supreme. But when he looks down, his confidence shatters. Layla stands in front of Setsuna, monosword raised in defense. She apologizes to Setsuna for being late and promises that she won't let anything happen to him again. Giovanni curses himself for being too fixated on Setsuna to notice Layla entering the room. Still, he isn't worried. He believes he can kill her quickly. Layla glances back to check on Setsuna, and seeing the strange transformations taking place in him, she can't help but wonder what's happening. Even so, she stands firm, ready to protect him no matter what. Back in the spirit realm, the fiery spirit mocks Setsuna for passing out under such a weak flame. Setsuna, confused, admits he thought he had already become one with the spirit. With that in mind, he pleads for the spirit to teach him how to truly control this power so he can return to the real world. The fiery spirit replies that Setsuna must find the answer on his own. This, it says, is because it's the first time it has ever shared its power with a human. something that shocks Setsuna deeply. At that moment, he sees Layla struggling against Giovanni in the real world. Giovanni keeps pummeling her relentlessly, before smashing her straight into the frozen Setsuna. Layla coughs up blood but refuses to back down. Then Giovanni suddenly notices something different. It's the moment Setsuna activates the flame spirit's magic, Inferno Blaze. In an instant, he presses Giovanni down with a single hand while erupting in a wave of fire. Setsuna tells him that he can keep boasting about immortality all he wants, but humans fight hard for what they desire precisely because their time is limited. And with calm determination, Setsuna reveals that he finally understood the true essence of flame magic in that very moment before his death. Giovanni refuses to believe that Setsuna's power could be real, but Setsuna keeps pushing, his flames growing hotter and fiercer by the second, until there's nothing left of Giovanni but ashes once again. Layla stares at Setsuna in disbelief, asking if he's truly the same person. Setsuna smiles softly and replies that he hasn't changed at all, assuring her with a bright grin that everything's going to be fine now. He walks over to Layla, thanking her sincerely for protecting him while he was unconscious. Then he asks if she's hurt, and she tells him not to worry. She's fine, and she's just glad that both he and Drago are still alive. From across the room, Drago admits that he honestly didn't expect Layla to show up. Layla explains that their seniors already escaped using teleportation magic, but she had a bad feeling, so she came back to check on them. And not long after, her body gives out, losing all mobility. Just then, a rescue team bursts into the room, explaining that they heard about what happened and came to help immediately. One of them rushes over to assist Setsuna, but he insists they take care of his friends first. He then looks up, relieved to see that Layla and Drago are already being treated. Later, Setsuna regains full consciousness, realizing with a tired sigh that he's basically become a regular patient in the infirmary. Before saying much, he's already asking about his friend's condition. Lionel, who's standing nearby, laughs lightly, saying that even after being completely knocked out for 3 days, Setsuna's still worrying about others first. Lionel reassures him that both his friends and the seniors are all safe, and that Setsuna was simply the last one to wake up. He adds that he heard about how Setsuna fought such a powerful opponent, but assures him that the headmaster has already taken care of the entire aftermath. Setsuna is relieved, though deep down he knows there are still a lot of secrets being kept from them. Then, out of nowhere, Lionel says he's sorry. Setsuna looks confused, wondering what his teacher could be apologizing for. Lionel explains that he learned about Leo's case directly from the headmaster. He goes on to say that the principal had ordered an internal investigation, since there are still dangerous people like Leo hidden within the academy, but the recent incident has set everything back. Lionel clenches his fists, clearly frustrated that they failed to recognize Giovanni's twisted ambition sooner, which ended up endangering students twice. He lowers his head and apologizes sincerely. He then promises Setsuna that he'll make sure such a tragedy never happens again. Setsuna, surprised to see his teacher bowing, quickly urges him to raise his head. He tries to reach for Lionel but immediately winces in pain, his body still aching. Lionel tells him to calm down, reminding him that his body is still recovering from the heavy strain of overusing mana. He assures him, though, that all the physical injuries have been healed thanks to powerful healing magic, and that they have someone special to thank for that, the person who rushed into the dungeon to rescue them. This makes Setsuna curious. He wants to know who that person is. Just then, the door opens and the mysterious rescuer walks in. It's none other than the bald-headed Professor Zakari. Zakari walks over holding a plate of neatly sliced apples and offers them to Setsuna. Lionel lightly smacks him on the back, reminding him that he still has something important to say to the boy. Zakari sighs, lowering his head, and sincerely apologizes for the way he treated Setsuna during the orientation exam. He admits that his behavior back then came from trauma. He was still carrying the weight of what had happened to him in the past. Despite everything, Lionel reveals that Setsuna's team achieved the highest score in the joint training session, and Setsuna himself earned the top record in the close combat division. To everyone's surprise, Zakari even thanks Setsuna for everything he did during the ordeal. Setsuna is taken aback, barely believing how completely different Zakari sounds now. He also takes the moment to apologize for his own rude attitude when they first met, and the two finally make peace, letting go of their past tension. Before leaving, Zakari tells Setsuna that they'll be seeing each other again soon in class. After Zakari steps out of the room, Lionel pulls out a single glove, saying that the headmaster asked him to give it to Setsuna personally. Setsuna looks puzzled, unsure why the headmaster would send him something like a glove. He then asks Lionel if he knows anything about spirit magic. Lionel explains that spirit magic was the very cause of the Great War among mages hundreds of years ago, and that's why all knowledge or use of it is strictly forbidden. He warns Setsuna never to use it in front of anyone, because if the Holy Church ever finds out, he'll be finished. Setsuna admits that he's heard of the magic that caused the ancient war, but never knew it was spirit magic. Still, he's curious. How does Lionel even know about it? Lionel answers that the headmaster has already told him everything. He assures Setsuna that only the two of them and the principal know the truth about this secret in the entire academy. Setsuna feels relieved that Lionel is now in the loop, though a small part of him wonders if his teacher is truly the right person to hold that knowledge. At that moment, Lionel tells Setsuna that he doesn't care what kind of life he lived in the past. What matters to him now is that Satsuna is a student of the academy, and that's all that counts. Hearing that, Satsuna feels a huge sense of relief and sincerely thanks the professor for his understanding. He then asks about the headmaster, and Lionel explains that the old man will be away for a while because he discovered some leads related to the apostles. Curious, Satsuna presses for more, but Lionel simply tells him to ask the headmaster himself once he returns. As Lionel prepares to leave, he advises Satsuna to get proper rest so his body can recover, mentioning that there's something important he'll share with him later. This only makes Satsuna more curious, as he starts wondering what exactly Lionel is keeping from him. Left alone, Satsuna realizes that without the spirit's power, he would have been long dead. Slowly, he unwraps the bandages around his body to look at the crest engraved on his skin. He quietly admits to himself that the flame's power was beyond incredible. Out of nowhere, he hears a voice firm and echoing, telling him that he's only human, and he shouldn't fool himself into thinking he can handle such power. Satsuna looks around, confused, trying to figure out where that voice is coming from. Then, in a shimmer of light, the spirit finally materializes into a physical form. It lands softly on top of Satsuna's head, like a tiny, loyal puppy. The spirit hops down from his head, its movements quick and lively. Then it proudly introduces itself as Blazer. Despite Blazer's cute, animal-like form, Satsuna can't shake off the terrifying image of how he had seen him before. Blazer dashes toward the window, his eyes sparkling as he takes in the sight of the outside world. He exclaims in awe, saying that everything looks so enormous. Satsuna chuckles, knowing that Blazer probably feels that way because of how small he currently is. He then asks if Blazer is really that amazed by what he's seeing. Blazer admits that while human civilization isn't all that special, it's still overwhelming since it's his first time experiencing it in this form. Curious, Satsuna asks why he chose to appear like this. Blazer, with his usual pride, says he doesn't owe him an explanation, but decides to make an exception this time. He explains that he and Satsuna are connected through the crest, and since he needs to physically manifest, he also needs a steady flow of mana. But if he showed up in his true form, Satsuna's mana would be completely drained in seconds. That's the reason he chose this smaller, energy-efficient form. Hearing that, Satsuna finally understands what had been unclear to him before. Then it hits him. This might be his only real chance to learn everything there is to know about the spirits. So, he gathers his thoughts and asks Blazer about the great magic war from centuries ago, whether he was involved in it, and what happened when it all ended. Blazer hesitates for a moment but decides to answer anyway. He says he doesn't remember much about that war, only that he went on a rampage, exactly as his contracted human had ordered him to. Then Blazer stops abruptly, saying he's not interested in the past anymore and would rather live for the present. With that, he leaps off the bed and dashes out of the room. Startled, Satsuna jumps up and chases after him. He knows that if the church ever finds out about a spirit's existence, it'll be the end of him. So he slips on his glove, ready to catch Blazer before things spiral out of control. Blazer sprints through the hallways, passing by groups of students. The students stare, shocked to see such a bizarre little creature running loose. Some are unsettled, while others find him surprisingly adorable. Satsuna finally catches up, but Blazer teases him for being so weak and slow. Then, with a mischievous grin, Blazer decides to push him even further. He bolts off again, leaving Satsuna no choice but to continue the chase. Joel notices Satsuna racing in his direction. Thinking Satsuna's heading for him, Joel waves his hand to get his attention, but Satsuna runs straight past him without even looking. Joel freezes, completely dumbfounded that Satsuna just ignored him. The exact same thing happens when Carl tries to call out to him too. Meanwhile, from behind a pillar, Cyrus quietly watches the chaos unfold as Satsuna frantically chases his runaway spirit companion. Eventually, Satsuna bursts into a classroom, but Blazer is nowhere to be seen. He looks around and realizes he stumbled into Mifune's class, which shocks him even more. Some of the girls in class start whispering and mocking Satsuna under their breath. But before things get out of hand, Mifune steps forward with a firm tone, telling them not to make fun of his friend. The girls are left stunned, unable to believe that Mifune not only defended Satsuna, but openly called him a friend. Mifune explains to Satsuna that the change in how everyone at the academy treats him is because he got the highest score during the joint training exercise. He adds that the students act this way since none of them actually know what really happened behind the scenes. Satsuna smiles, admitting he never thought anyone would call him a friend. Mifune replies with a smirk, saying that anyone who's useful is worth being called a friend. Satsuna grins back, teasing him for having such a twisted sense of friendship. Then, Mifune brings up Yuzuha, telling Satsuna that she's no longer in immediate danger. Still, she's suffering from the after effects of the incident. The professors are interrogating her to get answers. Satsuna listens quietly, already knowing how meticulous Giovanni can be and figures there's no way that man would leave any trace behind. Suddenly, Satsuna asks Mifune if he's seen a red animal nearby. Mifune points him toward the courtyard. Looking out the window, Satsuna spots Blazer running around in the courtyard, just as Mifune said. He thanks Mifune before heading out to continue the chase. Meanwhile, a crowd has already gathered outside, drawn by the unusual creature. Some students think it's a magical beast, while others believe it's just someone's pet. Blazer, completely ignoring the attention, seems perfectly happy playing among the flowers. Satsuna stands at the corridor, calling out Blazer's name loudly. His voice catches Actor's attention. From the way Satsuna is shouting, Actor quickly figures out that the strange animal belongs to him. Acting on impulse, Actor decides to punish Satsuna by targeting his pet. Pretending to protect the other students from a dangerous, magical beast, he attacks Blazer using ice magic. Blazer watches as the shards of ice rush toward him. Actor is stunned by what happens next. He nearly collapses from fear when Blazer turns to him with a creepy grin and asks if he really just attacked him. Deciding to teach Actor a lesson, Blazer exhales a burst of fire, scorching him slightly. Actor screams in pain, then runs off before he takes any more damage. Satsuna witnesses the whole thing from where he stands, relieved that his pet is unharmed. But then it hits him. If Blazer can still use his powers in animal form, the students might be in serious danger. Some of the students who saw what happened are now more curious than ever about Blazer. Satsuna remains on the balcony, watching anxiously. That's when Layla appears at the scene. Satsuna panics, afraid that his friend might get hurt. He tries to rush toward her, but the pain in his leg stops him in his tracks. Layla now stands face to face with Blazer, who's still on guard after being attacked by Actor. But then, Layla senses something familiar in Blazer's presence. Staying calm and gentle, she kneels down before him, bowing her head to thank him for helping her friend. Blazer seems impressed by her sincerity and praises her attitude. Satsuna is shocked. Blazer's aggressive energy is gone, replaced by a calm and friendly demeanor. Layla reaches into her basket and pulls out one of the fruits she'd planned to give Satsuna. She offers it to Blazer, and he gladly accepts, happily taking a bite. Satsuna can't believe how easily Blazer seems to be tamed. Later, Blazer joins Satsuna and the others in the dining hall. He sits comfortably on Layla's lap while devouring everything on the table. Drago watches in disbelief at how much Blazer can eat and asks Satsuna what kind of animal he actually is. Nervously, Satsuna replies that Blazer is a magical beast. He decides not to reveal Blazer's true nature, worried that the church might go after him if they ever found out. Satsuna feels relieved that Blazer isn't acting hostile toward anyone. He thanks Layla for stepping in, and she modestly says she only did what she could. Blazer probably acted out because of the crowd. Satsuna feels even more relieved knowing that everyone now believes Blazer is just a rare animal. Blazer looks at Layla and tells her that if she keeps bringing him gifts, he wouldn't mind making her his subordinate. Thankfully, only Satsuna can actually hear Blazer's voice. Satsuna then turns to Layla and Drago, thanking them both for saving him in the dungeon. Layla smiles, saying it's their duty to help a friend, and Drago agrees wholeheartedly. Drago then reaches into his pocket and pulls out a letter from his parents. They had heard that his team took first place in the joint training exercise, and they were incredibly proud. Hearing that, Satsuna can't help but feel genuinely happy for him. Layla tells Satsuna that she's worried about Giovanni's true identity. Satsuna admits he shares the same concern since he doesn't know the full story either, but he believes they might get a lead once the professors finish interrogating Yuzuha. Then Drago turns to Satsuna, asking what kind of power he used inside the dungeon. It definitely didn't look like standard close combat magic. Before Satsuna can answer, Layla cuts in, explaining that it was Blazer who lent him that power. Blazer looked pleased, commenting on how sharp Layla's observation is for figuring that out. He rolls playfully on her lap while she pats his head, and Satsuna can only conclude that Blazer has completely been tamed by her. The group is laughing and chatting when Cyrus suddenly appears, calling out for Satsuna. The other students glance at him, confused as to why he's even there. From their reactions alone, it's obvious to Cyrus that nobody wants him around. Still, Cyrus acts shamelessly, stepping closer and asking Satsuna about Blazer's origins. He claims he's never seen a magical beast like that before and starts speculating if Blazer might be some kind of forbidden creature. Satsuna already knows this won't end well if Cyrus keeps running his mouth with those reckless accusations. Cyrus then leans in close, speaking right to Satsuna's face, reminding him that every pet must be registered with the academy. He warns that if Satsuna can't explain how he obtained Blazer, he'll be forced to get rid of the beast. Just as Blazer begins to lose his patience, Zakari suddenly enters the dining hall. Without hesitation, Zakari steps in, claiming he was the one who received Blazer's registration form but misplaced it. He bows apologetically to Cyrus for his mistake, and Satsuna can hardly believe that Zakari is actually covering for him. Cyrus uses the moment to insult Zakari, sneering that he used to be a top student but has now turned into trash. Zakari doesn't react to the insult, continuing to play the fool just to divert Cyrus's attention away from Satsuna. At that moment, Drago stands up from his seat, making Cyrus assume he's about to start a fight, but instead Drago rushes over to Zakari and thanks him sincerely. He explains that Zakari was the reason their team was able to win first place in the joint training exercise. Satsuna and Layla soon join in, both expressing their gratitude to Zakari for his help. Moved by the unexpected kindness, Zakari's eyes well up with tears. but Cyrus interrupts again, accusing them all of putting on a show. However, the rest of the students in the dining hall soon chime in, talking excitedly about how the close combat department has finally surpassed the long-range magic department. They mock Cyrus for still acting superior even though his department is no longer at the top. Frustrated, Cyrus storms out of the hall but reminds Zakari to properly submit the registration form first thing in the morning. Setsuna breathes a sigh of relief, knowing that if things had dragged on any longer, Blazer would have completely lost control. He thanks Zakari for stepping in, even though the professor didn't know all the details of what was going on. Zakari simply waves it off, saying there's no need to thank him. He's sure Setsuna had his own reasons for bringing the magical beast into the academy. Drago and Layla smile, calling Zakari a true role model for other professors. Blazer, meanwhile, remains unimpressed. Right as a phantom beast suddenly appears, carrying a letter addressed to him. The letter turns out to be from the headmaster, congratulating Setsuna on successfully acquiring spirit magic. The headmaster writes that he's concerned Setsuna might struggle to control such a power, and although he wishes to guide him personally, he can't, since he'll be away for a while. However, he's arranged for someone else to teach Setsuna in his absence. The news surprises Setsuna, as he never thought there was even a way to properly control that power. Once Setsuna finishes reading, the letter bursts into flames and destroys itself. Meanwhile, the old woman the headmaster mentioned, the one assigned to train Setsuna, is fuming over the fact that the headmaster exposed her identity. Enraged, she vows under her breath, promising to personally end Setsuna if he turns out to be an incompetent brat. Elsewhere, the headmaster has gathered the elder magicians for an emergency meeting. Most of them refuse to believe in the existence of an evil god, insisting there's no proof of it. The headmaster tells them that the enemy left no trace of evidence. That's exactly why he's seeking their help. Even after hearing his explanation, the council members still think the headmaster has lost his mind. One of them even suggests he might be suffering from amnesia. Soon after, the headmaster leaves the room, where Lionel is already waiting for him outside. Lionel asks the headmaster how the meeting went, and the old man replies that it was complete chaos. Lionel admits he expected as much, while the headmaster isn't surprised that the council members refuse to believe him. Lionel points out that they obviously can't tell the council that they reversed time using forbidden magic. The headmaster nods, saying that maybe his efforts will finally mean something if the apostles decide to make their move. He then asks about Setsuna's condition, and Lionel tells him that the boy is slowly recovering, though it'll take time before he's back to full strength. The headmaster chuckles, saying Satsuna's new teacher is a strict one, and he hopes the boy fully recovers before meeting her. Later, Satsuna wakes up to find Carol smiling down at him. Startled, he sits up quickly and demands to know why she's there. Carol cheerfully explains that she heard he was sick, so she brought him some food to help him get better faster. Satsuna's mood instantly lifts at the mention of food, and Carol proudly adds that it's a recipe Drago taught her. Satsuna thanks her for also taking care of Blazer, since she and Layla have both been looking after the fire spirit. Carol laughs and tells him she even bought some bread to feed Blazer while they were walking through the city streets. She goes on about how amazing Layla is for treating Blazer so gently and without any fear. Satsuna is surprised to hear that, and Carol explains that such acceptance isn't easy, it takes a lot of empathy. She says she can tell because she's close to her own phantom beasts too. Hearing that, Satsuna feels genuinely grateful to have Carol around, just like Layla. Both girls have been looking out for him ever since the dungeon incident. He realizes he needs to recover quickly so he can start learning how to control spirit magic. After a while, Carol gets up to leave for her next class. But before going, she tells Satsuna to bring Blazer along next time she wants to introduce him to Fenrir. Once she leaves, Satsuna decides it's time to study more about spirit magic. He picks up a book detailing the events of the Great War, which took place about 200 years ago. It explains how followers of ancient magic tried to dominate other mages, sparking a massive war between the two sides. The power of ancient magic was overwhelming, but only a few mages could wield it. In the end, the regular mages prevailed, leading to a long era of peace. Ever since then, anyone suspected of using ancient magic is immediately interrogated or even purged. Simply knowing about spirit magic is already considered dangerous, so Satsuna understands he must keep Blazer's true identity hidden. Still, he can't help but wonder if he's doing the right thing. A few days later, Satsuna fully recovers, and he and Lionel begin packing their things to set off. Carol looks worried that Satsuna is leaving the academy so soon after recovering and asks if he's really okay. Drago isn't surprised at all, saying it's just like Satsuna to dive straight into more training and promises to keep training himself so he won't fall behind. Meanwhile, Layla has grown very close to Blazer, and she looks sad about his departure. Blazer acts dramatic, telling her to prepare plenty of fruit for when he returns. With everything ready, Satsuna thanks his friends for all their help, and he bids them goodbye, as he and Lionel walk away together. Since their destination is quite far, Lionel tells Satsuna they'll be using lizard carriages as transportation. Though hard to control, he explains that it's their only option for long-distance travel. Lionel advises Satsuna to just hold on tight to the lizard. Satsuna approaches one of the giant lizards and gently pats its head. The stable owner is surprised the creature doesn't throw a tantrum and confidently says everything should go smoothly. He even apologizes for underestimating Satsuna because of his young age, explaining that most people his age struggle to handle the beasts. Of course, the man has no idea Satsuna already has plenty of experience thanks to his second life. After securing the lizards, Lionel and Satsuna set off on their journey to meet his new teacher. Not long after, they encounter a group of women standing on a quiet road. From their clothes alone, Lionel immediately recognizes who they are. The women confirm that they serve Morgana the witch. Satsuna remembers that name. It was written on the letter he received from the headmaster. But when one of the women speaks, her voice sounds completely different. Lionel narrows his eyes and asks if she's Morgana herself. The woman explains that they are alchemic creations, made through alchemy. She then tells Satsuna that if he truly is the chosen one, he must prove it by defeating her dolls. Without warning, the women unleash a massive wave of magical energy from their weapons. Satsuna reacts instantly, slashing through part of the oncoming attack. Lionel manages to block several of the remaining strikes as well. Satsuna realizes that Morgana must be an incredibly powerful mage if her dolls alone can release such an overwhelming level of magic power. Morgana watches Satsuna fight and lets out a disappointed sigh, repeating once again why she dislikes close combat mages. In response, he draws out a massive mana blade, ready to prove that she's underestimating the wrong kind of mage. Lionel encourages Satsuna not to hold back and to show her what he's capable of. With that, the two charge forward, gaining direct access to the three dolls standing in their way. Satsuna quickly notices that one of the dolls is leading the others, clearly the main one. He barely dodges a decapitating strike from its scythe, jumping backward just in time. The remaining dolls immediately follow up with long-range elemental attacks. Lionel warns Satsuna to stay alert. Just one touch from the lightning attack would be enough to fry him on the spot. Morgana's voice echoes through her dolls, mocking them for struggling against elemental magic, which she calls a rare and superior branch of sorcery. Satsuna knows she's right about one thing. Elemental magic is a nightmare for close combat mages since even the slightest touch causes serious harm. For long-range mages, it's easier since their mana stays away from their bodies. Morgana then summons several golems, continuing to ridicule them for losing to mere extensions of herself, but Satsuna suddenly makes a bold move, determined to prove that close combat magic hasn't even shown its true potential yet. Before Morgana can react, Satsuna closes the gap and lands a solid hit on one of the dolls. At the same time, Lionel engages another doll, striking hard and pushing it back. Satsuna quickly thinks about what weapon would give him the best advantage in this fight. Once he sees an opening, he drives a powerful kick straight into the doll's head. Lionel continues overwhelming another doll, punishing it with a barrage of strikes. But Satsuna suddenly warns him. The scythe-wielding doll is sneaking up behind him. The doll slips into Lionel's blind spot, thrusting its weapon toward him from behind. The attack looks impossible to avoid. It's almost guaranteed to hit. The three dolls then combine their strength, unleashing a massive wave of water elemental magic while taunting the two, asking how they plan to break through it. Lionel calls out to Satsuna, telling him that if he uses his true power, he can shatter the spell easily, but warns that doing so might destroy the entire forest. Without hesitation, Blazer activates his power. The crest on Satsuna's hand lights up, glowing intensely as the spirit's power surges through him. But the overwhelming force of the fire spirit's energy is too much for him to handle. Satsuna screams in pain, struggling to contain it, then shouts for Blazer to pull back. Even while enduring the pain, Satsuna insists that he wants to win, but reminds Blazer that this is a test of strength. It's clear that Morgana is only trying to gauge his true ability. Out of nowhere, the powerful magic pulls both Satsuna and Lionel straight toward Morgana's dwelling. The two's completely confused as they're transported there without warning. Moments later, they find themselves standing before Morgana's hut. The first thing Morgana asks is why Satsuna didn't use his spirit magic when he was clearly cornered. His choice to hold back surprises her deeply, sparking curiosity. Satsuna explains that he didn't use the fire spirit's power because spirit magic is meant to stay hidden. Besides, he didn't know who he was really fighting, and using it recklessly could have set the entire forest ablaze, something he wanted to avoid at all costs. Morgana calls him a soft-hearted fool, but she admits she respects him for not forcing himself to use a power he still can't control. Since that's the case, Morgana decides she'll personally teach him how to control his fire magic. Grateful, Satsuna bows to the old witch and thanks her sincerely for her guidance. Blazer, however, gets offended by this and reveals his true form, burning with pride. Morgana calmly tells him that she won't allow a wildfire spirit to burn down her forest. She immediately releases her own spirit, a powerful water spirit, and declares that she'll show him how a real mage tames their spirit. Morgana stops holding back, deciding it's time to end her little game with Blazer. After subduing him, she releases Blazer from the water bubble, saying she only wanted to teach him a lesson. Then she explains that mastering spirit magic has 3 stages. The first is confronting the spirit itself to earn its genuine acknowledgement. She points out that this is why Satsuna's spirit magic is still incomplete. In fact, she's furious that Headmaster Danan never taught him properly and even calls the headmaster a brat, shocking Setsuna completely. Morgana goes on to explain that the forest is full of countless spirits, making it the perfect place to reach a state of selflessness. The next day, Setsuna begins his training exactly as Morgana instructed, starting with deep meditation under her supervision. He also spends time cleaning the hut while Blazer lazes around doing as he pleases. In the kitchen, Morgana even uses her water magic to slice ingredients like invisible knives. After all that, they enjoy a delicious meal prepared by Morgana herself, ending the day on a rare, peaceful note. Setsuna often finds himself in harsh training routines, like sitting under a freezing waterfall with nothing but his bare body exposed to the elements. During one of those sessions, he witnesses a rare phenomenon known as the spirit cosmos. 2 weeks of intense training later, Morgana expresses how impressed she is that Setsuna has managed to sense the presence of spirits. Because of this progress, she informs him that they'll soon enter the spirit world itself, where they'll form a direct bond with the spirits. Morgana explains that the fire spirit they're about to meet is an ancient being that has existed for thousands of years. And because the spirit world is a dangerous place, she reassures Setsuna that she'll be accompanying him. Blazer, however, reminds Morgana that while she may be a boss in the human world, she won't necessarily enjoy that same privilege in his domain. He then turns to Setsuna, warning him not to get ahead of himself, but Setsuna just smiles, saying all he really needs is Blazer's approval. Morgana then looks over to Lionel, asking if he can protect their physical bodies while they're inside the spirit world, since they'll be completely defenseless during the process. Lionel confidently assures her that he and the servants will guard them without fail. Once she receives Lionel's word, Morgana turns back to Setsuna and tells him it's time to begin. The first step, she says, is to reach a state of complete selflessness. Only then will the door to the spirit world open. When Morgana sees Blazer's true form, she finally understands why he carries such arrogance. At that moment, Morgana creates a magical barrier around Blazer to protect Setsuna's will from being overwhelmed. Flames immediately engulf Setsuna once again. Still, his mastery over magic control surpasses most others, and since spirit power works under the same principle, it becomes much easier for him to handle. On top of that, he has already achieved a state of selflessness. Setsuna endures the fire calmly, declaring to Blazer that he'll earn his approval, his voice steady with confidence. But suddenly, he senses a dark, sinister magic spreading through the air. Lionel, bound by duty to protect them, instantly prepares himself for combat. The source of the evil presence reveals itself. It's Leo. Leah is caught off guard, surprised to see both Lionel and Setsuna at the hut, but the situation worsens as Jagan appears, making everything spiral further out of control. Leo grins at Jagan, suggesting he take Morgana and leave Setsuna to him since the two used to be close comrades. Leo arrogantly adds that Lionel is free to run away if he wants, since they're not after him. But that remark only makes Lionel furious. Meanwhile, in the spirit world, Blazer begins a psychological battle with Setsuna, trying to make him lose focus and fall apart. Setsuna, however, keeps his composure, refusing to be manipulated by the irritating fire spirit. He steels his heart and pushes through. But then he notices the worried look on Morgana's face and immediately asks what's wrong. Morgana tells him that something serious is happening in the real world. She senses that an evil power has invaded the forest and that her servants have already been defeated. Hearing this, Setsuna quickly deduces that it might be the apostles behind the attack. Morgana warns him that if he fails the trial, he might never be able to return to the real world. But Setsuna tells her he doesn't care. He sees this as a challenge he must overcome on his own. He asks Morgana to take care of Lionel and the servants instead. Blazer then questions why he seeks such power when it's clearly far beyond his reach. Setsuna replies that in his previous life he lost everything. Everyone who mattered to him was gone because of his weakness. Blazer scoffs, calling his reason a petty motivation, yet he's secretly impressed by Setsuna's resolve to face his fears head-on. Acknowledging this, Blazer decides not to put him through another endurance test like before. Instead, he shrinks down to a smaller size, so that they can engage in a direct battle of wills. Setsuna doesn't hesitate for a second. He accepts the challenge without fear. Back in the real world, Lionel is struggling to hold his ground against the apostles. Even Jagan admits that for a human, Lionel's strength is pretty impressive, but Lionel fights with rage, striking down one of the servants in the chaos. With Lionel occupied outside, Leo sees this as the perfect moment to seize Morgana, but just as his attack is about to land, Morgana snaps back to her body just in time, deflecting the strike, and scolds the apostles for daring to invade her home. Leo curses under his breath, frustrated that she woke up at such a bad time for him. Morgana, still rattled, realizes this is her first time witnessing a magic nullification firsthand. Jagan loses his temper, roaring in fury as usual. Meanwhile, the old woman silently contemplates the possible outcomes of the ongoing clash. Leo notices her hesitation and laughs, mocking her that her little tricks won't work on him. But even Leo can sense that Morgana has managed to corner him with her most recent move. Morgana acknowledges that Leo's power is incredible, but she firmly believes he won't be able to withstand a massive surge of water. Suddenly, Leo releases a surge of dark energy from his body, an explosive blast that tears through the air. The sheer force of it obliterates Morgana's incoming water attack completely. Smirking, Leo tells the old woman that he's been training exactly for moments like this. Morgana can hardly believe what she's seeing. Leo has somehow managed to apply the techniques of long-range magic to his nullification magic, but before Leo can gloat any further, Setsuna appears out of nowhere, slamming a blazing punch straight into his face. The impact sends Leo flying across the forest, crashing violently into the trees. Morgana smiles the moment she sees Setsuna's return. His presence alone proves that he has successfully defeated the flame spirit. Lionel, watching from a distance, can sense just how precise Setsuna's control over the flames is, enough to keep the entire forest from burning. Jagan turns towards Setsuna, mocking that he's nothing like Leo, who's still just a rookie. Setsuna can feel Blazer's excitement inside him, but he tells him to stay alert since both Jagan and Leo are formidable opponents. A few minutes earlier, back in the spirit world, Setsuna and Blazer were exchanging brutal blows, each testing the other's strength. Blazer landed some solid hits on Setsuna, but Setsuna returned just as many in kind. Suddenly, Blazer noticed something strange. Setsuna was smiling. When he asked why, Setsuna simply said, with full confidence, that he was going to win. Even though his face was completely bruised and battered from Blazer's punches, Setsuna refused to give up. He told Blazer that his strength was indeed impressive. That's why he had never lost until now, but he pointed out that this was also his weakness. Because Setsuna has failed countless times before, he knows exactly how to rise again. With a confident shout, he declares that Blazer is about to experience his very first defeat. When the explosion of flames clears, Setsuna is still standing tall. Blazer is taken aback, and after witnessing how Setsuna handled everything, for the first time ever, he calls him by his actual name instead of just boy. The two then share a respectful fist bump, solidifying their bond. Now back in the real world, Setsuna faces Jagan head-on. Lionel warns him to watch out for Jagan's claws, but Setsuna already knows exactly what those claws can do. They steal the power of whatever they touch. He remembers this well because Jagan was the only apostle he fought before his regression. The authority granted to him is the devourer of all. He can't nullify magic, but he can absorb the mana of anyone he slashes. In Setsuna's past life, Jagan single-handedly wiped out the entire Northern Kingdom, which was home to some of the best alchemical technology in the world. He annihilated them while stealing their magical energy. Setsuna is also surprised that Leo still has the strength to stand after that last hit. It's proof that Leo too has become much stronger. Setsuna knows that just one slash from Jagan could make things extremely difficult for him. Still, he refuses to back down, because he's grown stronger as well. Jagan can hardly believe that Setsuna is actually faster than him. It's because Setsuna has combined Blazer's fiery power with his physical enhancements. Even Morgana is amazed that Setsuna has already learned to control the range of his fire attacks in such a short time. Jagan lets out a thunderous roar so powerful that Setsuna and the others have to cover their ears from the pain. But in that chaos, Jagan manages to absorb a portion of Blaze's power. Setsuna only grows more fired up, eager to see how strong Jagan becomes with those flame abilities. Yet even with that boost, Setsuna keeps up with his speed and dodges every strike. Then suddenly, Jagan realizes that his own body is burning. A moment later, he notices something even worse. He can no longer move. Setsuna mocks him, saying that even if he can absorb power, it's useless if he doesn't know how to wield it properly. Leo can't believe what he's hearing when Jagan actually calls out to him for help, especially after telling him earlier to stay out of his way. Jagan screams again, ordering Leo to just do what he says. Annoyed, Leo finally agrees, just to make him shut up. He then unleashes a devastating long-range spell, striking Jagan directly. But instead of using nullification magic, he goes for pure destruction. The attack slices through Jagan's body, but it doesn't stop there. It keeps going, ripping through the space beyond him, and reaches Morgana, who isn't prepared for it. The blast melts half her body the instant it makes contact. Jagan screams at Leo, accusing him of betrayal, but Leo coldly replies that he simply prioritized the mission. After all, they had only found Morgana's location thanks to Jagan's sense of smell, and as far as Leo's concerned, his part of the job is already done. Setsuna leaps in, summoning the spirit flame and shaping it into a blazing sword. By the time he's finished dealing with Jagan, nothing will be left standing in his way. Setsuna turns around, only to see that Leo has already escaped once again, just like before. He immediately tries to track him down, but no matter how hard he focuses, he can't sense Leo's mana anywhere. Frustrated, Setsuna declares that no matter what it takes, he's going to defeat Leo. He then helps Morgana up gently, telling her to hold on so she can get proper treatment. Morgana smiles weakly, and tells Setsuna that there's no way to save her. Leo had struck her with disintegration magic. Even so, Setsuna refuses to give up on her, but Lionel quietly places a hand on his shoulder, signaling him not to push his luck any further. Morgana turns to Setsuna and tells him he should be proud, for he's a close combat mage acknowledged by the flame spirit itself. She then hands him a pendant, explaining that it holds her spirit, Water Nya. However, before Setsuna can even respond, Morgana breathes her last dying right there in his arms. Overcome by despair, Setsuna gently lays her body on the ground. Then, in his grief, he asks Lionel what the point of getting stronger is if he can't even protect the ones close to him. Lionel stays silent for a moment, taking in the weight of the question before replying. Setsuna's eyes are filled with tears when suddenly Morgana's servant appears. She smacks Setsuna on the head, telling him that he's just been tricked. Setsuna stares at her in confusion, having no idea what she means. Then, out of nowhere, the servant drops the biggest surprise of all. She reveals that she is actually the real Morgana. Setsuna's jaw nearly hits the floor upon hearing this. Unlike the other dolls, Morgana had embedded her own soul into this one, which is why she could feel emotions and freely use her powers. The real Morgana smiles proudly, calling the decoy her greatest masterpiece as an alchemist. Setsuna remains doubtful. He's never seen a doll appear so human. On top of that, she looks exactly like the doll he saw in the spirit realm. Morgana calmly explains that appearances can easily change in that world. When Lionel still looks skeptical, Morgana removes her headwear, revealing her long, pointed ears. It turns out she's an elf, and because of her elven blood, she can live far longer than humans. She even tells them to take a guess at her age. When she finally admits she's over 300 years old, Setsuna is completely stunned. But then it hits him. Morgana must have lived through the Great Magic War. When he brings it up, Morgana quickly realizes he's curious about that era. She agrees to tell him everything, but says it'll come with a price. Setsuna instantly offers to pay her, but Morgana laughs and cuts him off, saying she was only teasing. Since the area they're in isn't safe, she suggests they move to the lake, where she'll tell them about the erased history, the Great Magic War, but only after she finishes tossing a few stones into the water. Once they settle down, she begins by reminding them that the world is home to many races. Dwarves, elves, beastmen, and among them, elves are the only ones with a lifespan close to immortality. Because elves live close to nature, they often interact with spirits, and that connection is what gave rise to their spirit magic. She tells them about one particular elf who manipulated a nation's king, taking advantage of the man's loyalty. But after a long and brutal war, the believers of elves and spirits were defeated, and ever since then, elves have been persecuted. The term ancient magic, she explains, was merely created to hide the truth that magic itself was a way to interact with spirits. When her story ends, Lionel is deeply moved. He asks if she still holds any anger toward humans for what they did to the elves. Morgana admits that she once hated humans, but those feelings are long gone now. She knows that even after all these years, some humans still seek to wipe out elves, and that's why she relied on a body double to keep her real identity hidden. Setsuna then asks why she decided to reveal her true form to them. She answers simply, it's because the headmaster trusts them. Morgana teases Setsuna a bit, saying she saw him crying earlier and decided to show her true self just to comfort him. Lionel then asks what she plans to do next. Morgana explains that she has no choice but to move again, now that her hideout's been discovered. She believes they might never meet again, and that thought cuts deeply into Setsuna's heart. He bows his head and asks Morgana to come to humanity's aid again if danger ever arises. He finishes his plea with a quiet but earnest, please. His sincerity moves Morgana more than she expected. Suddenly, a spirit jumps out of the crest, trying to threaten her. But Morgana instantly responds with a flicker of water magic, sending the creature fleeing in fear. With that, Lionel and Setsuna return to their lizards, ready to head back to the academy. Setsuna and Lionel are relieved, thinking they're finally going to enjoy a peaceful ride back to the academy. Meanwhile, Santanakia questions Leo, asking if he at least confirmed the witch's death. The overwhelming pressure from Santanakia is so intense that Leo can barely stand. It feels like his bones might crack under it. Desperate to defend himself, Leo says that no one ever told him Setsuna knew about Jagan's power, but Santanakia cuts him off sharply, saying there's no excuse for his failure. Still, she decides it's time to reevaluate everything related to Setsuna, convinced that he must possess some hidden talent they haven't uncovered yet. Back on the other side, Setsuna and Lionel continue their calm, uneventful journey to the academy. Setsuna gazes up at the sky, wondering when he started to actually care about the people around him. In his previous life, all he did was fight, and he won every battle using sheer skill alone. But now, things are different. This life has changed him. He's found people he can rely on, and he's realized that other branches of magic aren't as useless as he once believed. He's also thankful for the mana control he refined in his past life, since that training helped him master close combat magic to this extent. Lionel comments that Setsuna's level of mastery isn't something one could achieve in just a few years. Sitting down, Setsuna takes out the magic item Morgana had given him. He studies it closely and finally understands it's an important artifact that might become crucial when the time comes. Quietly, he whispers to the water spirit, asking if she can hear him. To his surprise, the water spirit responds, saying there's no need for him to speak. She already knows who he is because he's been with Morgana. But then it hits him. This isn't the time to celebrate. The real battle is still ahead. Setsuna looks puzzled, unsure what she meant by that warning. When Blazer hears about the trial, he's disappointed. He was hoping the water spirit would give Setsuna something tougher, but she calmly tells Blazer she holds no ill will toward him. At that moment, Lionel pats Setsuna on the shoulder, joking that he's one lucky guy, and on top of that, he says he's got a story to tell that will move Setsuna to tears. The water spirit curiously decides to listen, while Lionel eagerly prepares himself to tell the tale. But as Lionel begins narrating, it doesn't take long before everyone gets bored, and one by one, they fall asleep. Setsuna decides not to bring it up just yet and plans to discuss it with his friends once they reach the academy. When they arrive, Layla is the first to hear about it, and she immediately starts thinking hard about what it could mean. Layla then tells Setsuna to come with her to the art museum when he's free. She has a friend who might know more about what's bothering him. Setsuna agrees without hesitation. As expected, Carolyn Drago insists on tagging along too. And so, Setsuna resumes his daily life with his friends. He keeps visiting the sacred tree to train, and continues attempting the water spirit trial, though he keeps failing every time. Eventually, even Blazer admits that Setsuna has learned to control his power, to an impressive degree. Time passes, and winter finally arrives. Unfortunately, Setsuna can no longer train at the sacred tree because he has completely drained its mana. It'll take years before it recovers. During this time, several major events are set to happen, one of which is only 7 days away. Setsuna explains that the invasion of the evil god was marked by 4 catastrophic incidents. The first was the Great Plague of Dragon Silence. The second, the fall of the Magus army. The third, the sudden overnight disappearance of the royal capital. Drago nods, saying his father plans to teach him the secret close combat techniques passed down through their family line. Carol cheerfully mentions that she'll be heading to the icy plains in her family's territory to have fun with Fenrir, and even invites Blazer to join, but he refuses immediately without a second thought. Layla is taken aback by this, especially since Carol's family is known for their immense wealth. She then turns to Setsuna, asking how he plans to spend his break, but he's already lost deep in thought. Carol notices that Layla seems flustered, so she leans closer and whispers that Layla should make a move on Setsuna before someone else does. He's quite popular with girls after all. Layla is startled by the comment and tries to laugh it off, insisting Carol has it wrong, but Carol smirks and tells her there's no point hiding it. Layla quickly changes the subject, asking Setsuna about his hometown. He explains that he grew up in an orphanage in the Eldina region. Layla is surprised, realizing that region is close to her family's inn. As they're chatting, the arrogant noble Carl suddenly barges in, trying to join the conversation even though no one invited him. After hearing where Layla is from, he arrogantly offers her his hand, asking if she'd like to join him on a luxurious vacation. Layla just stares at him like he's some diseased animal. But before Carl can even touch her, he's suddenly launched into the air blasted away by earth magic. It turns out to be a young girl dressed in a nun's outfit. Setsuna is caught off guard when she suddenly runs over and hugs Layla tightly. This leaves him blinking in confusion as he turns to Layla and asks who the girl is. Layla then explains that the girl is Roberta, her relative, who came to take her home for the winter break. Roberta adds that she also plans to help with the Saints Festival being held in Eldina. The moment Setsuna hears that, his face brightens with excitement. He knows about the Saints Festival, the grand event that always takes place at the end of the year. After realizing that Drago and Setsuna have no hidden motives in being around Layla, Layla's friends finally take the chance to introduce themselves to the rather uptight lady. Roberta quickly becomes curious about Setsuna, especially since she's already heard stories about him. Layla then tells Roberta that Setsuna's hometown is Eldina, and Roberta immediately suggests that they give him a ride there. On the first day of the winter break, their journey begins. Along the way, the seeds they planted suddenly burst into fully grown trees, ultimately wiping out the monsters in their path. Setsuna instantly figures out that Roberta must have used healing magic on the seeds, and Roberta confirms it. She sent mana into them to accelerate their growth. Setsuna is genuinely impressed. It turns out that modifying healing magic for offensive purposes later became a key tactic in the war against the evil god, and he's glad to see someone mastering it this early. Setsuna offers to lend a hand, but Roberta tries to stop him, warning how dangerous it is to get bitten by demonic dogs. Yet with a single swing of his punch, Setsuna activates Charge Bullet and obliterates all the monsters in one blow. Roberta is left stunned and can't help but ask if Setsuna is really just a student. However, during the entire battle, Layla notices how Setsuna keeps protecting his glove, and that makes her certain he's hiding something from them. Later that day, they arrive at an inn to rest. Even the broken cup from earlier has somehow been cleaned up by Layla. The next morning, Roberta appears before them looking refreshed and back to her usual self. Playing her role as a calm and collected agent, Roberta chats with Setsuna kindly and even offers to prepare his breakfast. Setsuna thanks her for the gesture but says he'd rather eat first. The situation turns awkward when Roberta walks into the sauna, wrapped in just a towel. She then asks Setsuna if he's comfortable wearing gloves in such a hot place, and even suggests helping him take them off. Setsuna refuses to answer, prompting Roberta to ask if he's hiding something as she slowly steps closer to him. Suddenly, Layla bursts into the sauna, shouting for Roberta to stop. Everyone startled to see her there. Before anyone can react, Layla grabs Roberta and drags her out, scolding her for entering while the sauna is being cleaned. Apparently, there was a cleaning sign outside, and she also tells Setsuna to get out immediately. It's clear that Layla is ready to do whatever it takes to protect Setsuna from any trouble. With a cheerful tone, she says she wants to see Setsuna's hometown too, adding that she'd love to help out at the orphanage. She asks if that's okay with him, and Setsuna agrees but still checks with Roberta for her opinion first. Once they arrive, Layla watches in awe as the children rush towards Setsuna, surrounding him like he's their father. Setsuna then walks over to Thomas to stand beside him, telling everyone that Thomas is like a brother to him and that it's thanks to him the orphanage is still running. Thomas smiles, saying that he was once an orphan there too and is just doing his best to give back. The two start teasing each other playfully, and Layla is genuinely surprised she's never seen Setsuna act this carefree before. Then Thomas admits his shock that Setsuna chose close combat magic, especially when his goal had been to join the Magus army and climb to the top. Setsuna just grins and tells him not to worry. He still intends to be the best, even with close combat magic. After a while, Setsuna visits the grave of the orphanage's founder, Deborah, to pay his respects. He explains that Deborah was his savior. Without her, he knows he wouldn't even be alive. Roberta joins him quietly, asking if he would share some of his memories with her. That night, Setsuna sneaks into the royal cemetery and hides in a safe spot like a silent guardian, keeping watch from the shadows. Meanwhile, Roberta turns to Layla, commenting on how calm she's been. From her behavior, Roberta realizes Layla must have overheard her earlier conversation. Layla quickly apologizes, insisting it wasn't on purpose. Layla then urges Thomas to tell them both more about Setsuna's past. After a moment, he agrees. Thomas begins by recalling the night Setsuna first arrived at the orphanage. He shares that Setsuna's mother was named Emma, a girl born into a humble farming family. He describes Emma as his fated one. She was later taken in by the Schneider family, a powerful noble house. Emma was amazed by all the luxury there and ran around the estate like a free bird. Not long after, Emma became pregnant and gave birth to baby Setsuna. The noble family praised her for bringing a new life into the world. Deborah took her in and cared for her, but due to her severe injuries, Emma knew she wouldn't survive. With her last breath, she made Deborah promise that she would take care of Setsuna and never hand him over to anyone. One time, he came home with injuries, and when Deborah asked what happened, he admitted that he tried to stop a noble's son from bullying his friend. With tears in his eyes, Setsuna asked Deborah if what that noble boy said was true, if people like him were truly powerless, even when they wanted to protect others. He also wanted to know whether prayer really worked. Frustrated, he shouted, asking if praying was really going to save him, but Deborah just chuckled softly and told him that he'd have to wait and see. She reminded him that his mother was a strong woman, and that meant he had no reason to rush his growth. Later, Setsuna became fascinated with an old book he had found, but since he couldn't understand any of its contents, he went to Deborah for help. She looked through it and suggested they try following the book's instructions. The first spell she picked out was a simple fireball. She then demonstrated it right in front of Setsuna. He was completely stunned by the blazing flame that burst from Deborah's hand. Still, Setsuna couldn't quite grasp how the book's strange symbols turned into real magic. 5 years later, Setsuna had already become an impressive young mage. Even so, he wanted to explore other branches of magic. But since choosing a magic path permanently binds one's core, Setsuna found himself at a difficult crossroads. Still, he was confident that by practicing magic close to each path, he could eventually discover the one that suited him best. When Setsuna heard a comment that mocked his indecision, he ran off into the forest in anger. There, Slane was harassing a girl named Roka, warning her not to resist since she was just a commoner. Suddenly, Slane froze. He couldn't believe his eyes. There had never been any reports of goblins in that forest before. One of the goblins charged at him, and he quickly struck it with weak magic. His followers cheered, praising him and saying his future in the Magus army was guaranteed. Feeling proud, Slane used even more mana this time, expecting to obliterate all the goblins at once. But to his shock, the spell didn't have the effect he imagined. It barely did anything. The goblins then smiled creepily, as if pleased to see new prey handed to them. Setsuna suddenly leapt between the goblins and Roka without a shred of hesitation. He blasted the monsters with a powerful burst of magic. Setsuna continued striking them with fierce, unrelenting spells. Slane shouted that such strength meant nothing since magic power was the only thing that truly mattered, but Setsuna had spent 5 long years mastering his mana control through relentless training. He then released a precise flow of magic that caused the cloth in his hand to slowly ignite. Slane's eyes went wide in disbelief. He assumed Setsuna was using a rare type of magic called Bistol magic, even though Setsuna hadn't gone through the ritual to choose a magic path yet. Setsuna then tossed the burning cloth toward the goblins. He calmly told Slane that while the spell might not drive the goblins away completely, it would at least keep them from approaching. Slane guessed it must be a form of healing magic, but Setsuna corrected him. It wasn't fully refined yet. Terrified, Slane trembled and asked what Setsuna planned to do next. Setsuna simply said they were jumping off the cliff. With no time to argue, they both leapt off together. Shaking with fear, Slane started apologizing for everything he had done. But before he could even finish, Roka kicked him right between the legs. delivering a pain that only another guy could truly understand. Slane collapsed in agony, and Roka warned him never to come near them again. Time passed peacefully until Deborah fell ill when Setsuna turned 15. She thanked him for always being there for her, assuring him that he was more than capable of achieving great things. Setsuna then told her that he had decided to enroll in the Magic Academy. He added that his dream was only possible because of the training and guidance she had given him. Knowing her end was near, Deborah gathered the children and told them that they deserved to know the truth about her sins. Setsuna tried to convince her that what happened wasn't her fault at all. She had always taught them that the heart's core was what truly mattered, but now she confessed that she was the pitiful one all along. Deborah thanked all the children for everything they had given her up to that point. She revealed that the core of her heart had always been their smiles. In tears, Setsuna promised her that he would become the strongest long-range mage, graduate at the top of his class, and join the MAGE battalion. After achieving all that, he swore he would support the orphanage and make her proud. Not long after Deborah's burial, Setsuna enrolled in the Magic Academy. Hearing the story from Thomas, Layla was moved to tears. She never imagined Setsuna had gone through such a painful past. Later that night, Roberta directed her magic towards Setsuna's left hand, which was still hidden under his glove, trying to confirm her suspicions. But the spell immediately tore apart the glove instead. Roberta then questioned Setsuna about what he was doing there, and he replied that he was patrolling the royal cemetery since strange events often happen there during the Saints Festival. Blazer finally lets out a sigh of relief, glad that everything has come to an end, since the whole situation was starting to wear down his patience. This entire setup had actually been part of the instructions Morgana left in the note she gave to Setsuna. She proudly claims that it's her own original technique, something so unique that no one would easily figure it out. Roberta then turns to Layla and sincerely apologizes for all the trouble she caused because of her doubts and suspicions. Afterward, Roberta asks Layla if she has any plans to invite Setsuna to the Saints Festival. Once Setsuna finishes storing the pendant safely, he turns to Blazer and tells him that it's time for them to leave. Just as he's about to go, Layla suddenly bumps into him from behind. When he turns around, he sees Layla standing there in a stunning dress that makes her look absolutely breathtaking. Setsuna stands frozen for a moment, still trying to make sense of what's happening. His hesitation irritates Roberta, who snaps at him, demanding to know if he can't spare any time from his supposedly busy schedule. Before she can scold him further, Layla quickly interrupts, accepting Setsuna's decision not to attend. Setsuna then walks away, with Layla smiling softly and wishing him luck on his patrol. Moments later, the ground begins to tremble violently beneath them. Setsuna quickly orders the nearby guards to evacuate the area, warning them about the danger. The guards, however, look confused since they've never seen him before. They question his authority, saying no one informed them about anything he just mentioned. They even tell him to run for his life, because there's no way he can handle all those monsters alone. Meanwhile, Setsuna himself is puzzled by the name Tsukuyomi. He doesn't yet realize she's one of the apostles. Tsukuyomi believes that Giovanni chose Yuzuha because she resembles someone he reveres. But now, she's clearly disappointed that Yuzuha didn't live up to his expectations. After observing Setsuna, Tsukuyomi praises him, saying his instincts are extraordinary and his combat abilities are remarkable as well. Now she finally understands why Giovanni wanted him so badly. Setsuna braces himself as her magic slams toward him, barely managing to block the attack. Tsukuyomi casually reveals that she revived the dead warriors earlier at the Southern Mausoleum before coming here to execute her grand plan. She mocks Setsuna, saying she gathered all these warriors just for him. Then, sitting upon an undead throne she created, she waits to see how Setsuna intends to break through her defenses. One of the undead swordsmen suddenly lunges forward, swinging its massive blade at Setsuna. The undead fighters work together seamlessly, perfectly compensating for each other's weaknesses. But then, Setsuna notices something odd. Their movements suddenly stop completely. Tsukuyomi smirks, impressed by his sharp reaction, admitting that she expected nothing less from the so-called legendary hero. Still, she considers herself far too powerful for mere dead souls to resist. Setsuna clenches his fists in anger, furious that Tsukuyomi is toying with the heroes who once fought so hard to protect others. Back at the house, Roberta is still fuming over Setsuna's rejection of her relative's invitation, but then it hits her. Something isn't right. There's no way Setsuna would accept a mere security duty right after returning to town. It finally dawns on her that something serious must be happening, especially since he's been patrolling the cemetery ever since his arrival. Determined, she begins to investigate the mysterious orb connected to all this. Roberta then turns to Layla, telling her they must find Setsuna, restrain him if necessary, and talk to him before things spiral out of control. Layla insists on following her, but Roberta refuses, warning that it might be too dangerous. As the fight continues, it's revealed that Setsuna developed his secret technique long before his regression. During joint training, he had been too afraid to use it, but now that he's fighting alone, he doesn't hesitate. However, he quickly realizes that each of his undead opponents is powerful enough to rival the Hydra itself. In the distance, Roberta spots Tsukuyomi, leaving her completely bewildered by what she's seeing. Using his terrifying secret skill, Setsuna cuts through the undead army, almost reaching Tsukuyomi. Roberta appears beside him, saying she couldn't stay hidden any longer. The stench of Tsukuyomi's magic was simply too strong to ignore. But right then, Layla arrives on the battlefield. She attacks Tsukuyomi from behind, but her strike is blocked by an undead shield that leaves Tsukuyomi unharmed. Seeing Layla there, Setsuna asks if she can assist them in their desperate situation. She nods firmly, agreeing to help. From the rear, Roberta provides ranged support, firing precise spells to aid them. Unfortunately, Tsukuyomi's plan begins to take effect, and the legendary undead duo grow even stronger than before. In the midst of battle, Layla suddenly finds a sword coming straight for her neck. She quickly realizes there's no way she can dodge it, and she accepts that she's done for. But at the last moment, Roberta leaps in front of her and takes the hit instead. The sword pierces Roberta's chest, sending her crashing to the ground. Layla screams her name in horror. While Layla tries to tend to Roberta's wound, the undead swordsman charges at her again. Setsuna's sudden, precise counterattack shocks the girls with its speed and precision. His strike leaves the undead warrior completely exposed, with no shield left to protect it. Setsuna swiftly maneuvers around the creature, landing clean hits from every angle. Yet Tsukuyomi remains calm, noting that Setsuna only has about 30 seconds left before his powerful skill wears off. Just then, one of the legendary swordsmen suddenly joins Setsuna's side, launching a devastating attack that tears through the undead horde. Tsukuyomi rises from her throne once again, her expression now twisted into something truly terrifying. As Setsuna fights on, memories of all the good times he shared with Layla begin to flash through his mind, fueling the strength behind his final blows. Blazer yells at Setsuna, warning him not to use his powers because his body won't be able to handle the strain. To make things even worse, Tsukuyomi's webs are covered in spikes, turning the fight into a nightmare for Setsuna. Setsuna turns toward Layla and asks if she's okay, and she nods, saying she's fine. It turns out she was saved by the water spirit, all thanks to the pendant she wears around her neck. Out of nowhere, Layla finds herself in the spirit realm, where she finally comes face to face with the water spirit. Waternia introduces herself and tells Layla that she will lend her strength, though to Layla, everything still sounds a little confusing. Waternia then gently corrects her, explaining that Layla has already earned that strength by feeling something she had never known before. True love. The spirit explains that she witnessed a man who risked everything, using spirit magic for a woman even when it could get him executed, and that same woman risking her own life to protect him in return. Waternia calls this emotion true love, saying it's more than enough to overcome her trial. She adds that the willingness to sacrifice oneself for another is something only humans are capable of. Waternia then suggests they return to the real world to save Layla's lover, but Layla almost slips back into denial, about to say that Setsuna isn't her lover. Yet she agrees anyway, admitting that the emotion she's been searching for is love, and that it's already alive in her heart. Setsuna, realizing her determination, decides to trust her completely with what's coming next. Instead of forming a sword, Layla manifests a whip this time. Tsukuyomi fails to defend herself and ends up taking the hit head-on. But before she can fall, Layla catches her and tells her firmly that she has nowhere left to run. In an unexpected twist, Tsukuyomi manages to get behind Setsuna before he can react, raising her hand to strike him down. Setsuna calls out to his allies, telling them to listen carefully because what he's about to do will put an end to this battle. Meanwhile, Tsukuyomi relies on her ability to molt and dodge attacks, believing that as long as her core remains safe, she can revive endlessly. But she hasn't paid attention to the fact that her opponent's power has changed. It's no longer something she can simply shrug off. Layla's whip lashes out, wrapping tightly around Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi then tries to negotiate, offering Setsuna a deal. She can grant him immortality by turning him into an undead. Layla blushes, mumbling that she's probably gotten stronger, and as the two exchange embarrassed glances, Waternia's voice echoes from behind, teasing them about their adorable love life. Nearby, Puker bursts into laughter, mocking how pathetic he must be for losing to someone like Setsuna. Yet deep down, Puker looks forward to keeping an eye on Leo, planning to take him out if he ever betrays them. And while he's plotting, the academy itself stands on the verge of collapse, doomed to fall to monsters within 5 years. Setsuna is genuinely moved by how much Layla cares for him, but even then he tells her that the choice regarding the crest is entirely up to her. Setsuna then reveals a dark truth, that in his previous life, the saint had actually joined the side of evil. Roberta is completely shocked, especially since she knows of Gustav, though she's never spoken to him directly. Suddenly, a giant bird descends from the sky, and judging from the emblem on its belt, it clearly belongs to the MAGE battalion. Setsuna instantly raises his guard, ready for anything. The rider dismounts and introduces himself as Sid, commander of the MAGE battalion. Sid tells Setsuna he's welcome to join them after the new year, since the battalion values strong individuals. One of the mages under Sid objects, saying Setsuna's just a kid hiding behind a woman, and there's no way he's as strong as they claim. But Setsuna recognizes him right away. He used to fight beside this man on the battlefield, someone completely opposite of him in fighting style. His name is Zappa. The moment Zappa hears this, his expression turns hostile, thinking Satsuna is trying to mock him. Enraged, Zappa unleashes his power, blasting the undead away with incredible firepower. Even Blazer can't help but be amazed by Zappa's strength. Satsuna grins, telling Zappa that he's far stronger when he's the one leading the charge. He then turns to Sid, smiling, and says there's no need for introductions because he wants to be in the same squad as Zappa. Zappa freezes, completely stunned by what he just heard. He grabs Satsuna by the collar, demanding to know if he's trying to pick a fight just so he can get himself killed. As dawn breaks, Satsuna suggests they all head back to the orphanage. Roberta wastes no time and quickly returns to the church. Not long after that, Layla also leaves the village. Satsuna then goes back to the academy to continue his studies. When Satsuna and Layla finally return to the academy, they share their story with Carol and Drago, leaving the two completely stunned. Drago, on the other hand, excitedly tells Satsuna that he's learned a new skill during the break, and he can't wait to show it off during their next training session. The training program is set to last 3 weeks, and Layla plans to make every moment count. She's determined to deepen her bond with Waternia so she can properly master spirit magic. Carol, however, can't help feeling a bit jealous. Layla clearly had an amazing break. Layla tries to play it down, saying it wasn't that big of a deal, but Carol insists she doesn't have to minimize it, saying she deserves to enjoy what she's achieved. While the girls chat and laugh together, Satsuna's mind is elsewhere. He's busy figuring out how to prevent the upcoming incident that he knows will happen during training, but to pull it off, he realizes he'll need Zappa's cooperation. Meanwhile, Akhtar reveals, with barely contained fury, that the real reason he's after Satsuna is revenge. Once his gift for long-range magic was discovered, Akhtar began receiving better treatment from everyone around him. He grew addicted to that attention and worked tirelessly to maintain his new status. But then Satsuna appeared and ruined everything for him. Fueled by rage, Akhtar fires a powerful blast of wind magic straight at Satsuna. To his shock, Satsuna blocks the attack effortlessly, barely even flinching. Enraged, Akhtar snarls at him, calling him a useless close combat mage. Desperate for validation, Akhtar's real goal is to win everyone's admiration, especially Carol's. He launches another attack at Satsuna, but Satsuna blocks it again with ease. Then, Satsuna calls him out, saying he's scum for not even checking on Carol, the girl he supposedly likes. He adds that the only way to truly impress others is to put in the hard work and earn it. Akhtar keeps attacking, throwing everything he has, but none of his strikes manage to land. Exhausted and cornered, he starts wondering if this is how his story ends. Satsuna finally declares that he plans to report Akhtar to the authorities so he'll receive the punishment he deserves. But before he can do it, someone steps in. Carol, and Satsuna demands to know why she's protecting him. It turns out Akhtar used to be a completely different person back when they were first-year students. Carol explains that Akhtar was a commoner like her, constantly mistreated by other students. But everything changed when he joined the long-range magic department. His new power made him lose sight of who he truly was. Later, Sid stands before the new recruits, addressing them with authority. He informs them that for the next 3 weeks, they'll be serving as real mages. He emphasizes that this is not playtime. He expects outstanding results from every one of them. Despite that, some of the academy students immediately start discriminating against Satsuna and Drago for coming from the close combat magic department. The tension rises as Sid checks his communicator once. Then, he gathers everyone and reminds them that the battalion operates purely on merit assignments will depend entirely on their skill and performance. One trainee steps up and hits a golem with a burst of fire magic, earning a respectable 3A2 points for his effort. Next up is Mifune, who confidently demonstrates his technique, leaving the audience impressed by his control and precision. When his results appear, he scores close to 600 points, a remarkable feat. Then it's Drago's turn, and he eagerly charges forward to face the golem. He pounds it so fiercely that his final score reaches nearly 800 points. Once Drago finishes his rampage, Satsuna is called up next. To make things even harder for him, Zappa suggests they use a demon-type golem against Satsuna. Valerie immediately warns that this could be dangerous, but Zappa doesn't care. He just wants to crush Satsuna's pride. Valerie can't help but feel sorry for Satsuna, knowing how tough a demon-type opponent can be, especially since it can fly. What they don't know, however, is that Satsuna was once the strongest mage in the entire Magus battalion. Drawing his monoswords, he strikes with precise, lightning-fast cuts across the golem's body, ultimately destroying it in front of everyone's stunned eyes. The system itself struggles to register his performance. He was simply too fast for it to keep up. For a moment, Satsuna worries he might have gone too far, until he remembers that the Magus battalion's philosophy is to eliminate threats as quickly as possible. Zappa reluctantly admits, through gritted teeth, that Satsuna's score exceeds 1,000 points. Some of the trainees refuse to believe what they just saw, claiming the golem must have been defective. Others warn Satsuna to stay sharp, reminding him that real combat will never be as easy as that. The next day, Valerie and Zappa are summoned to the commander's office. Since Zappa and Satsuna clearly have a rivalry, the commander assigns Valerie to oversee Satsuna instead. Valerie accepts the task with excitement, assuring the commander that he'll give his all to properly train both Satsuna and Han. Before long, Valerie officially takes both Satsuna and Han under his wing. He tells them to follow him so he can give them a full tour of the facility. Along the way, he explains that the battalion receives massive government support, complete with state-of-the-art magical technology. Valerie also explains that each unit consists of 5 members, and as trainees, the 2 of them will be joining as the 6th and 7th members of the SID unit. As they walk through the facility, Satsuna spots many familiar faces, people he once knew in his past life. Valerie then adds that anyone who performs exceptionally well will receive an officer's recommendation from him personally. Since he's the unit captain, his recommendation carries a lot of weight, often attracting the attention of guilds and prestigious institutions. He then instructs them to memorize every detail about the unit by the end of the day. A few moments later, they encounter one of the instructors. Some troublemaking trainees start teasing the man, even going as far as throwing stones at him. Watching this unfold, Satsuna feels his anger rise. He steps in and scolds the delinquents harshly for their shameless behavior. When one of them drops a stone, Satsuna kicks it right back at him. The trainee panics and quickly threatens that Satsuna is going to get beaten up for that, but instead of fighting back, he flees immediately. Valerie stands there in disbelief, realizing that Satsuna just protected him. Han turns to Valerie with a teasing grin, asking how it feels to be rescued by a trainee. The question catches Valerie completely off guard. He decides not to respond and simply ends the day's lecture on that note. As Valerie walks away with his head hidden beneath his cape, Satsuna quietly watches him go. Despite everything, Satsuna still acknowledges Valerie's strong firepower. However, most people believe that Valerie's sister is actually the more talented mage between them. After hearing Valerie's story, Satsuna is deeply impressed. He realizes that, despite all the hardship Valerie has faced, he never gave up. Satsuna tells him that he's far more admirable than the delinquents who mocked him earlier. Valerie then conjures a glowing magic circle that transforms the surroundings into a field of flowers. An illusion spell he says helps to calm his heart, but Satsuna disagrees, saying that the spell isn't just soothing, it's genuinely beautiful. Then, Satsuna asks Valerie if he'd be willing to use that magic during an actual combat mission to prove everyone wrong. Encouraged, Satsuna suggests they hold a secret training session to test it out. Valerie explains that goblins and undead are ranked as 1-star threats, while the Death Lord they fought in the dungeon was a 4-star. He further reveals that the MAGE battalion usually handles threats ranked 3 stars and above, and today they'll be investigating monster sightings in the wetlands. Before long, they arrive at the combat zone, and Valerie urges them to adapt quickly to real battle conditions. Sid steps forward, announcing that he and Zappa will take point for this operation. Satsuna whispers to Valerie, saying that when the opportunity comes, they should step in and show the results of their training from last night. Valerie nods, agreeing that it's time to prove himself worthy as the heir of the Light Fiend. During their preparation, Satsuna notices something new about Valerie after their joint training session. He realizes that if Valerie can overcome his fear in battle, his performance will be on an entirely different level. Suddenly, a monster grabs Valerie, making him scream in terror. Satsuna reacts instantly, slashing through the monster's tentacles to set Valerie free. Once they've gained some distance and cleared the immediate danger, Sid prepares to intervene, but Valerie stops him, insisting that he wants to handle the creature himself. Zappa, clearly concerned, warns Valerie not to push his limits, reminding him that the monster is extremely dangerous and that his magic isn't well suited for this type of fight. He suggests that Sid and he should take over instead, but Satsuma speaks up, reminding Zappa that people grow stronger through experience, and Valerie is no exception. Valerie smiles and confidently agrees. This only irritates Zappa even more. Valerie thanks Sid for giving him the chance to prove himself. Zappa clenches his fists, clearly annoyed, saying there's no way flowers will help them win a fight. Satsuna calmly tells him to relax because he's about to see what those flowers can really do. Satsuna explains that even illusion magic has a significant tactical advantage thanks to its wide area of effect. Valerie is surprised by Satsuna's suggestion that he should hide another spell inside his existing one. He then expands his illusion, covering the entire battlefield in his floral mirage. Sid immediately catches on, realizing that Valerie has hidden a destructive spell within his Phantom Garden technique. He praises Valerie's creative decision to eliminate a spell's weakness by merging it with another, calling it a brilliant move. Satsuna recognizes the technique, recalling that the skill Hecaton Bolt performs exceptionally well when combined with other spells. Zappa mutters that Valerie is still as clumsy as ever, but even he admits that Valerie's move successfully split the monsters apart. All that's left for Zappa and the others now is to go all out against the falling monsters. With a burst of fury, Zappa launches a powerful flame attack straight at them. He knows that close combat magic has its limits, yet watching Satsuna move like that, it's as if he shattered every single one. He notices the combo Satsuna just pulled off, realizing it's actually his own original technique. Sid can't help but feel proud that the students assigned to him this year are all turning out to be exceptional. In just a short while, the group manages to wipe out most of the monsters in the area, successfully wrapping up the operation. Sid walks up to Valerie afterward, commending her for the hard work and encouraging her to keep improving. Valerie's face lights up, happy to hear those words of praise. But suddenly, she clutches her stomach in pain, and Satsuna rushes in just in time to catch her before she collapses. Sid quickly asks if Valerie got hurt during the fight, but she insists she's fine. Still, she says she'll check it out herself later just to be sure. Just then, Han arrives at the scene. He says he already had a hunch about what's really going on. To everyone's shock, it turns out Valerie is actually a girl with scars covering her body. The real Valerie is then seen holding her head in frustration, lamenting that her career as a mage is over. She had decided to take matters into her own hands to make sure her family's name wouldn't be disgraced. She cut her hair short so she could pass as a boy. Then she joined the MAGE battalion, hoping that by stacking achievements, her family would earn back its honor. But above all else, she needed to make sure her true identity stayed hidden. Han finally understands the reason behind everything Valerie's sister has done. He realizes that if people ever found out, not only would everyone be shocked, she could end up expelled too. Valerie pleads with Han not to tell anyone what he's just discovered, promising to do anything he asks. Han then grabs her by the cheek. He tells her that he's here to earn the officer's recommendation so he can rise through the ranks faster. Since that's his mission, he demands that she give him credit for all her training achievements. Valerie is crushed but knows there's nothing she can do about it. When they return to the group, Valerie looks completely downcast. Satsuna immediately notices that something's off and asks the two what they were doing. Han calmly replies that it's nothing, that he was just asking her some training-related questions. But Satsuna knows something's definitely wrong with Valerie. His concern makes Zappa lose his temper at her. Han steps in quickly, saying he was the one who saved her. But to Satsuna, it's obvious Valerie is pushing herself way too hard just to please Han, and he starts to realize something must have gone down between them. Satsuna demands to know what's really happening, his voice sharp with anger. Han claims that Valerie just admires his potential, which is why she's being so generous toward him. Satsuna tells him to quit pretending. He can clearly see Han's playing dirty. Han stands up, saying Satsuna just made a false accusation against him. He unleashes a fierce wind spell, trying to overpower Satsuna. But Satsuna braces himself, ready to show Han exactly why he shouldn't have picked a fight with him. Han is stunned to see Satsuna tank his attack so effortlessly, wondering if he's really a close combat mage at all. Zappa rushes over, shouting for both of them to stop immediately. Valerie lowers her head, trembling and apologizing over and over. Zappa glares at Han, warning him that he won't get away with this forever. Soon after, the trainees gather in the plaza for a briefing. They are informed that starting next week, they'll be joining the main team on high-priority missions meant to test what they're truly capable of. They're also advised to pick missions that match their strength, since the assignments will be extremely dangerous. Some of these missions include escorting royal members, surveying unexplored dungeons, and clearing out an orc lord's nest. The moment Rhodes Island is mentioned, Satsuna freezes because that's exactly where the tragic incident once took place. Sid then asks about the mission to Rhodes Island, and the commander explains that it's a newly arrived assignment. Apparently, the island sent out a distress signal, but after that, all contact was lost. Even worse, every guard dispatched to investigate has also gone missing. Satsuna remembers that in his past life he chose the Royal Escort mission, while the SID unit was sent to Rhodes Island. And out of everyone who went, the only mage who barely made it back alive was Zappa. In that same lifetime, Sid's unit had gone on a scouting mission to Rhodes Island, but again, Zappa was the only survivor. This time, Satsuna figures out that the origin of the monsters must be somewhere on that island. And now, he's determined to uncover the truth for himself. To decide who will take on which mission, mock battles will be held. Drago smirks at Satsuna, confidently saying that his squad won't lose to Satsuna's unit. Deep inside, Satsuna is already strategizing how he's going to win the Rhodes Island mission. On the night before the mock battles, Layla contacts Satsuna through the pendant, asking him how his training with the MAGE battalion has been going. He tells her that everything's been fine so far. Layla happily mentions that she's made progress with her spirit magic, and Waternia chimes in, complaining that she still lacks a large mana source. But she's making up for it by channeling her anger, and thanks to that, she's managed to learn a bunch of new spells. Waternia then adds that Satsuna might encounter another spirit named Bifrost during his journey. Blazer immediately reacts, saying he knows of Bifrost, the legendary rainbow spirit. It's said he's a king who protects all spirits. But even though Blazer has lived for thousands of years, he's never once seen him. Layla changes the topic, asking Satsuna if he's getting along with his squad mates. Satsuna replies that there haven't been any major issues so far. He also mentions that the situation between Han and Valerie seems to be resolved, though he still feels something strange about Han's magic. Waternia quickly warns Blazer not to use that as an excuse to go burn Han alive, but instead of backing down, Blazer grins because her warning just made him want to do it even more. The next day, all the trainees gather at the arena for the mock battles. They're informed that a special formation spell has been cast over the field. Moments before the match begins, Satsuna realizes Han isn't the only opponent he should be wary of. Before the battle starts, Sid briefs his team he and Zappa will lead the offense. Han and Satsuna will launch attacks from the rear, while Valerie will handle support. Satsuna is genuinely impressed with Sid's formation. It perfectly accounts for everyone's strengths and weaknesses. He admits that he has deep respect for Sid, especially since he's met plenty of captains before. When the draw is announced, their first opponents turn out to be Diaz's squad. Mifune, a member of Diaz's team, admits that it's really bad luck to face Satsuna's unit right off the bat. Satsuna responds politely, warning Mifune that they'll also have to watch out for his teleportation magic. He knows it's a perfect ability for surprise attacks in team battles, but Mifune's team leader yells at him to stop chatting. He claims Mifune's got nothing useful to offer since he'll just be stuck in the support position anyway. Apparently, the last member of Diaz's team is a summoner mage. Sid immediately deduces that they'll use the summoner's beasts as their defensive line. Diaz laughs at Sid, mocking him for having a close combat mage on his team, thinking it's a huge disadvantage. Grinning, Diaz taunts Satsuna to prepare himself to be taken down. Sid quickly notices that the enemy team's focus is locked onto Satsuna, but Satsuna assures Sid that he's going to break the stereotype once and for all, the belief that only long-range mages shine on the battlefield. Moments later, the battle begins, and just as expected, Diaz's squad opens with long-range attacks. While defending with a massive summoned scorpion, Satsuna dashes toward their formation mid-assault. Sid orders his team to intercept the incoming long-range fire. While the ranged mages exchange attacks from both sides, Satsuna finally reaches the summoned beast. He takes a quick step back, and when Diaz spots this, he smirks confidently, thinking there's no rookie alive who could ever cut through a scorpion whose armor is said to be harder than a golem's. For a moment, Diaz's team begins to lose their composure as frustration sets in. Diaz quickly rallies them, telling everyone not to give up, because Zappa will definitely be the first to run out of mana. But right then, an unexpected attack comes flying straight at him from out of nowhere. He's about to get taken down by the incoming strike, but luckily for him, Mifune steps in and uses his teleportation magic just in time. Diaz is completely shocked by what he just witnessed. Turns out, Mifune has the ability to pinpoint Han's location thanks to his ability to sense mana signatures. Because of Mifune's stunt, Diaz starts celebrating, proudly shouting that victory already belongs to their squad. But Mifune knows exactly who he's up against, and he's not foolish enough to assume that the match is already theirs. Han, meanwhile, is carefully observing him, studying every movement and technique. Diaz continues laughing at Satsuna, mocking that a close combat mage like him can't possibly do anything useful in this battle. What they don't realize is that Satsuna has been secretly charging his bullet skill while distracting them with his mana blades. Once the skill is fully charged, he takes aim directly at the scorpion's head. The attack lands cleanly, shattering the scorpion with little to no effort. That single hit completely breaks the defensive setup Diaz had been counting on. Diaz stands there frozen, unable to accept that he just saw a beast crumble under nothing but raw fists. With their defense gone, he yells for his team to regroup, but it's already too late. Satsuna has torn straight through their formation, moving so fast that one of their long-range mages is knocked out before even realizing what happened. While Satsuna is busy dealing with the rest of the team, Han takes his shot and aims directly at Diaz. But this time, Diaz senses the attack coming. He launches a counterattack of his own to block Han's strike. The force tears through his clothes and sends him flying several meters across the arena. Once Mifune and the last remaining teammate realize their captain has been taken out, they immediately raise their hands and surrender. The arena's healing magic then activates, surrounding Diaz and slowly restoring his injuries. And with that, the match comes to its official conclusion. Meanwhile, the spectators start paying attention to Satsuna's incredible performance. They're impressed by how he single-handedly shattered the enemy's front line with confidence and precision. They soon come to realize that. Satsuna walks up to Han afterward, asking about the type of attack he used, since he's never heard of a long-range spell capable of changing its trajectory midair. Satsuna also asks why Han put on his robe before using that last attack, even though there was no need to hide his position. Han simply replies that it was to prevent a counterattack, saying he's just a cautious guy. The tension between the two starts to build, but Zappa steps in and reminds them that there's no reason to argue or fight after a clean victory. With that, he steps aside, preparing for whatever he plans to do next. Just then, Drago appears, telling Satsuna that he'll be facing his squad in the next match. But his team captain, Chacha, happens to be a fair leader who respects the strength of close combat mages. Drago assures Satsuna that he'll make him pay for what happened back at the academy, declaring that he has no intention of losing this fight. Since the winner of the next round gets to pick their preferred mission, Satsuna is fully determined to win and secure the Rhodes Island assignment. And soon enough, Satsuna finally comes face to face with Captain Chacha. Chacha immediately sets her formation, placing Drago right at the center of it. This formation amplifies his power, turning him into something like a Red Hulk. Even Satsuna becomes cautious, sensing the massive aura radiating from Drago's body. Satsuna starts wondering if Drago is pushing his body beyond its natural limits, controlling a power that no ordinary human could endure. He's unaware of the secret technique Drago possesses. But instead of being intimidated, Satsuna's curiosity about the battle only grows stronger, and with that, their legendary showdown begins. The sheer pressure from Drago's fist alone leaves Satsuna's skin bruised. He quickly realizes that taking a direct punch from Drago might be enough to knock him out instantly. Understanding the danger, Satsuna boosts his physical strength through magic enhancing his arms and legs before grabbing Drago like a professional wrestler. He tries to push Drago to the ground, but to his shock, Drago doesn't budge an inch. He grins and tells him that such techniques won't work against his Hercules skill. That's the moment Satsuna realizes he's being completely overpowered. He swiftly alters his approach, circling behind Drago to strike him from the rear, yet this too ends in miserable failure. The outcome leaves Satsuna utterly speechless. Meanwhile, Drago only flashes a confident grin at him. Satsuna quickly deduces that the Hercules skill enhances physical strength to monstrous levels, and since Drago's body has been conditioned since childhood, it practically turns him into a walking cheat code. He realizes that Drago is showcasing strength that surpasses even magic, relying purely on raw physical power. Satsuna can't help but be impressed. He never imagined being forced into such intensity in close-quarters combat. Yet because of this fierce challenge, Satsuna's determination to win only hardens. Zappa suddenly unleashes an enormous burst of flame toward Drago, but Drago effortlessly blocks the inferno with the palm of his hand. The sight infuriates Zappa. Without hesitation, he launches another assault. This time, his attack lands, but even then, it fails to scorch Drago's skin. With full confidence, Drago declares that his entire body is a living armor, claiming that no matter what they hurl at him, nothing can pierce his hardened muscles. Zappa instantly catches on that Drago is reinforced by enchantment magic. And worse, his monoguard is so absurdly strong that any offensive spell feels like a mere tickle. To add insult to injury, Drago keeps receiving buffs from his allies. Zappa can't help but wonder just how many enhancements Drago has stacked on himself. Sid, observing from the sidelines, realizes that Drago is employing an ancient warrior formation. He recalls that in ancient times, there existed a class known as warriors who battled monstrous creatures using only their physical prowess and martial arts. Sid is also impressed that Cha-Cha is placing all her bets on a mere trainee and a close combat mage at that. He concludes that if the fight continues as it is, his squad's entire formation will inevitably collapse. Accepting this, Sid decides he must go all in as well and place his hopes entirely on Satsuna. However, Satsuna is counting on Zappa, trusting that his comrade would never allow their team to fall without giving everything they've got. Zappa responds by amplifying his firepower even further, unleashing waves of heat that make it unbearable for the enemy squad. They begin to falter, with one of them shouting that things are getting worse. They can't possibly hold out against just one long-range mage of that caliber. The outburst catches Zappa off guard since it was meant to be a surprise attack. At the same time, Satsuna's fighting spirit surges. He's determined to remind himself why he once bore the title of captain of the MAGE battalion. Drago, equally resolute, refuses to accept defeat at the hands of Satsuna of all people. The two continue trading fierce blows, neither backing down, until Satsuna finally spots a single, fleeting opening. He seizes it and slams Drago into the ground with overwhelming force. Standing tall above him, Satsuna holds his mana-forged sword poised for the finishing strike. Drago lies there in disbelief, stunned that he was defeated by a single well-timed throw. Even Cha-Cha is left speechless, unable to comprehend how the fighter they were relying on fell so abruptly. To prevent further damage, she reluctantly raises her hand in surrender. With that, Sid's squad secures yet another victory. Satsuna then acknowledges Drago's skill, complimenting him for his strength but explaining that he merely identified the flaw in his technique. Drago nods with respect, clearly impressed. He grips Satsuna's hand firmly and vows that their next encounter will not end in the same manner. With the conclusion of the mock battles, Sid earns the right to select a mission of his choosing. Zappa rushes over excitedly, asking which mission Sid plans to take. Sid responds that he'll submit their choice tomorrow, after analyzing how the battle unfolded. On his way to Sid's office, Satsuna realizes that this will be the first proper conversation he's ever had with the man. When Satsuna steps into the captain's office, he's greeted by a sight that completely blows his mind. Inside stand not one but three Sids, leaving Satsuna utterly dumbfounded. For a brief moment, he assumes Sid must have triplet brothers, but quickly dismisses the thought, as he's never heard of such a thing before. Sid apologetically remarks that he'd offer a drink if he weren't so busy, to which Satsuna quickly responds that it's no trouble at all. When Sid casually mentions the word clone, Satsuna's curiosity spikes. He immediately asks for clarification. Sid confirms it, explaining that what Satsuna sees before him is a manifestation of a special magic known as cloning magic. Satsuna is astonished. He always thought Sid specialized solely in long-range spells. Sid clarifies that he's merely borrowing the cloning ability from another squad member, the same way he borrowed the long-range magic during their mock battle. This revelation completely amazes Satsuna, as it's the first time he's witnessed a spell that doesn't fit into any of the established magical systems. Sid elaborates that while it's a powerful spell, it comes with limits. He can only store up to 3 types of magic, and each lasts no longer than a single day. Because his monotank isn't that large, his usage is heavily restricted. Even so, he's burdened with immense responsibility due to the spell's ability to branch into other forms. Setsuna finally understands the immense pressure their commander is under. Sid then turns to him and asks if his visit concerns the upcoming special mission. Setsuna responds firmly that he wishes to participate in the Rhodes Island mission. Sid raises a brow in surprise. He had fully expected Setsuna to recommend the royal family escort assignment instead, since Setsuna's impeccable record and high evaluations would easily help him build valuable ties with the royals if he wanted to. At that moment, one of Sid's clones steps forward. The clone, CID, appears conflicted. His analysis of Setsuna's background and ambitions doesn't align with this sudden request. Curious, CID probes further, but Setsuna hesitates to explain. Sid reassures him that there's no need for such caution or restraint. After all, Sid himself admits he wants to understand Setsuna better too. Setsuna reflects briefly on the torment he suffered at the hands of the evil god. Finally, he confesses that his true motivation comes from pure anger. He explains that there is someone trying to take away what rightfully belongs to him, and that he intends to punch that person square in the face. That very reason, he continues, is why he chose to specialize in close combat magic. After hearing this, Sid asks if Setsuna suspects that his enemy might have business on Rhodes Island. Sid admits that Rhodes Island itself is shrouded in deep mystery and strange phenomena. Setsuna's lips curl into a grin. To him, it sounds like things are already starting to fall into place. Just then, Daniel and Iris burst into the room. Daniel casually asks Sid whether he ever shared the heart-shaped chocolate that Cha-Cha made for him. The two immediately conclude that their commander is an absolutely hopeless man. They then reveal that Cha-Cha's squad will be joining them as escorts for the Rhodes Island investigation mission and ask why Sid thinks that is. Sid responds that he assumes Cha-Cha's team is just worried about letting them go alone. Daniel and Iris simultaneously grab their heads in exasperation. Sid truly is beyond saving. Setsuna already knows Daniel and Iris well. Both are incredibly talented, but he also remembers that they perished before the Great Catastrophe, much like the headmaster. Knowing how special they are, he silently vows to protect them this time no matter what. When the discussion ends, Setsuna bows respectfully, informing the commander that he'll take his leave. Before he can go, Sid tries to bring up a matter regarding Zappa, but Setsuna calmly replies that he already understands Zappa's softer side beneath his rough demeanor. Later, Zappa can be seen scolding Valerie harshly, calling her a slacker. Given that they're heading into a mission with an unknown danger level, Zappa furiously expels her from the unit. Valerie is stunned by the sudden dismissal. She rises to her feet, radiating a powerful aura. With fierce resolve, she declares that she bears a duty to her family, and nothing will keep her from fulfilling it. Still seething, she admits that she once lost her confidence but had it reignited by a certain someone. Zappa prepares to suppress her completely, determined to end her defiance. But Setsuna steps in, ordering Zappa to back off and promising that he himself will deliver the results expected of them. He urges Zappa to trust Valerie just this once, because he can clearly see the unshakable determination in her eyes. Reluctantly, Zappa concedes. Yet he warns Setsuna that if Valerie fails to meet expectations on the island, Setsuna will bear full responsibility for it. As predicted, Cha-Cha and her team soon arrive at the dock, ready for departure. Daniel remarks that the island ahead is known to be peaceful. He adds that he hopes it still remains that way by the time they reach it. Meanwhile, Leo is seen tracking Morgana's movements. With the Evil Legion active in the area, Hooker wonders aloud if the MAGE battalion might face total annihilation. Suddenly, realization strikes Leo. Setsuna participated in the training, which means he might now be part of the investigation team. Just then, Leo narrowly dodges a knife that embeds itself in the ground beside him. Puker mocks him, accusing Leo of playing dumb and insisting that he must have leaked information to Setsuna. Puker calls him a traitor and declares that Leo must atone with his life. Rather than fear, Leo feels a strange excitement. This will be his first ever duel with Puker, and he's fired up for it. Puker, with a wide Joker-like grin, mirrors that excitement as he prepares to fight. After traveling for a little over an hour, the group finally spots the outline of Rhodes Island on the horizon. Sid briefs the squad. Their mission is to locate survivors, protect them, and investigate the horrors unfolding there. However, there's a high chance of combat engagement, and he warns everyone to stay alert. Zappa recalls only fragments. He remembers being ambushed by monsters of unknown origin. Sid concludes the briefing by warning everyone not to be blinded by an officer's recommendation or reputation, as doing so could easily cost them their lives. Zappa wastes no time turning toward Valerie, sternly warning her not to become the team's burden. Just then, Daniel calls everyone's attention to the strange sensation creeping over him. Setsuna immediately realizes that the wind has completely stopped. Without warning, a massive sea serpent bursts from the depths, sending waves crashing and terrifying everyone on board. It quickly becomes clear that the creature is a 3-star class monster. Zappa, confused and alarmed, wonders what such a dangerous being is doing in supposedly peaceful waters. Valerie instantly steps forward, declaring that she'll handle the serpent herself. Sid quickly shouts orders to his unit, reminding them that the serpent's primary weakness is lightning. The monster thrashes violently before sinking back beneath the surface, but to their horror, it re-emerges moments later, more menacing than before. Iris gasps. Sea serpents aren't supposed to have tentacles, yet this one does. Setsuna's expression darkens as he begins to grasp the true nature of what they're facing. Suddenly, the ship lurches violently. Daniel nearly tumbles overboard, but Sid grabs him just in time. As Daniel steadies himself, Sid reminds him that he's their summoner. He must call forth the divine bird so they can escape the doomed vessel. Daniel hesitates, glancing toward Chacha's ship, worried for her team as they fight their own battle. But Sid urges him to have faith in them, warning that if they all fall here, no one will be left to mount a rescue. While Daniel begins the summoning, Valerie casts a powerful barrier spell to shield the group. The divine bird appears just in time, swooping down to lift them away as the ship is crushed beneath the monster's might. As they rise into the sky, grotesque winged creatures with distorted human faces swarm around them. Setsuna immediately intercepts the incoming monsters, slashing through them midair. Watching the chaos, Sid realizes with grim certainty that retreating from the island will be nearly impossible now that their ship is gone. They've been deliberately lured here. Iris expresses concern for Chacha's squad, but Sid assures her they're likely fine. After all, that team is composed mainly of enchantment-type mages. Zappa believes they can still make it to shore, though he admits their only real hope now is to regroup with Chacha's team later. Sid instructs everyone that, from this point onward, they'll have to continue on foot. Iris notices Valerie trembling with fear and gently encourages her to stay strong, assuring her that things aren't as hopeless as they seem. Trying to lift Valerie's spirits, Iris approaches a large flower bud nearby, but the moment she gets close, the flower suddenly transforms into a monstrous creature, its petals splitting into rows of razor-sharp teeth. It spits Iris out violently, injuring her, though her shield activates just in time to prevent serious harm. Setsuna rushes over and asks if she's alright, and Iris, though shaken, assures him she's fine. She admits that had she not activated her barrier in that instant, she would have been done for, and reaffirms her determination to survive, since she's the team's healer and their lives depend on her. Valerie exhales in relief, grateful that Iris made it through alive. Daniel then observes that the monsters inhabiting the island are far more vicious and more varied than they ever anticipated. Sid agrees grimly, noting that every living thing here seems to be driven by a primal instinct to attack humans on sight. Daniel suggests retreating to regroup with Chacha's unit, arguing that it's too dangerous to remain exposed. Sid acknowledges that it's a good plan, but questions whether they'll even be able to make it that far. Suddenly, a bloodied human staggers out from the forest, crying out for help. They rush to his side, and Iris immediately uses her healing magic while asking how he was injured. Sid gently asks the man's name, and he weakly replies that it's Janelle. He explains that his village was attacked by strange monsters they had never seen before. The adults fought to buy time so the children could escape. With tears and desperation in his eyes, Janelle begs the mages to find his younger sister. He says his village is overrun by monsters, and she's the only family he has left. Setsuna places a reassuring hand on the boy's head, promising that they'll take care of it and he has nothing to fear. Once Janelle regains enough strength, he begins leading them toward his village, which he says is about half a day's journey from their current position. Sid adjusts his glasses, scanning their surroundings cautiously as they move. Without warning, they find themselves surrounded by rabbit-like monsters that suddenly leap at them in waves. Zappa reacts instantly, unleashing torrents of flame, boasting that these creatures are weak and that his teammates have nothing to worry about. Yet despite his confidence, he's bitten several times. There are simply too many of them. That's when the team realizes in horror that the rabbit's bites carry a paralytic toxin. Setsuna understands immediately that the more one is bitten, the more the poison accumulates, and with an entire horde before them, their situation is dire. Daniel collapses to his knees, overcome by the toxin spreading through his veins. Sid realizes that the best course of action is to use his skill to replicate Iris's recovery magic. He immediately instructs his teammates to make sure no monsters get close while he focuses on healing Daniel. Taking his command seriously, the team launches a relentless barrage of attacks against the encroaching monsters, pushing them back to create some distance. For a brief moment, they manage to clear out a large number of enemies, granting the group a much-needed chance to catch their breath. Setsuna assumes the battle is finally over. As he walks back toward the group, he fails to notice a surviving rabbit-like monster creeping up behind him. Han spots the creature but chooses not to intervene. Just as the monster lunges at Setsuna, Valerie notices it at the last second and acts instantly. She casts her spell, immobilizing the beast in a flash and saving Setsuna from certain death. Daniel, meanwhile, expresses that he's starting to feel much better thanks to everyone's efforts. Setsuna, however, seems more curious about Sid's glasses. He asks him about them, trying to understand their purpose. Sid explains that they're a magical device capable of estimating a creature's approximate threat level based on its magical energy, movement, and physical traits. He mentions that he brought it along just in case, and it turns out to have been a wise decision. The tool had even identified the flower-eating creature that attacked Iris earlier as a one-star threat. Since Valerie is handling support, Sid hands her a spare pair of the same glasses for additional monitoring. Han then turns to Janelle, asking if there's a way to identify his sister. He explains that she always wears a red pendant around her neck, a birthday gift he once gave her. Han reassures Valerie not to worry about it, saying that, but before he can finish, Han snaps at her, telling her to keep quiet and to remember that she should feel both terrified and honored to be his wife. Satsuna, having missed part of their conversation, asks Valerie what just happened between the two of them. Valerie hesitates, frightened, and wants to confide in Satsuna, but fears that speaking up might seal her fate. She finally tells him that she can't talk about the matter right now. She also pleads with him not to let the rest of the squad know about it, not wanting to cause trouble or distract from the mission. Satsuna assures her that he'll drop the matter not because of the mission but out of respect for her. Still, he promises that if anything does happen, he'll be there to protect her. The next morning, the group gathers their gear and prepares to set off once more. Unsure of what kinds of monsters may appear next, Iris advises everyone to proceed with extreme caution. As they walk along the forest trail, Daniel picks up on the tense atmosphere surrounding the team. He tells everyone to just concentrate on the mission so they can finish quickly and put everything behind them. Satsuna agrees with Daniel but remarks that the forest is eerily quiet. Too quiet. Just as they start preparing for a possible ambush, a flock of monsters suddenly flies past them, ignoring the group entirely and heading somewhere else. Zappa confidently points out that the creatures aren't running from them, especially since they're classified as 3-star monsters. Sid immediately orders everyone to take formation. At that moment, a horrifying chimera emerges. A beast with the heads of a lion, a goat, and a gorilla, and a tail that writhes like a serpent. Valerie quickly scans the creature, and her heart pounds in terror as the reading reveals it to be a 4-star monster. The team finally understands why the bird monsters were fleeing earlier. Sid is astonished that a 4-star monster would appear in a forest like this. Without hesitation, he commands his team to take it down as swiftly as possible. Daniel summons his contracted beast to engage the chimera head-on. The summoned creature charges and attempts to pin the chimera to the ground, but the chimera retaliates with overwhelming force, slamming Daniel's beast into the earth with bone-crushing power. Daniel is stunned by the sheer strength and brutality the chimera possesses. Satsuna then rushes forward, blade drawn, ready to strike down the monster himself. Suddenly, an ominous aura floods the air, making everyone freeze in dread. A massive foot descends from above, crushing the chimera effortlessly beneath its weight. The entire team is paralyzed with fear and disbelief, unable to comprehend what they are witnessing. Valerie almost faints after scanning the new threat and seeing its danger level. What stands before them is a 6-star monstrosity, an abomination towering over the trees. It's unlike any creature they've ever seen, its form breaking every rule of biology and reason. Just by looking at it, Satsuna realizes this is the very monster responsible for the destruction of the MAGE Corps in his past life. The monster grabs the remains of the chimera and hurls them toward the team, forcing everyone to scatter desperately to avoid being crushed by the flying carcass. Janelle turns in horror just in time to see Daniel being struck down, screaming his name in anguish. The team quickly understands from the impact that the creature's hide is unbelievably tough. Not only is it nearly indestructible, but it also wields strength beyond imagination. Sid shouts at Iris, ordering her to tend to Daniel's injuries while rallying the rest of the team to focus their strength, saying they might stand a chance at defeating the beast if they all attack simultaneously. Iris nods firmly in acknowledgement and rushes toward Daniel without hesitation. But just as she's about to reach him, another colossal monster suddenly appears right in her path. The sight shocks everyone further. It's already a struggle to handle one of these beasts. Yet now, they're faced with 2, maybe even more of them closing in. Their escape routes are quickly cut off, leaving them trapped. Satsuna, drawing from his memories of a past life, recognizes the creature and identifies it as Gorfond. Valerie, meanwhile, holds the defensive line with her barrier magic, keeping the formation intact. Sid warns the group not to scatter, knowing that breaking formation would only make things far more dangerous. Then, Zappa steps forward, telling the team to go on ahead while he stays behind to hold the monsters off. Valerie immediately refuses, insisting that she'll stay and fight beside Zappa until the very end. Zappa scolds her for being naive. He reminds her that she still has a family waiting for her to return and rebuild what was lost. Satsuna isn't surprised. He knows that despite Zappa's gruff attitude, the man has always cared deeply for his comrades. Zappa grins, declaring that he welcomes the monsters as his next great challenge. After all, he's never been one to back down from a fight. He orders the rest of the team to break away and chase after Janelle, assuring them he'll cover their retreat. Flames burst from Zappa as he unleashes a torrent of fire at the advancing monsters. With no civilians nearby and his pride as a warrior on the line, Zappa finally decides to let loose his full power. The rest of the team eventually catches up to Janelle near the edge of a cliff. They immediately demand to know where his sister is. Janelle points toward the forest, saying she disappeared into it. But before they can react, the ground collapses beneath them, sending everyone plunging into the waters below. As they regroup, Iris insists that they must stay united and work together if they hope to survive. Setsuna agrees but stays calm, confident that he can take care of himself if things get worse. Valerie, however, finds herself being relentlessly chased by a swarm of monsters. She suddenly hears the captain's voice echoing from inside a nearby cave, but something about it feels wrong. The voice turns out to be an imitation, one of the monsters mimicking the commander's tone to lure her in. Sid notices Valerie's distress from a distance. He turns his head toward the sound of her cries, distracted by the situation. In that instant, a Gorfant appears from behind, catching him off guard. Sid tries to stand his ground and fight back, but he's immediately overwhelmed. He realizes the creature's power is absurdly high, rendering their strategies and magic tricks useless. Even so, Sid refuses to go down quietly. As a commander of the Megas battalion, he still carries his pride. With a snap of his fingers, he activates his copy gear ability, pushing all his units into overdrive mode. Power surges through him and Sid forces himself back to his feet, but the Gorfant wastes no time. It charges straight at him again. Sid gathers his energy, merging multiple spells together to form one massive lightning spear. With all his might, he hurls the spear directly at the Gorfant. The blast hits with devastating force. He might have been able to take it down, but the price is steep. He's now drained, unable to use magic for a while. As if fate itself were mocking him, two more Gorfants suddenly appear behind him. Just as Sid is about to be torn apart, Setsuna bursts in, blocking the attack with his bare fist. Blazer, thrilled by the challenge, laughs eagerly, saying it's time they had some real fun with these beasts. Setsuna doesn't bother to restrain him. He agrees completely. His hair ignites into a fiery red hue, and his body radiates waves of searing heat. With explosive speed, Setsuna leaps toward one of the Gorfants, ready to strike. As they clash, a group of flying monsters swoops in, mocking Setsuna and taunting that his efforts are worthless. In response, Setsuna severs one of their arms with ruthless precision, silencing them instantly. He then charges the nearest Gorfant and slices clean through its neck, decapitating it in a single, blazing motion. Before finishing the rest, he growls that they're about to experience the same despair he once felt before his regression. Setsuna unleashes his fury, turning the entire battlefield into a blazing slaughterhouse where no monster is left standing. And with a defiant glare, Setsuna declares that they have chosen the wrong opponent to provoke. Valerie is the first to regain consciousness, and Setsuna rushes to her side, anxiously asking if she's in pain. Wary of revealing her true identity, Valerie insists that he need not worry about her, claiming she can handle things on her own. Not long after that, Sid finally stirs awake from his unconscious state. Sid expresses his gratitude to Setsuna for saving his life. However, he can't help but ask how Setsuna managed to bring down the Gorfants so effortlessly. Setsuna hesitates, unwilling to explain. Sid quickly reads the situation and decides not to press further, understanding that Setsuna clearly doesn't wish to share. Sid then mentions that they need to regroup with the rest of their team, and as he's saying this, a battered and blood-soaked Zappa suddenly emerges, with Han following close behind. The group is stunned by Zappa's return, and Valerie can hardly believe that he actually managed to defeat the monsters. Zappa grins wearily, saying the monsters were nothing more than a warm-up exercise for him. Han explains that they used an invisibility cloak to avoid more monsters on their way back, but lies, claiming that they lost contact with Iris during the chaos. Sid acknowledges this grim news and notes that Iris's location is still unaccounted for. He then adds that they'll need to find a way to regroup with Chacha's squad as well. Han informs the group that he spotted a nearby village while they were returning. Sid realizes it must be Jonel's village, and considering there might still be survivors there, he agrees it's worth checking out. Han proposes that he and Setsuna should go since they're the only ones in decent condition to move. Valerie protests, calling it too dangerous, and insists on joining them despite their objections. In the next moment, Valerie throws herself between Setsuna and an oncoming attack, taking the hit meant for him. Han, enraged that Valerie has interfered, scolds her harshly for ruining his plan. But Valerie, wounded yet defiant, declares that she will never abandon her benefactor. Unfortunately, Han's strike rips through her clothing, exposing her true identity as a woman. Valerie, ashamed, apologizes to Setsuna for keeping it a secret, explaining that she failed at the Magic Academy and took her brother's place to serve instead. Setsuna assures her that her secret is safe with him, and furthermore, he won't allow Han to harm her any longer. Drawing his mono sword, Setsuna prepares to fight. Valerie, terrified, tries to stop him, but Setsuna calmly tells her to stay still and trust him. Before Han's next strike can land, Setsuna repels it with sheer precision. In that instant, Setsuna comprehends the true form of Han's magic. It's a golem constructed through intricate enchantment spells. Setsuna remarks that he normally wouldn't be able to achieve such range or power without some kind of special enhancement, and as he tracks Han's movements, he uncovers the truth behind the man's unnatural aid. He had suspected something was off, and now it's confirmed. Han has been receiving help from Zephylion, a spirit of immense magical power. Shocked that Setsuna knows this, Han grows wary but quickly decides that killing him would be far simpler than asking questions. He charges straight at Setsuna, but Setsuna, being well-versed in spirit magic himself, effortlessly matches Han's pace. The clash continues, with Setsuna deflecting every attack that comes his way. Han soon reveals that the spirit magic he wields is the same volatile kind that once ran wild during the Great Magic War. Valerie watches in disbelief, realizing that every one of Han's golems is cloaked in blades of wind, making them lethally dangerous. She trembles, horrified, believing that such destructive magic should never have existed in the first place. Han launches another attack, but Setsuna slices through it once again with ease. However, Han abruptly redirects the spell mid-air, and it strikes Valerie instead. Setsuna finds himself at a deadly crossroads. If he turns to help Valerie, Han will have a clear shot to kill him. But if he keeps his focus on Han, Valerie will fall to her death. Han mocks Setsuna cruelly, calling him a fool for valuing someone else's life over his own. And before Setsuna can regain control, Han fires another blast at the cliff's edge where he's clinging on. Han laughs mockingly, taunting that Setsuna is nothing but a helpless waste. But then his laughter dies. He realizes in disbelief that Setsuna is holding on with a single finger while clutching Valerie securely in his other arm. Somehow, Setsuna has copied Dragos' Hercules skill, a feat Han can barely comprehend. In shock, Han demands to know just what kind of monstrous magic talent Setsuna truly possesses. Summoning every ounce of strength, Setsuna pulls himself and Valerie back up onto the cliff. He fixes his gaze on Han and warns him coldly that he's about to eat dust. Realizing she's badly hurt and will only slow him down, Valerie reluctantly agrees to withdraw from the fight. Setsuna carves through the incoming attacks, clearing a safe escape path for her. Han grows furious at Setsuna's persistence, cursing his unyielding resolve. Enraged, Han unleashes a massive barrage, sending countless golems charging towards Setsuna. But Setsuna, a seasoned veteran in both swordsmanship and magic, dismantles them with ease, cutting through each one without losing focus. Once the dust settles, Setsuna calmly tells Han that while he may possess vast mana reserves, he's utterly worthless since he doesn't know how to use it properly. The insult infuriates Han beyond reason. Setsuna goads him further, telling him to come at him if he truly wants to learn how real power is wielded. Furious and desperate, Han conjures an even larger golem than before. He activates his mana suppression skill to force more power into the construct, but the spirit bound to him refuses to grant additional mana. Han, enraged, screams at Zephylion to give him more power, but the spirit calmly reminds him that their contract only allows half of its energy to be used. Han trembles with frustration when he suddenly hears Setsuna's voice behind him, mocking him for his failure to form a proper bond with his spirit. Panic grips Han as he looks around, unable to locate Setsuna's presence. Then, without warning, Setsuna materializes right behind him. Han instinctively lashes out with a backward strike. He laughs maniacally, convinced that he's finally killed Setsuna, only to see Setsuna, wreathed in blazing flames, standing tall before him. Setsuna calmly reminds him that he already promised to show him the meaning of true power. Setsuna bursts forward, driving a flaming punch straight into Han's chest. Fire engulfs Han as he's launched across the battlefield, his scream echoing through the air. Setsuna stands firm and tells Han he's unworthy of being in Sid's squad. In fact, he's not fit to be in the Mage Corps at all. Still, Setsuna knows Han will likely survive, protected by the spirit magic sustaining him. With that, he decides it's time to regroup with Zappa and the others. Meanwhile, Han, seething with rage, curses Zephylion for holding back its power. The spirit coolly asks him if he's truly prepared to undergo the trial once again. Han, blinded by arrogance, growls that he deserves more mana. He considers himself a being above all others. Yet despite his fury, the truth remains. Han once faced Zephylion, overcame its trial, and forged a contract. But even now, his pride keeps him from understanding the spirit's true nature.